bunch of students at a school were just sitting around when they saw military trucks roll by, with other students casually riding in them. The girls were instantly starstruck by the handsome guys they saw passing by. The other boys, of course, grumbled that these dudes were nothing special, just kids from those fancy specialized schools, the so-called warrior school. Then the story hits us with what went down in the past. While everyone was busy living their boring, normal lives, the world got a taste of what it'd be like if solo leveling became reality. Portals popped open in the sky, and dozens of dragons rained down on Earth. The kind of stuff that only happened in anime suddenly dropped right into the middle of their city. Fear froze everyone on the spot. Later on, scientists figured out there was another planet eerily similar to Earth. Turns out neither of them was flat, by the way. This knockoff Earth exploded, which is how they even discovered it existed. But that crappy planet had to dump a bunch of space debris right on us. Giant meteor chunks smashing into Earth and turning people's dreams into nightmares. Because wherever those pieces landed, the weird nature of that other world started to spread here too. After that, more portals cracked open, and ridiculous monsters started crawling out of every corner. 17% of Earth's surface got turned into a giant no-go zone. Humans lost all control and got wiped out like flies. Ordinary people didn't stand a chance. One terrified soldier hid and watched as a single bald monster with a horn wiped out his entire unit. When the guy realized what was happening, that bald freak got even uglier and opened its mouth full of nasty teeth. The soldiers tried to fire everything they had to slow it down, but the creature's skin was tougher than steel. Sadly for our young soldier, his body wasn't so tough. That single punch to his gut had him needing a blood donor ASAP. The impact launched him into a concrete wall, shattering both the wall and his bones. Humans had zero chance. If there were a status window, this guy's strength would be ranked D at best, while the monster would be a comfy B minimum. The soldier stood his ground anyway, waiting for the end. The monster loomed over him, ready to finish the job. But as it swung for the final blow, something changed. A weird new power surged through the human, like he was channeling his inner Sung Jin Woo during an awakening. He felt the natural human limits cracking, all thanks to the effect of that exploded planet. The chains holding him back snapped, and he did the same to the monster. He grabbed its arm and shattered the demon's bones with one martial arts move. That moment became the first recorded case of humans awakening, and finally having a shot at fighting back against their invaders. Even though this phenomenon affected every human on Earth, the awakened abilities were different for each person. Some people who discovered their new powers chose to train and hone these gifts. Others decided to find a purpose worthy enough to wield such potential. Amidst this chaos, another portal tears open in the sky. From it, a horde of horned demons storms through, ready to invade Earth once more. But this time, their leader sees something unexpected. An entire army of humans waiting right in front of the portal, weapons drawn and eyes blazing with determination. These were the ones who chose to fight back, using their new powers to reclaim the dungeons and the danger zone. They became special agents with a single mission and were now known as adventurers. In front of that portal, a fierce battle ignited, horned demons versus humans, alongside the same soldier who defeated the first monster. That clash marked the beginning of the era of dungeons and the rise of the adventurers, sparking a colossal war between two species. After the brutal battle, with only a few human knights left standing, the world hailed their bravery. People everywhere were inspired by their strength and sacrifice, especially by the first soldier who awakened his power and chose to stand against the monsters. It didn't take long for organizations dedicated to training adventurers to appear all over the globe. Among them, one stood out in the Republic of Korea, a training school for teenagers that produced the best adventurers over the last 25 years. This place became known far and wide as the Warrior School. Back in the present, we return to the moment when the two friends were chatting. One of them mentions how at the Warrior School, they even tell students what really happens inside the dungeons. The black-haired friend asks what happens if someone dies, and his buddy laughs, saying they're confident for a reason. They have to pass a brutal test just to get in. But before he can explain more, his attention shifts as a group of girls nearby start squealing in excitement. The girls are completely smitten, gushing over someone they describe as impossibly attractive, with a beauty that can't be put into words. It's a blonde boy with large ears, a half-elf, who's just sitting there, soaking up the adoration as the girls shower him with praise. The friends glance over, baffled, and one explains that the boy is always on TV. His name is D.F. Choi. His father is a legendary adventurer, and his mother is an elf. Rumor has it, he's a genius destined to reach the highest rank among adventurers. With all his charisma, D.F. Choi flashes a dazzling smile at the girls, driving them even crazier. It's revealed that he's already gone into the dungeon 14 times, a fact that makes the black-haired boy scowl in annoyance. He doesn't think D.F. Choi is that impressive at all, and his friend starts teasing him, saying he's just jealous. The two boys bicker playfully until they're interrupted by another friend who walks over and invites them to hang out. But Jerryong, the black-haired boy, shakes his head, saying he can't join them this time and hopes they at least have fun. His other friend protests, telling him not to be so serious after the exams and to just come along. Before he can push further, their third friend jabs him in the stomach, telling Jae-yong it's fine if he wants to sit this one out. Jae-yong, still glued to his phone, glances up and thanks his friends before saying goodbye. The boy with the partly dyed hair tells his buddy to be a bit more sensitive next time. Did he even know why Jae-yong was doing all this? In a flashback, we see Jae-yong sitting beside an elderly person lying in a hospital bed. Back in the present, as he walks through the city streets, Jae-yong looks at his phone and sees an alert reminding him he hasn't paid this month's hospital bills yet. He gets another notification from his boss. A new job just came in, and they need him to start immediately. Meanwhile, Diev, still waving at his adoring fans, suddenly notices something. He turns his gaze toward Jae-yong, a strange feeling twisting in his chest. One of Diev's friends, who also attends the warrior school, asks if that kid did something to him, but Diev shakes his head, saying he didn't. Watching Jae-yong's back disappearing into the distance, Diev wonders if his instincts are playing tricks on him. He decides to brush it off as nothing. As for our protagonist, Jae-yong, he walks through the streets, stressed out and grumbling to himself about how much he hates this job. Eventually, he arrives at an abandoned subway station, pushes past the warning tape blocking the entrance, and descends the stairs into the darkness, ready to face whatever comes next. Jae-yong's boss, a man with striking white hair named Jawan, introduces the person beside him, a bald man in a suit, as the new client Jae-yong will be working for. The black-haired young man politely says it's a pleasure to meet him, but instead of returning the greeting, the bald man's expression sours immediately. Glaring at Jawan, the client snaps that he thought Jawan would bring his best employee, not some random kid. Calmly, Im insists that Jae-yong really is the best they have. The bald man scoffs and starts arguing with Jawan, accusing him of trying to trick him with amateurs. Despite the rising tension, both Jawan and Jae-yong stand their ground, pointing out that the client is being unnecessarily rude. The man in the suit, however, refuses to back down. He demands that they call someone truly competent, and with a threatening tone, warns that if Jawan doesn't produce someone respectable, he'll make both of them regret it. At that moment, Jae-yong turns to the muscular man standing protectively behind the client, clearly his bodyguard, and asks if he's an adventurer. Then, with a sharp grin, Jae-yong corrects himself, saying the guy must be a retired adventurer, reduced to following an old man around and taking orders. The bald man is taken aback by the boy's boldness, but before he can retort, his bodyguard steps forward. Snapping his fingers, the bald man's enforcer growls that there's no point in talking anymore. He'll break an arm or a leg of both Jawan and Jae-yong to teach them a lesson. The bald man smirks, clearly pleased, and orders his guard to grab the boy, adding that if they don't beg for their lives, they'll die right there in that room. Feigning fear, Jae-yong puts on an exaggerated act, sarcastically asking for help and wondering what he should do. But then his demeanor shifts completely. A blue aura pulses around him as he declares coldly that he doesn't know how to beg. It's revealed that Jae-yong has secretly returned to the dungeon 371 times, completely illegally. The story pauses to explain how dungeon smuggling works. Every day, adventurers venture deep into dungeons to hunt monsters, helping humanity survive and thrive. Once a dungeon is cleared, they find incredible treasures within, some so powerful they're beyond human comprehension. But before these adventurers leave, every treasure must be handed over for government inspection. This is crucial because, if left unchecked, these artifacts could fall into the wrong hands and cause untold destruction. The Adventurers Association must register and examine each item, and then charge hefty fees based on the treasure's value. Tempted by greed, however, some adventurers try to sidestep this system, sneaking treasures out and selling them off illegally to avoid the outrageous fees. Far from the eyes of inspectors, they hide these powerful relics for personal gain. If these criminals aren't caught, it threatens everyone, creating countless problems for society. The government's propaganda ends by urging all citizens to report any smuggling they see, so these outlaws can be brought to justice. When we return to the scene, the showdown between the ex-adventurer and Jae-yong is about to begin. Jawan, unfazed, calmly lights a cigarette, while the bald client glares at him, baffled by how he can stay so relaxed. Watching the two opponents facing off, the bald man asks Jawan if he's really going to let this happen. Jawan raises an eyebrow, asking if the bald man is backing out now after causing all this fuss. Offended, the bald man fires back that they should be the ones trembling. He explains that Pilgi, the muscular man, didn't retire because of injuries, but because he attacked his own teammates, and he wouldn't show any mercy this time. Hearing this, Jae-yong repeats the accusation with mock horror, sarcastically remarking how terrifying it is. He calls Pilgi exactly what he is, a criminal. Grinning, Pilgi brags that the guy he killed was pathetic, dragging him down, so he just took out the trash. But Jae-yong laughs at this, saying he gets what Pilgi means, and shoots back that the man should be more self-aware since he's just as worthless. He points out that Pilgi lost everything because of his own reckless behavior. Before Jae-yong can get another jab grab in, Pilgi lunges forward, aiming a punch straight at his face. But as Pilgi's fist connects, he freezes, eyes widening, realizing that something is very, very wrong. He observes that Jaryong had managed to dodge simply by turning his face to the side, and the boy remarks that attacking like that was quite rude. Pilgi becomes enraged, and a green aura begins to emanate from him. Then the man charges to finish off Jaryong. Wanting to provoke his rival, the boy says that since he was being attacked, he would counter with a quick kick, and with a resounding impact, the boy leaps, trekking his opponent's jaw with his leg. After taking the full force of the blow, the man becomes somewhat dazed, trying to process what had just happened right there. Jaryong's boss remains calm, but the bald man is impressed by our protagonist's speed. Jaryong once again asserts that he brought the most skilled person he knew while Pilgi was shocked by the kick he received. After the impact, you begin to taunt the man, saying there was a surprise since, judging by his appearance, he expected the bulky man to be a bit tougher. Jo-won comments that Lee was lost as the boy treated that smuggler like just a normal kid. However, those reflexes and the power behind the kick to the man's chin had already reached the level of professional. The boy also remarks that it seems the ex-adventurer is beginning to understand that this might be a fight you can't win. However, the bald man doesn't give up, stating that the kid was really good, but it was just a lucky kick. Before the bald man could continue speaking, Jaryong's boss responds that he could only feel pity for the big guy. Blinded by rage, Pilgi removes his shirt, allowing his aura to surge even more, and Jo-won, seeing this, asserts that Lee was undoubtedly a tank. Next to him, the bald man is extremely surprised that Jo-won could read his subordinate's abilities and comments that the old man shouldn't be so shocked. The bulky man says that no matter what cheap trick our protagonist decided to use, he was still just a smuggler, and for that reason, was going to show him something interesting. Immediately after, several veins begin to bulge on his body, and Lee starts charging a green energy. Jaryong explains that after the adhesion, people began to awaken abilities that exceeded their limitations. However, each person has different talents and types, and as expected, they would awaken completely different latent abilities. Adventurers, of course, took on specific training that matched their abilities and assigned roles to themselves. Looking impressed at his rival, Jaryong states that one of those roles was called a tank. Pilgi became extremely stronger and more muscular after using various techniques to perfect and increase his stats. The tank is a position where you protect your teammates from the dangers of the dungeon. In this role, the adventurer faces all the monsters head-on in the vanguard without being able to retreat or show fear. The strength in their bodies trained to the limit allows tanks not even to feel some bullets fired at them. However, higher-ranked tanks can even withstand immense firepower and missiles easily, and are essentially a protective barrier. Observing his rival's transformation, Yu acknowledges that he is powerful, affirming that the man truly is an adventurer. Pilgi, after using all his buffs, quickly charges with both hands to attack the boy in front of him. Jaryong, the struggling, manages to dodge, but the ground wasn't so lucky, and the entire floor of that subway is shattered. With debris flying in his face, our protagonist tries to land, feeling the air from all that power rushing towards him. The bald man, after sensing that power and being practically a normal human, is almost blown away by the wind that formed. However, a hand helps him stay on his feet. The one saving him was Jo-won, who remained as if nothing had happened, then calmly asking the bald man if he was okay. The man says that, in any case, that adventurer was a bastard because he was really going to mess up someone else's business place like that, just for a rivalry. Lee charges toward Jaryong, who is in a fighting stance, and the boy just watches his opponent advance. Quickly, the man throws another punch, and the boy narrowly dodges it. With an extremely smug expression, Pilgi asked our protagonist what's going on. He also questions why Jaryong isn't using any of his previous tricks, but the young man remains deep in thought. Jaryong retorts, stating that he's not an idiot and wouldn't fall for such an obvious trap like the one the tank was setting. Observing and feeling all the power radiating from Lee, Jaryong's boss remarks that the ex-adventure isn't bad. Pilgi's physical strength was around the level of a truck, and if a normal person were hit, every bone in their body would be pulverized. But seeing that there could be more destruction in his territory, Jo-won orders Jaryong to hurry up and finish it, because if he didn't, the boy would have to pay for all the damage if anything else broke, and the young man realizes he's running out of options. Pilgi maintains that same expression as before, now saying that it seems the boy's boss doesn't understand what's happening. He also emphasizes that Jaryong's cheap tricks are no match for a professional's technique. However, he appears to ignore him and suddenly looks to the side, saying that it seems good. The young man notices that a strong metal beam is positioned beside him, and he quickly places his hand on it. Lee doesn't understand that move and is confused, wanting to know what the young man was going to do with it. Jaryong begins to analyze the iron bar in his hand, realizing that it could actually be used, and then states that it should at least be enough. While he was distracted, Pilgi charges at him again. The man is so furious that he's gritting his teeth with his aura spilling out. Jaryong explains that due to their enormous durability, the general belief is that tanks tanks are unbeatable beings. However, that's not the case because they have a very clear weakness and a natural enemy. And at that moment, Jaon informs the bald man that the fight isn't over. Pilgi continues to rush at his enemy, completely enraged and determined to end the battle. However, Jaryong doesn't retreat and also charges forward with the iron in his hand. The weakness of a tank is an entity that can focus a powerful and destructive force on a specific point, and at that exact moment with his improvised weapon, the boy moves to strike his enemy and prove his strength. A DPS, a damage per second, is the primary weakness of a tank, and after saying that, the boy strikes his opponent's jaw with the iron bar, unleashing a blast of energy backward. With the blow, the ex-adventurer spits blood, practically fainting from the attack. Jian isn't surprised at all, unlike the bald man who is completely confused by what just happened before his eyes. After the strike, the tank immediately falls backward unconscious for a few seconds, and then quickly regains consciousness. With his mouth full of blood, Pilju asks how the protagonist learned to cut like that. But upon hearing this, the boy is confused, asking what the man is talking about. He then says that he doesn't know what Lee is thinking, but he's definitely wrong. However, in his mind, he thinks that perhaps Lee isn't entirely wrong, as he may have seen that person before, and therefore recognized Jaryong's cutting style. That person was his father, who was known worldwide and had once been extremely powerful. Our protagonist begins to recount his past, and we see him as a child walking through the corridors of his house, reflecting on how, when he was very young, his father was the greatest adventurer in the world to him, because the boy felt immense pride in the man, and his favorite pastime was watching his father train in the backyard. And it wasn't just because he was family. The man truly was powerful. His name was Yuseung, and the man had a muscular appearance and radiated aura and power. This was the soldier we saw in the past, the first human to awaken and defeat one of the monsters. A flashback is shown to explain that Seung was one of the heroes of the first generation, who were called the first adventurers. For those who didn't experience it themselves, the story of the first generation is a grand legend. But for the adventurers of that time, it was hell, as they had to witness countless people losing their lives and face battles daily. And more than anything, the main problem was that there was no information about the dungeons or similar things, about what kind of place the dungeons were, or even what kinds of monsters inhabited them, which made exploration even more complicated. In the flashback, Seung is seen alongside his ally, preparing to fight a giant, worm-like monster. Even monsters that are considered easy to defeat in modern times were formidable challenges for adventurers in the past. The Gakamuleth, the beast that our protagonist's father was facing, begins to spit a chorus of green liquid, hitting Seung's friend. Seung narrowly escapes the attack, but when he looks to the side, he sees his friend being dissolved by the worm's attack. For the adventurers of that time, any creature was an unknown calamity capable of destroying everything. Yu Seung, after witnessing his friend being melted away, quickly becomes enraged and strikes the beast with his spear. This was a time when adventurers had no information to fight against the monsters. After delivering the blow, Seung realizes something he didn't want to see. His titanium alloy spear wasn't resistant to the monster's chorus of attack. Items that are now considered common didn't even exist back then, so adventurers had to make do with what they had. The first generation of adventurers went through trial and error, risking their lives to discover more information about the dungeons. In the flashback, Seung charges at the worm. In the underground dungeon where you was, some adventurers arrived as reinforcements. The three young adventurers, upon seeing the situation of what was happening, are left breathless, merely observing the scene. Amidst the many people who had been dissolved, the only one left standing was Seung. Having defeated the creature with whatever he had at his disposal, the survivors passed on their experiences and accomplishments to the next generation to help them. And after all their deeds for the good of humanity, they were considered heroes. Seung lived this life, defeating creatures and unknown beings for many, many years. After evolving greatly as a hero and as a person, he became known as the Dragon Hunter after years of adventuring. This nickname was given to the first person who managed to defeat a dragon, and Seung is seen standing imposingly atop the body of one of those beasts. When people saw this news, they were shocked and amazed, and Seung was considered the strongest adventurer in Asia. And Seung was also an ordinary person, and the father of our protagonist, and the boy expresses that he respected him deeply. Jaryong remembers his father training with his spear, showing all his power and aura, creating a huge windstorm. More than anyone else in the world, Jaryong believed that his father was invincible, until one fateful day when he saw something that traumatized him. Suddenly, the man who was in his physical prime and training began to cough up blood unexpectedly. Our protagonist, as a child, ran towards his father to see what was happening. However, the man asked his son to stop and not come any closer. According to the doctors, the cause of this sudden weakness and decline was poisoning, and Jaryong cried a lot as he watched his father in that state. At the hospital, he explains that during one of his explorations, his father encountered a deadly poison that contaminated him. As he had always done, his father tried to overcome it more than anything, facing the challenges head-on. However, after decades of overworking himself, his body was at its limit, and even that first dragon hunter couldn't withstand it. During the time someone was weak, colleagues he had trusted with his life came and handed him a piece of paper. These people were disguised as vipers who took advantage of Sion's vulnerability at that time and took away his fortune and work. For years, in addition to the illness, he suffered mentally and physically, believing that he had only made mistakes up to that point and that nothing he did was rewarded. Years passed, and even when our protagonist was already a teenager, he saw his father sitting on a hospital bed, his body severely weakened. Jae-young mentions that years later, the world began to forget about the dragon hunter Sion, and his father lost his identity as a hero. After losing everything and suffering from an incurable poison that no medical science could cure, all that was left as a reward for you was to be a forgotten adventurer. We then returned to the moment when Jae-young had just defeated Pilju. The boy simply stares at his opponent, then turns around and starts walking away while the man tries to mutter something. Our protagonist, after all the memories, becomes extremely irritated, thrown in the piece of iron he was holding and walking towards the exit. The bald man is still shocked by everything he saw, thinking that his subordinate was the strongest man. However, Jo-won remarks that everything went well, though the man remains incredulous, unable to believe that his partner Pilju lost to a kid. But the protagonist's boss remarks that perhaps the bulky man wasn't a good adventurer, which could have been one of the reasons. Jae-young interjects, saying that the man was bragging about hitting his own comrades, which was just a sign of how weak he truly was. As he continues walking past the bald man, the boy states that there are only two reasons why a good adventurer retires. Either their body breaks down to the point where they can no longer explore or face creatures where they die during an exploration and are never seen again. He puts his jacket back on, saying that he didn't know what Pilju's salary was, but if it was more than minimum wage, the bald man should fire him. Staying this as an opportunity, Jo-won approaches his client, apologizing and asking the bald man to understand their side. He then asserts that now the fee for the job will be doubled due to the situation that occurred. However, the man in the suit is about to protest, but before he can, Jae-young's boss gives him a menacing look, saying that the boy was the one who provoked first. He then adds that he and Jae-young don't work for free, and seeing that he wasn't in the best position, the bald man agrees and says it's fine. After some time extorting his client, the boy's boss begins to call Jae-young over. The man asks if he has ever heard of the Imperial Wasp, but Yu, upon hearing this while drinking water, immediately spits it out. Wiping the water from his mouth, Jae-young asks if they'll have to fight that, as even for him, that monster was a bit too much. Jae-won explains that the Imperial Wasp is a monster whose danger level is considered the highest not only in Korea, but in the entire world. What was once a beautiful and lovely city called Yeouido is now the nest of the Imperial Wasp, and has become a demonic kingdom in Korea with extremely high difficulty. The man then explains that even for high-ranking adventurers, taking down one of these monsters is difficult, because these things spread out everywhere for any smuggler. Fighting one of these creatures is practically suicide. However, for a white-rank adventurer, it was extremely possible that they could accomplish it. Jae-won explains that according to the bald man, there was a large raid the previous day that wasn't publicized. The boss continues the explanation, stating that the government army and 7 white-rank adventurers form an attack squad to invade the Wasp's nest. Jae-young is shocked that they gathered 7 white-rank adventurers, and Jae-won adds that adventurers of that level are so famous that if even 2 of them come together, the media goes wild. With this challenge, it seems they failed to achieve the original goal of eradication, but the adventurers managed to hunt the Queen Wasp. One of the 7 stole the royal jelly of the Imperial Wasp and ordered a subordinate from the attack squad to smuggle it. Jae-young seems confused, not knowing what this royal jelly is, and Jae-won begins to explain that it's a nutritional supplement given to a newly born queen by the Wasps. Struggling to understand the situation, you ask why a white-rank adventurer would smuggle a nutritional supplement, as it was extremely dangerous. The boy's boss explained that there have been occasions where royal jelly was brought into this world, and from what he knew, if a human consumed it, they could even come back from the dead. And upon hearing this, our protagonist is extremely shocked. In the underground city in a deep subway, we hear someone say that all paths to the dungeons are now strictly controlled. This person begins walking through those abandoned corridors, heading to a certain location while repeating this phrase several times. It is revealed that this person was our protagonist's boss, and the man says that this isn't true. Looking at a gate with various red markings, the man thinks that this proves there's always a way to bypass government restrictions. With a blue aura around his hand, he begins to touch the gate, doing something to merge his magic with the markings. His energy reacts with that of the gate, and a massive blue energy light shines throughout the area. The auras begin to merge with the markings there, and then something happens and the red markings start to disappear. Our protagonist was right behind his boss, and Johan tells the boy that even though he always says this, he'll repeat it, asking Garyong to be careful. As he cleans his hands, he concludes that this job will be especially annoying and a bit more troublesome than the others. For some reason, you remain silent the entire time, just listening and staying quiet. Trying to get the boy's attention, Johan blows a puff of smoke from his cigarette into the young man's face. The young man begins to wave his hand to disperse the smoke, and then asks why his boss did that so suddenly. Johan explains that he did it because the boy had his head in the clouds and wasn't paying attention to the mission. The boss asks if the reason the young man was acting that way was because he was still thinking about the medicine that could bring the dead back to life. Garyong starts walking toward the gate, stating that it didn't make sense since such things are really not reliable. Leaning against the massive gate, he thinks that even if it's considered an unparalleled antidote, it won't be able to cure his father's condition. And with that, the young man begins to open the mysterious gate from which his strong life starts to emerge. The boy also thinks that if there were something like that, his father would never have abandoned that thread of hope. After opening the gate and passing through it, the young man finds himself in a mountainous region with a beautiful landscape of a clear blue sky. Garyong tries to shield his eyes from the sunlight to get a better view of the stunning scenery in front of him. After the adhesion, dungeons were created all over the vastness of the earth, but among them, there are two considered the largest in Korea, and they are peculiar. The first is Jeju-do, a dungeon fused with a volcanic mountain range and has active volcanoes and burning rocks. The other is fused with the Agri jungle, and at that moment, the young man was starting to prepare for an exploration. The Agri dungeon is located in what used to be Yeouido in the middle of Seoul. Where Yew was, it's possible to see a destroyed city now overtaken by a forest. The young man informs that with Yeouido at the center of Mapo, Yangshan and other nearby cities were all controlled by this dungeon, and most of it remains unknown. A large portion of the region is only D rank, but Yeouido, or the Wasp is located, is S rank, and the person responsible for the jelly tried to transport it to the meaning area in Baroma. Jo-won explains that, however, after arriving there, the transporter lost contact with the others, and while he might have fled, it's not the most likely option. The boss also says that the man must have dealt with all sorts of things to get out of there, and, well, all our protagonist has to do is reach the location and bring back the jelly. But before Jaryong sets off, Jo-won mentions that he'll finish his thought asking the young man not to get distracted and just focus on the mission. Smiling while putting on a mask, the boy asks if his boss thinks he would run away. However, Jo-won firmly states that the boy isn't stupid enough to do that. The boss also asks his subordinate to be careful and remember that the royal jelly is precious, and humans aren't the only ones willing to risk their lives to get it. After his boss's entire speech, the boy uses a rope to safely descend from the cliff into the middle of the forest. And there in the center, he thinks that he's sure the entire forest must be smelling that peculiar odor. When he looks down, something catches his attention, leaving the young man shocked and irritated. In a forest's soil, an enormous footprint of a giant was there, and the boy states that he's sure various things will be attracted by the jelly's scent. Meanwhile, deeper within that vast expanse of trees and botany, several birds begin to fly. A girl with pointed ears is seen, extremely out of breath and running from something. The woman tries to stop for a moment to rest behind a tree to catch her breath. Her name was Jin Saram, and she was in her first year as a warrior, currently facing the biggest problem of her life. It was supposed to be an easy trip to the dungeon for her intermediate exam, but it's clear that the girl was frozen and utterly terrified. Looking to the side, the young woman remains worried, and it's explained that instead of something easy as it should have been, she encountered a monster that should never have been there. It's then revealed that the creature chasing the girl is a gigantic beast. Jin continues trying to stay silent and still to see if she can escape from the beast that's hunting her. However, a gust of wind begins to approach the girl, and she realizes something she didn't want to. The exam was supposed to be simple. Within the time limit, Jin had to collect as many coins as possible that were placed inside the dungeon. And although it was a test designed to simulate real combat situations, the test area was ranked as low as possible and should have been easy. This was because it was considered a training ground for beginners, one that any novice adventurer could pass. The monster chasing, Jin silently approaches, and when the girl realizes it, the beast is grinning right behind her. The woman becomes desperate, and it's explained that even the monsters living there were weak and had low intelligence, but this one was different. The giant with 4 arms and immense strength tries to strike the girl, but she narrowly escapes. Jin thinks she should run, but looking at the size of the monster, she realizes that's impossible, so she has to make another decision. At that moment, the girl notices that all she has left is to hope for a miracle, so she takes out her bow and draws 3 arrows from her quiver to try to arm herself. Despite all the difficulties, she decides to fight back. The 3-star-ranked primal titan begins to prepare a monstrous breath. In a desperate attempt to save her life, Jin fires 3 arrows at her enemy. Unfortunately for her, the monster easily raises a hand to shield its face, successfully blocking the weak attack. The girl realizes that the Titan's skin is tougher than that of a tank, and her chances of winning are almost nil. The primate then, with one of its 4 arms, quickly strikes the ground, causing another gust of wind and rocks to fly into the air. However, with her extreme skill and speed, the girl manages to escape once again, and even in the air, Jin prepares to fire another arrow. Jin thinks that no matter how many arrows she shoots, it's impossible to pierce the monster, but she has no other choice, so 3 more of her arrows fly towards the beast, but this time, the projectiles are propelled by wind. Even though they only superficially pierce the Titan's body, the monster remains unfazed, maintaining its terrifying expression. Looking at the beast, the girl thinks to herself that she didn't need to kill it with her attacks, and it didn't need to dodge or block them. She just wanted it to get a little closer, and was hoping the monster would lower its guard for just a moment. The new arrow that Jin readies in her bow is imbued with fire, and the girl is certain that her plan will work. As she lands on the ground, she channels more magic into her arrow, as she is a warrior of a class that imbues magic into the tips of arrows. Finally determined and confident that she will survive, the woman prepares to teach the beast a lesson. With a powerful bow attack, Jin uses her flame bombardier skill, firing an arrow that tears through the ground. It's explained that the type of magic that can be imbued into the tip of an arrow has absolutely no limits, and what she chose as a last resort was the largest explosion she could manage. After hitting something, the arrow explodes, causing a massive blaze that can be seen throughout the forest. The woman continues to stare at the spot where she launched her attack, trying to see if she managed to defeat the beast. Despite everything, that attack should have been enough to kill any monster with a 3-star danger rank. However, the girl is completely terrified. After the smoke clears, the monster is seen clinging to 2 trees, having narrowly avoided the attack. The monster, having barely escaped, looks enraged with a terrifying expression, furious at the audacity of its prey. And even with all her power, the attack would only have been effective if it had hit its target. Various thoughts flood Jin's mind, and the girl begins to consider that she might die there since she doesn't know what else to do. Before she can think about needing to run, the monster lands on the ground, determined to put an end to the young woman. It quickly charges at her, and in a desperate instant, Jin runs in the opposite direction, trying to escape. The Titan continues with a psychotic expression, merely wanting to have fun with its desperate prey. However, as if by a miracle from the heavens, just as she had wished, our protagonist suddenly appears striking the Titan with a weapon. Looking out at the sky, Jin is incredulous at what just happened, gazing at her savior as if he were her hero. Still in the air, Garyon locks eyes with the girl he had just saved, while Jin remains astonished at everything that transpired. The giant, having taken a solid hit to the chin, is still somewhat dazed, trying to stay on its feet. Our protagonist safely lands on top of a tree and thinks that even though he struck the creature on the chin, it didn't seem to be enough. Looking down, the boy notices that the beast is glaring at him with a terrifying expression. He pulls a strange object from his pocket, something resembling a weapon, which is a tool for adventurers. With his bait in one hand and the tool in the other, the boy charges into battle to defeat the beast. Jin, witnessing the situation, is extremely impressed because she never imagined that the young man would be bold enough to attack the monster head-on. The girl thinks that the young man is heading towards certain death, and the enraged primate titan lunges to attack him with 2 of its arms. Shouting loud enough for the girl to hear, Garyon tells her to close her eyes immediately. Even though she doesn't fully understand what he's talking about, Yu quickly points his tool at the monster's face. The beast and Yu are on the verge of a deadly encounter, where only one of them will come out alive. However, from the tool Garyon is holding, a powerful light begins to emanate, and the young man quickly closes his eyes. Right in front of the monster's eyes, a blinding light that illuminates a large part of the forest is emitted from the device, leaving the Titan temporarily blind. Serum, heeding the unknown boy's advice, quickly closes her eyes and raises her arm to shield herself from the device's light. The monster, unaware of what was happening, is completely affected by the light that shot directly into its eyes. The beast begins to roar in anger, and after that, our protagonist lands on the ground, thinking that he used all the power of that tool, even though it was his last one. When he was holding his call to Stunlight, a tool made from the scales of the oscillating fish that lives in dungeons deep in the ocean. It has an incredible ability called Incapacitate, which offers a lot for its price and has been beloved by countless adventurers. However, because of its incredible performance, many people misused it, and several adventurers began to lose their vision. As a result, its production in the present day of that world is strictly banned and prohibited. Even with her eyes closed due to the tool's incredible reach serum, not being accustomed to it, begins to open her eyes slowly, passing by her with his baton. Jerryong says that he did all of this for her, and now she has to find a way to survive on her own, because she only has a few seconds left. Our protagonist thinks that no matter what happens in the dungeon, as long as he doesn't do anything for the adventurer, he probably won't be reported. The boy remembers the moment when his boss said that, frankly, smugglers are like cockroaches to adventurers. Despite that, the bounties for them are very high, so if he acted without thinking, he would be outsmarted and handed over to the government. Therefore, he wasn't going to do anything else. However, as he ran, the boy maintained a firm expression, but noticed something behind him that stressed him out. The young man realizes that the girl from before was trying to follow him, and not knowing her intentions, Jerryong complains. Even though she's out of breath, Jin doesn't give up on her goal and continues running after her savior to thank him. However, of all the lessons he had learned about not being outsmarted, he makes a decision and quickly uses his incredible speed. Starum, who was right behind him, realizes that somehow the boy managed to escape her sight in a fraction of a second. Jin asserts that she was sure the boy was just there, but suddenly he disappeared. With her guard down, she is surprised by a baton that strikes her directly in the neck, pushing her back. Our protagonist pins the girl to the ground and tells her she's too stupid, asking what she was doing. Starum, innocently and without malice, explains that she just wanted to thank him for saving her. Coldly, Jerryong retorts, asking if she's joking because he's not stupid enough to fall for that nonsense. Showing that she's not so innocent, Starum reveals that she didn't follow him just for that, but because she knew the boy was a smuggler. She didn't want to capture him instead. She wanted to offer the young man a job, and hearing this, he remains silent for a moment. Seeing the emblem of the Warrior Academy on the shirt the girl is wearing, Yu sighs and lets it go. Removing his baton from the girl's neck, the boy says that he intended to let it slide, but this is her last chance to survive. Turning away and beginning to walk, Jerryong says that he has no interest in learning from a student of the Warrior Academy. In a tone more imposing than ever before, Jerryong threatens Jin, warning that he would truly bury her if she interfered with him again. The girl, understanding the seriousness of the threat, remains silent for a moment. Even so, she doesn't give up, saying that the bounty for a smuggler was 50 million, and the bounty for hunters must be 400 million. Jerryong takes this as an affront and becomes completely enraged, with veins bulging from his body. However, something changes his mind completely when he looks at the girl's hand and sees something impressive. Starum is holding a necklace called Blood of Enkel, and Jin says that he could only buy it if he captured 5 smugglers, which would amount to over 200 million in one. With that in her hands, sweating, she tells him that this was just the initial payment and that if Jerryong helped her with the exam, she would give him even more money. Staying the girl's wealth, he comments that it's insane, thinking that she was just a spoiled brat, but beyond that, she was filthy rich and crazy. Determined in her objectives, the girl retorts that it didn't matter if she was crazy or not. Raising the necklace again, the young woman states that what mattered was that this opportunity would change the life of our protagonist. Once more, he sighs unexpectedly, saying that he imagined something like this would happen. The young man apologizes, stating that it's Jin's fault and that he really has no reason to kill her. Hearing this, the girl is startled, questioning what he means. A huge shadow begins to block the sun, plunging them into darkness, and looking up, the boy says that he already warned her. Jerryong mentions that he told her she only had a few seconds, and in the sky, the primate beast is seen leaping to capture the 2 youths after recovering from the flash. The monster, furious, immediately crashes to the ground with its 4 arms, but the 2 young people manage to escape. Suddenly, the girl sees something coming her way, and when she opens her hand to catch it, she realizes it's the same button that a protagonist was using earlier. He tells her that he didn't give it to her just to stare at it, and asks if she remembers the attack she used earlier. Jin recalls the moment she used fire on the arrow. Jerryong then asks the girl to do it again, conjure those flames on the baton, and throw it back to him. However, the girl panics, stating that she has no magical power left. Before Jin can say anything more, our protagonist insists that she has to figure it out. The monster prepares to attack again, and Jerryong warns that he won't be able to keep the Titan's attention for much longer with just his fists, so Jin means to hurry. Starin begins to channel her magic into the baton and thinks that she has less than a quarter of her magical power left, since she spent it all on her last strike. The battle between the Titan and the protagonist ensues, and the young woman considers that she can't deal any damage to that monster with so little power. So instead, she should flee while the boy is distracting the creature, and Yu continues to fight intensely, trying to stay alive. Despite being a bit annoying, our protagonist keeps running, drawing the monster's attention, and before he realizes it, with extreme speed and precision, his flaming baton comes flying towards him, and the young man catches it. After using all that was left in her, launching the baton, Jin thinks that she really is crazy to risk so much for just one person. With that, Jerryong leaps into the air and starts spinning with his baton, then states that he's disappointed. The boy says that it's much less than a quarter of what she used before, and that it's really disappointing. However, he believes it should still be enough, and with confidence, The young man wields his baton and charges to attack the monster. The battle reaches its peak, and at this moment, Serum thinks that the students of the Warrior Academy have heard this more times than they can count. Analyzing the incredible battle, the girl states that in a fight with a monster, the most important thing for an adventurer isn't just brute strength. The most important thing is a sense of timing, and at this moment, our protagonist is executing it perfectly, dodging attacks and waiting for the right moment. The key is to seize the perfect timing to aim precise strikes, and at this moment, the primate titan misses its attack, leaving itself exposed. In other words, what adventurers must value above all else is the effectiveness of their attack, and at that moment, Jin was deeply impressed by Yu's skill. Yu, after dodging all the attacks from the primate titan and utilizing perfect timing, seizes the opportunity to strike the monster's chin with his baton. An explosion occurs, and after it disperses, the beast's chin is completely disfigured, its face utterly destroyed. The glasses Jirian was wearing shatter, but upon realizing that his attack was indeed effective and that he had won, the boy allows himself a small smile. A flashback shows a beautiful school illuminated by the rays of the setting sun on the horizon. The young Jin had just finished playing with her friends, and as it was time to go home, the girl bids them farewell. Star remembers as a bodyguard waiting for her with a car ready to take her home. So the girl says goodbye to her friends, and the girls plan to meet the next day to play again. However, Jin overhears some gossip with her own friends saying that she was very lucky to be able to have whatever she wanted. Jin thinks they were entirely wrong, and she really could have almost everything she saw due to her social status. Her father owned a South Korean company ranked 4th, the Jinsong Group, which was globally known and highly renowned. The successor of the group married an elf from another world, and from this relationship, something that would leave a mark on that world was born. The result was Jin's Serum, a half-elf girl with dark hair and a determined spirit. She respected adventurers more than anyone else and even admired them, seeing them as inspirations. Jin dreamed of becoming an adventurer more than anyone else, and she was willing to give up everything to follow her dream. In the future, shortly after that flashback, a blonde elf is seen saying that something is impossible. Jin is utterly exhausted, lying on the ground, and at this moment, the blonde elf says that the girl's elven blood is very weak and that she might as well be mostly human. The blonde elf tells someone next to him that despite this, continuing to push the girl is very wrong, and it would be better to convince her otherwise. Then Serum's father, Jin's son Yu, says that he isn't forcing the girl to do anything, just supporting her because she dreams of becoming an adventurer. He adds that it's not like elven talents are a requirement to become an adventurer, and the elf in front of him agrees. It instates that compared to a human, the girl does indeed have considerably good talent. But despite that, she's still just slightly above average, and even with her effort, it won't be rewarded. The blonde elf says he'll clarify something for Sun Yu since his daughter isn't just a human from a normal family. She won't give up on her own, and she's as stubborn as her mother, who is the blonde elf's sister. However, even so, the elf coldly says that despite her efforts, the girl will never be strong compared to monster rank humans. But if she keeps trying and gets up every time she falls, she might become somewhat decent. Once again, there's a time skip showing Jin is a teenager. The elf concludes by telling Sun Yu that with her effort, it will be enough for the girl to receive praise and recognition as a normal human. Even so, this daughter was born with many other benefits compared to her lack of talent, such as prosperity, name, and bloodline. These things will make her efforts futile. Regardless of how much she trains, there are things that can't be achieved. People will laugh at her out of envy, and she might become completely isolated as they will see her as just a spoiled girl. And one thing is certain, even if Jin is extremely strong, she won't be able to handle it for long because social isolation is something that destroys anyone. Since talent doesn't fall from the sky, we return to the moment when Jaryang defeated his enemy. Jin, watching this scene, is completely astonished after so many events unfolding before her eyes. When our protagonist finally lands on the ground, the body of the monster he just defeated also falls, making a tremendous crash in the forest. The beast was completely destroyed and defeated after taking that powerful attack directly to its face. With a Batman in his hand, our protagonist walks normally until something tickles his ear, catching his attention. As he looked to the side for some reason, Jaryang saw Jin, who was completely shocked, as if she were seeing a ghost. Staring at the boy's face, the girl muttered that it was impossible, thinking that her savior was just a high school teenager. After touching his face, the young man finally realized what had happened, becoming extremely irritated for being so careless. In a flashback, Jowon can be seen advising Jaryang to be careful not to break his glasses, since they were quite expensive. Holding the strange glasses in his hand, you comment that they should only cost around $5,001 as they look like an ordinary item. However, his boss denied this, explaining that those glasses prevented facial recognition, altered the wearer's voice, and had more than 4 magical enchantments. Back in the present, the expensive glasses were completely shattered on the ground after Jaryang delivered that powerful attack. Placing his hand over his face, The boy muttered that things weren't going as he wanted and that it was frustrating. Still confused, the young woman asked if the boy was a veteran of the Warrior Academy, but irritated by everything that had happened that day as he just wanted a normal mission, Jaryang answered harshly, no, that with extreme anger and veins bulging on his face, you demanded that the young woman hand over what she had promised. Unexpectedly, without hesitation, she quickly handed over the necklace, leaving him surprised by how easily it was done. He became annoying by how rich Jin was and quickly snatched the jewel from her hand before she could even get a good look at it. With the necklace in his hand, Jaryang began to examine it closely, and after a brief look, affirmed that it wasn't fake. Catching his attention once more, Jin asked if the boy needed more money. She mentioned that she understood that even if he didn't attend the Warrior Academy, the tuition for the education center was quite high. Before she could offer to pay his tuition, the young man clarified that he wasn't attending any adventurer school. The girl was even more astonished, and he replied that she was completely mistaken in her assumptions. Jaryang explained that he didn't go to any adventurer school and had never even been close to one. On the contrary, he studied at regular school. The girl then asked who taught him to fight, and he responded that no one did. Approaching her with both hands in his pockets and a serious expression, he stated that he learned on his own. This time, it was Jin who became irritated, and she yelled, saying that was utter nonsense. The girl began to argue that his movements and sense of timing weren't those of someone who had never been trained, and Jaryang must be joking. However, in a rude and not at all gentlemanly manner, something flew toward the girl, hitting her in the face. Realizing that Jaryang had thrown something at her, she caught it in her hand and asked what it was. But after examining it, Sarum realized it was a school ID card, and upon removing the identity from the plastic, she began to analyze the information of her savior. Seeing the card, she noticed it belonged to Dongying Secondary School and saw that the name of our protagonist was Yu Jaryang. Jaryang said she didn't need to make an effort to remember, since that school was just another ordinary one among many in the country. After so many unbelievable events, the girl was on the verge of a breakdown, declaring that it was impossible. Not wanting to be outdone, Yu pointed his baton at the girl and ordered her to hand over something to prove her identity, whether it was a student ID or something similar. After receiving it, the young man began to read it and noticed that the girl's name was Jin Sarum, then checked if the document was genuine. Our protagonist also confirmed that the girl was the same age as him, realizing that she indeed belonged to the Warrior Academy. For some reason, he put that ID in his pocket, and Jin asked why he was doing that. Jaryang, puzzled, explained that at that moment the girl had made an offer, and that's why he couldn't take any risks. Since his identity had been revealed, if he were to take on a mission for Jin, he needed some assurance that he wouldn't be betrayed by her. Moreover, Jaryang mentioned that he wouldn't do a job without taking the necessary precautions, adding that he still intended to do one last thing. The young man pulled out his phone and suddenly put his arm around Jin's shoulders, pulling her into a side hug, leaving the girl very flustered. Yu explains that he's going to take a selfie with Jin because if she ever betrayed him, the photo would serve as proof that Jin was also an accomplice to a smuggler. As the two take the photo, the girl remains in shock, and at that moment, Jaryang realizes she might have made a serious mistake. With a menacing expression, our protagonist tells her to smile for the picture, and it was in that instant that she understood she had gotten involved with someone far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Forcing a small, nervous laugh, the girl gives a fake smile for the camera, but it was too late to back out. Everything had already started, and so Jaryang snaps a picture with Jin beside the corpse of the Titan. After taking the selfie, the boy continues to look at the phone screen, ensuring that everything in the image was just right. He then tells Jin that they should start discussing prices and asks what exactly she wants. Still processing the young man's intense personality, Serum states that his mission is to collect coins. Jin explains that within the 6-hour time limit, she must collect coins placed in various locations throughout the test area. Her goal was to find a box that contained a coin at a specific location to prove she was a student of the Warrior Academy. The girl also mentions that she already retrieved one coin, so she only needed to collect one more to pass the school's test. Finally, Jin concludes by informing him that the box containing the last necessary coin was quite close by, and our protagonist asks where it was located. The girl reveals that the box is in the ruins of the old Yujin shopping mall, and hearing this, the boy is surprised. As if he had figured something out, Jaryang remarks that he understood everything, but Jin finds his reaction odd. Seeing this, Jaryang decides to explain that he realized their meaning wasn't a coincidence, since what he was searching for was also in the mall. After he gives a brief explanation of the mission he's on, the girl is incredulous, shouting that she couldn't believe the boy was after the Imperial Wasp. Having misspoken, the boy corrects himself, saying that he wasn't after the wasp itself, but something like its honey or jelly, though he wasn't sure exactly what it was. Jaryang mentions that apparently apparently this jelly has a very strong scent that attracts monsters, and the primate titan was probably drawn to it as well. Our protagonist states that it doesn't really matter, but he asks if the girl really needs to go to the mall, also inquiring if there wasn't another place with coins. Apprehensive and with her head down, the girl informs him that the mall is the only place with a coin left now because the other groups have likely taken all the other boxes. Hearing this, the boy just stares at the girl, and upon hearing about the groups, he quietly realizes why she was alone. Determined to help Jin, Jae-young says it's okay and that it's actually more convenient for him this way. He tells Jin that they'll enter the place, get the coin and the jelly, and then leave in complete safety. He was about to mention the fee, but the girl already said on her goal says she'll pay $950 million. She then adds that it's all the money she has, but upon hearing that enormous amount, our protagonist is very impressed by the girl's wealth. Saram goes on to say that if it's not enough, she would just need a little more time, but before she can continue, you interrupt saying it's sufficient. Turning to start walking toward their objective, the boy says he'll charge more if there's an emergency, but if the plan goes well, that amount will suffice. The boy asks if the girl has enough stamina to run now, and she promptly nods, saying yes. They immediately start a quick run into the forest to reach their goal. The young woman, who's a bit behind and completely out of breath, analyzes you running effortlessly ahead of her and thinks that the boy is incredibly fast. As our protagonist runs, he sighs, thinking he accepted the offer too quickly and should have asked for more money since the girl seemed wealthy. During the run, Jin shouts asking if she can ask the boy a specific question. With a bored expression, he allows her to ask, and then she inquires if he really learned everything on his own. Surprising the girl, he responds that not everything, but the vast majority was learned through training alone. As they continued on their path, Jirian began to explain his past, mentioning that when he was a child. However, before he could finish his sentence, the boy sensed danger. Right in front of them, two strange, alien-like creatures were hunting their prey. The name of these beasts is Jararaptor, a species native to what was once Baramadan. Upon seeing this, Yu quickly tells Jin to prepare for a fight. She, who was running alongside him, quickly halts, draws her bow, and gets ready to attack the beasts. To her surprise, with incredible speed, Jirian doesn't even wait for Jin and charges directly at the creatures. It's explained that Jirian never received any official training as an adventurer, and the skills he possesses now were acquired by risking his life. But there's one exception. When he was younger, he witnessed his father's incredible movements. This allowed him to learn 3 specific techniques. As he approaches the monster with his baton, Jirian uses one of those techniques against the Jararaptor. The first of these techniques is called the Needle, where he uses all this speed and weight to strike a vital point of his opponent. At this moment, the boy executes the same move. This is a simple yet refined technique that he gained through experience, senses, and above all, his talent. It's a technique that even top-ranked adventurers have not mastered, but Jirian has perfected it, defeating the first of the monsters with just that one strike. Since the other monster was only a 2-star, it was easily defeated by Jin, who only sustained a few scratches. After putting her bow away, Serum comments that something felt off since Jararaptors usually travel in groups of at least 5 creatures. Hearing this, Jarian informs her that it means she wasn't the only one affected by the scent of the royal jelly. It's likely that all sorts of monsters are nearby, and at this point they've already reached the outskirts of the city where the shopping mall is located. Noticing that the girl didn't seem to be in the best condition, you suggest they take a quick break before continuing. Returning to the previous conversation, the girl asks if he had any personal training when he was younger. Once again, you respond that he didn't, that he only watched someone train and managed to mimic that person's movements. However, because he was trying to be stealthy and not be noticed by this person, he only learned a few specific moves. Since he doesn't get asked this question often, he wonders why the girl is so curious about it. Instead of answering, Jin becomes extremely frustrated, stating that after all this, she really doesn't like him. Suddenly, the young woman throws something at Garyon, who quickly catches it, not understanding what it is. Upon examining it, he realizes it's a stamina vial, which is extremely expensive. Seeing this, who asks if she's really going to give it to him for free. Jin urges the boy to drink the liquid because he probably wasn't in his original condition due to exhaustion. The boy points out that Jin just said she didn't like him, but then gave him a gift, so she wasn't keeping her word. But to the girl's surprise, the boy begins to pocket the vial and Serum asks why he's doing that. Garyon responds that he won't drink it because he could sell it later, leaving Serum even more furious. She starts arguing with Garyon, saying that it's worth a lot and that he should just take it. Still, the boy explains that he knows the value of the item and that if he sold it on the black market, he would get a good amount of money. The girl mentally curses the boy, thinking he's strange and extremely weird, but he's all she has. Changing his mind, Garyon says that since she doesn't need to rest after drinking the vial, they should continue their adventure, and so they do. Noticing that the girl is still a bit distracted, reflecting on everything, the boy thinks that rich kids are extremely strange and don't care much about money. Afterward, the two approach the mall, and Garyon comments that Jin already knew this, but they should go over the plan one more time to be sure. Yu states that their goal isn't to hunt any monsters, but to grab what they need and leave immediately. He adds that no matter how many monsters are inside, she should always follow his instructions and keep her composure despite everything. Finally, Garyon says he's sure the girl has learned a lot, but his specialty is survival, and she just needs to trust him. However, for some reason, Jin is acting strangely, unable to identify the cause of the weird sensation she's feeling. Last semester, Jin was a stranger at the Warrior Academy, unrecognized by others and often excluded. However, this was the first time she ventured into danger with a companion who didn't belittle her, and as Garyon stands up, he declares that they should get moving. The girl remains a bit apprehensive, knowing she's about to face imminent danger. The two of them are now standing in front of an old shopping mall, which is completely overrun by vegetation. Inside, everything is dark and ruined, with the forest and trees having completely taken over the place. But something happens that frightens not only Jin, but also Garyon, putting both of them on high alert. An overwhelming pressure begins to envelop the two of them, and Jin asks what it is, but even Garyon doesn't know, as he has never encountered anything like in his life. Looking ahead, they both notice several mutilated monster corpses, and whoever did that was incredibly powerful. Humans are beings capable of being braver than they imagine, and if they are properly motivated, they can withstand any situation. The only obstacle to this are events that fall outside the scope of the initial plan. Those monsters are not from this area. They are dangerous even for professional explorers. Seeing the carnage, they can't even imagine what could be there. The boy tells her not to lose focus. There's something very dangerous there, and it's not as if she didn't know that. She was just surprised because the scene is scarier than she imagined, but so far, nothing has changed. As soon as he finished speaking, she saw something in the shadows. There was a silhouette moving. Upon seeing this, the boy drew his spear. The creature stood up. It was a slasher lip with a danger level between 2 and 3 stars. Without wasting time, he charged towards the creature. Its mouth started to open, revealing something. It was a huge tongue, now heading towards the boy. Quickly, he managed to defend himself from the attack using his staff. However, he felt that something was different. The creature had managed to grab his weapon with its tongue. Taking advantage of the contact between them, it retracted its limb. With the force exerted, he ended up being pulled along with the staff. Before getting closer to the creature, he'd let go of it. If he hadn't done that, he would have been in its jaws. From above, safely, he looked at the monster again. Leaving his position, he prepared to land a kick. The attack was accurate, he succeeded. From a distance, the girl watched attentively, waiting for the right time to strike. Calmly, he picked up the staff from the ground. That was terrifying for her, and she hadn't expected that creature to still be alive when they arrived, but its survival ability is high. But the boy said that it wasn't just that. He had kept it alive longer on purpose, in case anyone arrives there, and that will serve as a warning, as that creature tends to scream to call its allies whenever it feels its life is in danger. The girl didn't understand and wanted to know who he wanted to warn with the alarm. It was for himself, because he couldn't just sit around waiting. Another figure appeared, saying he had a lot to clean up, and that after that he ended up feeling a bit exhausted. The girl was very apprehensive, and she wanted to know if they knew each other. The one who had arrived said that this wasn't very normal. These two were too new to be smugglers. Looking more closely at them, he saw a crest on the girl's clothing. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Now he was on the ground in front of them, asking if they were from the warrior school. Answering the question, the girl said they were. If that's the case, he didn't even know what kind of team they were, but it's a pity, because they were going to end up dying in that place. Hearing this, the girl was terrified. The boy asked why she was paying attention to those words. That person wasn't a normal explorer, as she should have guessed. He was a villain who had come to kill him and steal the royal jelly. Then he said he must not have contact with his commissioner, and shouldn't touch his things without authorization. But he said he only had to deal with the consequences of his actions if caught, and that so far, he had been very lucky. He had heard that his companion was smuggling a highly valuable item. The plan was to ambush him along the way, but things ended up happening differently. He failed the task of having to exterminate them. He confirmed that he had entered there but still hadn't managed to find him, but he imagines that he must be hiding somewhere smugglers use. Hearing this, the boy realized that this was why contact had been cut off at the smuggling center, and not because of the wasp's venom. It was all the work of the guy who had just appeared, even without having started fighting. Jerryong could already sense the situation. That opponent would be tough, and even suggested that he could provide a painless death if they cooperated. This man was certainly ranked higher than the weirdo they encountered earlier. Jerryong told the girl to find the coins and run because he would buy them some time. With the deeds of that guy, there shouldn't be too many monsters left and she should run fast. While he was still talking to her, the weirdo had started his attack. Even though it had been abnormally fast, his sword missed the target. Now the boy reinforced the command for her to flee and stop being stupid. For them to make money, it was necessary for her to be okay. Seeing her leave, the weirdo got upset. He said that wasn't a wise decision. Working together until now has increased their chances of survival. But the boy wasn't thinking we focus in determination. His staff was wielded with mastery and violence. This scared the weirdo. who realized his movements had been telegraphed. Now something was headed towards his face. It was the sole of Jaryong's foot which had stomped his face furiously. The weirdo's body flew from the impact, but the boy knew that things weren't over yet. He heard the weirdo say he was surprised by what had happened. Indeed, he had underestimated them for being young, but now he would use his equipment. Even though he was young, he was better than the average professional, so the weirdo would be quick. This was Yang Dogen, a gold-class adventurer. The ground was cracked with multiple fissures. The kettle had been heated, and someone said that wasn't bad at all. In fact, his instant noodles were very good. Looking at the bald man, he offered him some, but he declined. He should at least sit down, and it would take a while for the guy to wake up from his beauty sleep. The bald man was furious, as he paid a lot of money to the guy who was sleeping in the middle of the job. He walked around arrogantly saying he had been an adventurer. The other man told him not to be so hard on him. He didn't lose because he was bad. He lost because he needed to. What people ignore is that adventurers don't just fight humans. That guy must have been trained in hunting and exploring, not in meeting to fight another person. Not being used to it, it's expected that he would lose to his smuggler. The bald man was outraged and said that even among adventurers, he had heard different things. And indeed, among them, there are those who fight a lot with each other. The better they get, the greater the rewards and fights become inevitable. Even companions end up giving into greed and betraying their colleagues. Hearing that, the bald man didn't want to believe that they kill each other, but there's no one to stop them. Not to mention that there are no rules inside the dungeons. You just say a monster killed him. It doesn't even require an alibi. In fact, the higher their rank, the more they need to be prepared to fight others. But things aren't that simple. The sleeper's class wasn't high enough, which is why he's on the ground now. Attacking a companion, that's cute. And if you got caught, it means a peaceful fight happened outside the dungeon. It was certainly a discussion without equipment, but the bald man didn't know what equipment was. It's the weapons and armor that the adventurer takes to the dungeon, even if it's insignificant. With them, even the sleeper could have put up more of a fight. They're strong enough to make a difference. Equipment is half of an adventurer's combat ability. He knew the weirdo hadn't dodged his attack. That blow is accurate and forceful, hitting him squarely. The blade has high defense. While thinking, the weirdo told him not to get distracted. Faced with the imminent blow, he blocked the strike with his staff. Being distracted is not very respectful on his part, neither to his opponent nor to his own life, which could end in the blink of an eye. Taking advantage of the moment, he kicked the boy in the stomach. The blow was very strong. He was thrown several meters. Before crashing into something, he stopped his advance by planting his feet on the ground. As soon as he stopped, the weirdo was already on top of him once again and delivered several slashes with his blade. Unable to block all of them, some small cuts found their way to his body. A small wound appeared on his cheek. The weirdo was now very confident and taunted him, telling him to fight like before if he was capable. That was impossible. The shadow jacket was an S-rank armor and the weirdo was wearing one. It uses the user's blood to increase defense against physical damage as well as boost strength. That weirdo at this very moment was using berserker combat. It would be hard to find openings, but not impossible. However, if he attempted a poorly planned counterattack, you would die without a doubt. The battle continued and the weirdo was out of control. A quick slash was made at abdomen height. This caused the boy to panic, and the weirdo said he had fallen for his feet. Even so, he had lasted a long time. However, that wasn't what he expected to see. The boy asked him if today was some special day, taking off the jacket he was wearing. He stood up and said that he really liked the weirdo's jacket. Despite everything, that guy wasn't as strong as he had imagined. He had been scared because the guy had a huge aura, but if he didn't do more than that against an unequipped student, he must be a mediocre fighter who relies on it. If the boy had a jacket like that, hearing these words hit the weirdo's ego hard. He started screaming uncontrollably and said the boy would pay for his insolence. Garyon knew that the one who needed to hurry was not him. His opponent had to win the fight, find Serum, and finish her off. The advantage was his if he kept driving out the fight. This would make the weirdo impatient, and Garyon was well aware of that. His focus and concentration were entirely on that goal. The weirdo advanced furiously to finish the battle. In front of him, the boy prepared to defend himself. The clash between the weapons was powerful and made an aura from both. When he was just a little kid, he learned this just by watching. This was the second technique. A vortex of blue aura emerged between them. His strength wasn't enough for this, so he needed the enemy's strength to use it against him and inflict an attack he would be able to do on his own. The name of this technique, which he hadn't even perfected yet, is Swell, and its effect is devastating. That single blow had been extremely powerful. The explosion created by the impact was enormous. He now supported his staff on the ground. His insides were injured. The technique had taken a high toll. He hadn't imagined he would use that in a real fight. It hadn't even crossed his mind. And to think that a professional adventurer would be someone who only attacked head-on and nothing more. He invited the weirdo to give up as his time was up. Drawing a dagger, he told the boy to shut his mouth. His hands were trembling, as if they were afraid. Unexpectedly, he stabbed his own chest with it. The boy hadn't expected that. But the weirdo said that no matter what happened, he would make sure of one thing: killing that brat. On the 5th floor of the department store, something was happening. Serum seemed to have reached her destination. She had come across a box. Then she placed her hand on the blue circle. The box confirmed her identification number and her identity. Now that she had found it, all she had to do was return. Suddenly, she felt something different in the air. She looked back to observe. She remembered what Garyon had told her to run away, because she needed to be okay. That was the only way they would get money. Now she was thinking that nothing would change even if she fled. The effort to believe in those words was enormous. In her mind, only the weirdo's face appeared. Surely he wouldn't fight if he didn't know a way to escape. Now she contemplated the choices she could make. The weirdo used to enjoy bullying at school. It was one of his favorite pastimes. Indeed, he was a consequence, just like being the dominant figure among his peers. But there was a complication at that time, a goal he hadn't achieved. He had been rejected by the warrior school. As consolation, he believed that they made political decisions favoring money over talent. For him, it was the only possible explanation, because if it were based on talent and skill alone, there was no way he wouldn't have been accepted there. In a test of perseverance, he had ranked first. Compared to the average young person, he wasn't just a genius, he was well above them. Once again, he had ranked highly, something that didn't even surprise his classmates. But he liked knowing that he had become a topic of conversation. Now, they were facing the last task before graduation. After the graduation ceremony, someone appeared. The headmaster congratulated him and said he would be an excellent adventurer. As advice, he told him not to become conceited and to always keep moving forward. Listening to this, he only thought that in front of him was Trash, who had retired early and now had a mediocre job. He was determined to rub it in his face that he would reach a place in life that people like the headmaster could only dream of. Now he was lying on the dungeon floor, terrified. The one who rescued him said he had come quickly because he thought the situation was dangerous, but he hadn't expected it to be such a weak monster. That very monster had killed his entire team without difficulty. They weren't a match for reality. The adventurer looked at him with a gaze that was familiar to him. It was the same one he used to give to other people. It was at that moment that he realized the old man's words weren't advice. Those were words of comfort about his future. He wasn't one of the chosen. He was just better than the average person. The mediocre looked up to him, but he was only slightly better than them. That jacket was made entirely from a living vampire, and he allowed all his blood to flow to his heart. That's the price for him to kill the boy. In response, he asked if he was sure about that because this little trick seemed like he would give him a hangover, but the weirdo advanced without hesitation. The force of the impact was violent. Despite the change, his speed hadn't increased much, just his appearance, which was horrifying. The attacks were strong and unpredictable. To the boy's surprise, the weirdo's arm was now stretching. Of all the unexpected things that had happened that day, this was yet another one. Blood dripped onto the ground. The weirdo looked at his victim, who was panting. His stance was defensive, but he was worn out. Somehow, he had managed to block the attack. Indeed, good reaction speed and plenty of talent. The weirdo wanted to know why he had become a smuggler, but the boy didn't understand the question. Opening something with his mouth, he asked what was with that sudden compliment. Because whatever he did with his life wasn't his business. Regardless of the answer, the weirdo thanked him. Thanks to the boy, now he would be able to step on a talented person. Excited, he prepared to fulfill a dream. However, the boy wasn't going to let that happen so easily. Despite the damage he had taken, his body moved without any problem. Seeing this, the weirdo became even more excited and wanted to show even more talent. The boy knew that this horrible form couldn't be maintained for long. If his fuel was blood, it was obvious that there would be a limit someday. So he could provoke him to use even more blood and force him to use the needle. But the weirdo was already aware of what could happen. Now it was too late for the boy. The weirdo was about to land another blow. Unexpectedly, a blazing explosion occurred on his shoulder. The boy looked to the side to see what happened. His friend had returned to help him. Smiling at her, he hadn't imagined that would happen. Really, she never listened to anything he says. That behavior of hers is very touching at times. With the weirdo within range of his staff, he struck in once again. The place was now filled with rubble. The emptiness was filled only by a thin mist. On the ground lay the weirdo's body, though they still didn't know if he was truly dead. But the boy didn't think that had been enough for that outcome and told him enough to worry about it. With a picture of him, he said he certainly wouldn't attempt revenge or he might risk his entire career. He was sure that would be enough for now. Picking up his staff from the ground, he asked if she had already forgotten. He'd saved her life, so she owned one. That makes 2 times now. Once at the beginning and the second when she decided to follow him. But since he's a generous person, he'll only count it as 1. Annoyed, the girl wanted to know if that hurt him to say sorry. In the building's parking lot, the destruction was complete. From a hole in the ground, golden light emanated. They looked at it and the light as well. Surely it must be something interesting. Descending the stairs, they got closer and closer to the source of the glow. As they approached, they began to smell something sweet in the air. Near the bottom of the staircase, they could could observe better. There was a body on the ground and, in its lap, a briefcase. Apparently, the golden glow they had seen from outside was coming from it. He cautiously approached the body. In front of it, he closed his eyes as if paying respects. Looking at the girl, he said he had already warned her about the things she would see, but she had followed him anyway. Since they were already there, they decided to take a look inside the briefcase. Placing his hands on it, he began to open it. The smell they were experiencing was beyond their ability to describe. Sweet and captivating. It almost invited those who smelled it to forget what they were thinking. Exposed like that, it was surely attracting monsters to the place. Looking at the object beside it, he wondered if there was royal jelly in that bag too. His gut told him they should leave soon because weird things might happen if they stay too long. As they exited, they quickly made it to the first floor. The murder's body was no longer there. If alive, he must have escaped. A scream echoed, startling her, saying they should wait for what was to come. He said he remembered each of their faces well, and from then on, he would do everything possible to destroy them. No one made sure they regret what was done to him that day. The weirdo runs with hatred in his eyes, but soon realizes that life is full of surprises. In front of him is a monster so humbly, it has already leaped toward him with its mouth wide open. This wasn't the end he had expected to meet. With no way to react, he ended up becoming monster food. His revenge would have to wait for another life, maybe if he was born a nice guy. Not even the kids who had spared him expected his karma to be paid so quickly. Perhaps it would be better for them to leave through the back door. Outside, the sun begins to set on the horizon. After walking for a while, he imagines they must be safe now. Looking at the girl, he asked about her test, but it seems she still has time. Then he extended his hand to say goodbye, saying it was great to have met her. Even though it had been good, both had now finished their purposes together. On her face was a sincere smile about it. They shook hands, both content with what they had accomplished. As they were leaving, he reminded her about secrecy and payment and to be careful in life in case she didn't want to see him again. But there was something she wanted to say. She wanted to know if it was okay for them to see each other again. On the ground were discarded wrappers. Cabalino looked to the side, interested. The boy had returned, and from his torn clothes, it seemed he had had quite a bit of fun. Now they wanted to take a look inside the briefcase as well. The characteristic Globian to emerge. It would be insane if that were released to the public. It would be enough to buy a few buildings. He congratulated the boy on the job and said he would send the payment soon. Smoking his cigarette, he looked at him once again. Jeryong seemed strange, so Cabalino wanted to know if everything was okay with him. He wanted to know if it was because of the adventurer who died while fighting him, but he died afterward, and it wasn't a situation he should feel remorse about. Cabalino asked if anything else had happened while he was there. The boy dodged the question, saying it was nothing and that you should stop asking. Looking at the briefcase, he asked if he could take what was left as it didn't seem to be royal jelly. Of course, all items that weren't part of the objective belonged to the smuggler. That was the rule. He wanted to know who the child that would eat it was. It could bring the dead back, but it had another use besides that. It could increase each individual's limits, boosting their potential talent. There wasn't much clarity on it, but it only worked on those who hadn't reached adulthood, so they wouldn't give it to someone for whom it wouldn't work. It was surely for someone from the warrior school. Jeryong said he was leaving, and Cabalino wished him good luck. He sent a message to give to her father to say hello, and the boy said he would if he got the chance. Recently, he hadn't been doing very well. Outside, he looked at the color of the twilight sky and thought about the warrior school. He remembered what the girl had said to him. Directly, he wanted to know if she was interested in him, but she said she wasn't joking. There was an admission exam in the winter. They accepted only a few people, but he had a good chance of getting in. Looking at him, she emphasized that he should try. No adventurer can explore a dungeon alone, no matter how skilled they are. Facing the unreal situations of dungeons alone is practically impossible. That's why a team is necessary. Different people with different talents combine their abilities to overcome weaknesses and become stronger. That's how dungeons are explored. This school has political factions, and he wanted to know if they fought against each other. If it were that simple, they wouldn't have to worry about them. In their class, there were two factions. The two in the top three led the factions. Hearing this, he wanted to know if she belonged to one and found out that she hadn't joined them. And about the situation, the teachers don't interfere, because it's the students' responsibility to find their team. She knew he was implying that this happened because she wasn't that skilled, and she also knew she wouldn't be a top student. Even so, she should manage to find a team. Even those non-factions could do it, and one of the faction leaders didn't like her. It wasn't explicit, but it was noticeable. Behind her back, she intentionally isolated her from the others. Jerry Allen wanted to know if she had stolen that girl's boyfriend, and of course that wasn't the reason. In any case, she had survived alone so far, but wouldn't be able to do so in the upcoming years. That's why she wanted to hire Jerry Allen. With his ability, or rather with him alone, she might have a chance to survive. Thinking about this, she looked at the medicines on the counter. Indeed, she's quite a funny girl. The girl's side is ousted, having had a turbulent day. She finally arrived where she wanted and announced her presence. She's at the dungeon barrier and ganged him at the 12th location. Meanwhile, she thought about the boys she had met. As she was leaving, he said he had listened well to what she said and wished her good luck. In her mind, she imagined he wouldn't wouldn't talk to her about the subject. While she was thinking, someone said she wasn't late. It was Kang, one of her instructors responsible for hand-to-hand combat training. She wanted to know if something had happened since she still had time, and he said there had been a problem. Monsters not common in certain areas had been seen. There were no casualties, but some students said completing the test was impossible and requested help. Those students were in the same area where she had retrieved the coin. Looking at her, he wanted to know if she had any trouble with the task. Anxiously, she said she hadn't. He listened without reacting and didn't question her, but he ordered her to stay behind him, and the girl felt a monster's presence there. She turned to him and became even more frightened. Another one, but the one that ate the weirdo, but even larger. A tight nape in that area was quite unusual, since they don't live anywhere nearby. Maybe it had been attracted by something, and the girl began to imagine what it could have been. There was certainly the smell she had sensed earlier. The instructor told Saram once again to stay behind him, and she apologized. That monster was completely focused on eating them. All the instructors at this school were once adventurers. Some left the profession due to the lingering effects of injuries sustained throughout their lives. That's what people on the outside think about them. A single punch from that instructor was devastating. The force was so immense that the Titan was being subdued. Fire began to rise rapidly up his arm. As soon as it reached the head, it was obliterated. The monster's lifeless body fell to the ground. These instructors, when they were younger, earned the title of Rancors. Even in death, the monster's head kept exploding. His prosthetic had been destroyed, and he said the girl was lucky he was there, because this could have ended in a very dangerous way. Even so, he rested his hand on her shoulder. It's very good to know she's safe. Now it's time to return to a safe place. People sometimes ignore the fact that the instructors there are also warriors. Back at school, they asked about the students who requested rescue. Those students went out to retake the test, which was very fortunate. He said the people who went there were just weaklings. As they talked, he said one of the weaklings was arriving. Looking at her, the one armed man told her to go in and wait. He would confirm that everyone was there and she was to check the numbers and put on the uniform. Indeed, she felt much more relieved now. A girl said she had told her she would be fine. At least her tactic was quick. This fake person was Anisha, and she said she was very worried about her classmate. In response, she said she didn't imagine she would be worried. Continuing with the cynicism, she said it wasn't for her, that it was her sister saying those things. It all started 6 years ago. Zeke, Saram's uncle, said she needed to increase her output. She should pay attention and stay focused, but that required too much effort from her. He finished the exercise, so that was enough, and that at least she had improved since the last time, but it was only a little. On the other side, she heard someone cheering. Exhausted, she looked to see what was happening. It was her sister showing much more talent. Anisha mastered that technique with ease. Not only did she not resemble a hybrid in appearance, but she could use magic with more mastery than many pure bloods. He said her cousin was a genius, and if she wanted to stay on this path, she would always remain in her shadow, and being constantly compared should be the least of her worries. He also suggested she be cautious. A girl seemed sadistic. Still cynical, she said she didn't understand. Why did no one want to be on the same team as her? With the ability she had, then she interrupted her and said that if she was curious, she should form a team with her. She said she couldn't, as they both had the same role dealing magical damage from a distance. It didn't make sense for two people and have the same task. This is the situation that others should deal with, not her. But even so, she shouldn't worry, because she's sure there will be another test. So she said she doesn't care about the test because she already passed. Anisha says she's impressed, and that her sister must have done her best. But she advised her not to try too hard. After all, she's the one who has to inherit the company anyway. This brief interaction left her deeply irritated. What Anisha really wants is for her to stop trying. It's already nighttime. The lights are visible in the building. The door suddenly opens. Jairong is very agitated now. The patient's guardian has arrived and Jairong wants to know if something has gone wrong. Unfortunately, his father has had a relapse. The doctors don't know how else to explain it. This patient has an extremely rare condition, possibly the only person in the world with it. There's no record in medical literature of anyone else who has been poisoned by dragon's blood and survived. Jairong knows the best they can do is palliative care to reduce his father's pain and nothing more. But that's not the only problem. The ingredients for the painkillers are also an issue. The milk of an extremely dangerous monster is the only thing that can relieve the pain at this stage. The flying tiger, a 5-star danger level monster. He says he has money, but the doctor was categorical in stating that the problem isn't the money. There's a new potion popular among adventurers, which increases strength and endurance for a long time, even in small doses. One of his ingredients is the milk of this beast. This was an ingredient that could once be bought with money, as it was considered useless, valuable. But things have changed and now companies and adventurers are buying large quantities of it. Jairong is furious that they're going to have a little to save a person who's dying, but the doctor said that's not the issue. The amount he needs is the same as what's used to make 10 of those potions. If there were enough patients who needed it, the government might intervene. But since there's only one in the entire world, that's not going to happen because there's no public health system like the SUS in Korea. They will do what they can, but without the ingredient, there's not much that can be done. After this devastating news, he sits on a park bench deep in thought. Life seems to be getting more and more complicated. He took out his phone to call someone. It was the girl he met earlier he was calling. He asked if it was too late to call, but she said it was fine. Directly, he said that he doesn't have many options left, besides accepting her offer. Hearing this, she wanted to know if she had any conditions. After listening, she said she could take a look and that things might work out that way. He's still incredulous that she can pull this off, but she said yes. It's her company that makes that potion, and since he doesn't need much, it's an achievable request. He hadn't expected to hear that, but he's happy. If that's the case, it seems they have a verbal agreement. She reminded him that he needs to prepare for the admission exam. There's nothing to lose by preparing ahead of time. The next day, he goes to the company's headquarters building. She said he had arrived early. As he approached, she asked how he was feeling, and he said he was fine. Jaren wanted to know what they were going to do there. She said they were going to measure his potential. The world has changed a lot, and before that, an ordinary human could only reach level D. Those who reached level C were basically geniuses. Anything above B is beyond human. Excluding magic, you need to be at least C in 5 categories to become an explorer. To go to the warrior school, you need to be B in at least 3 of them. Jaren wanted to know if they were just going to do a physical test on him. They give out with children, but after puberty, it's a bit more complex. He wanted to know what made it more complex. Dressed in an exotic suit, he found out why it got more complicated. It should have clicked when she asked him how he was feeling. In front of him was a battle robot. Since they were there, he was interested in doing his best because he was curious. To find out what his potential was, Jaren prepared to fight the robot. A blue light began to emerge from the dummy, just as smoke started to come out of it. The girl watched impressed by this start. With her was another woman who said he was brave. Most people get scared of the golem. This is Jong, a golem specialist, and she's curious about the determination of the boy who wants to transfer. She smiles discreetly, as she knows that's not quite the case, placing her cup on the table after drinking her coffee. It was time to begin the aptitude test. The golem's pieces start moving. It prepares to attack the person in front of it. Jaren isn't intimidated by it at all. This test usually takes place between the 6th and 7th year, and the suit is used to ensure the data is collected with precision. This way, the body can be pushed to its limit in several areas, but it's difficult to measure whether they're truly talented or if they've simply trained for a long time. She knows Jaren is physically gifted. It won't be easy to push him to his limit. Even so, he should be tired by now. The other woman calls out to Serum. She wants to confirm if this boy really failed the admission to a specialized school, because she's very curious now. So talented, he must have failed something truly difficult. Even with produced difficulty, that model is used to train professionals. With a few dodges, he identified a pattern and found an opening to strike. He's simply insane with his abilities. Just with his senses, he's already better than the average professional. Serum wants to know the result of the measurement. That's a bit more complicated because he clearly hasn't reached his limit yet. It's necessary to increase the difficulty of the test, but it doesn't make sense to increase the difficulty by just 1 or 2 levels. It needs to be pushed to full strength, and she wants to know if Serum is aware of the risks. It's a crime to do this with unregistered professionals, but if they don't, there's no way to know his limits. She tries to think of a possibility. As she enters the room, someone says she isn't paid to do this kind of thing. She turns, startled to see who just arrived. It's the director, Zeke, who said the lab can't be used without reporting the reason. Serum sees her uncle. They hadn't expected him to come here on a Sunday. He said he hopes there's a reason she's willing to get arrested for. Serum says she's solely responsible as it was her who requested this. Zeke wants to know if it was really her, or if it's just an excuse to cover for her employee. Serum shouldn't confuse herself. This place belongs to her father, not her. There's nothing she can do to take responsibility for herself. The rumors about the director are indeed true. He's her maternal uncle and has always been cold towards her, even though she's done nothing wrong. It's the weekend, and other adventurers with ties to the company also use this place. He was about to continue his lecture, but Jae-rong spoke through the intercom. He wanted to know if there was a problem. Zeke wants to know who that is and if he's on her level. The employee says he's a friend of Serum's. She explained that he had failed admission exams and lost his potential registration, which is why he was here. Since it's costly, she just wanted to help a friend who couldn't afford it. Zeke looked at the golem, which seemed to have taken a beating. Thinking about what he just saw, he said he would handle this. The employee wanted to know what he meant by that. He heard that the golem wasn't enough and couldn't be taken out of safe mode, so he's going to go down and face this friend himself. Jae-rong still doesn't know if everything's okay. It's not uncommon for adventurers to get into conflicts with each other when it's difficult to find someone's limits. And in this particular case, the opponent is several levels above the one taking the test. Zeke said he'd skip the introduction because he doesn't have much time to spare. Jae-rong quickly realized that guy is definitely not not normal. He has no idea who he's about to face, but his senses immediately went on high alert. Zeke told him to do his best. The weirdo from before had been the first person he fought. No matter how he looked at him, he felt he wasn't a beatable opponent. Hearing the order to attack, he hesitated. He didn't need to worry about Zeke's safety, so Jae-rong began planning his attack. He started channeling his aura. Finally, he initiated his charge. Zeke stood still waiting for contact. Despite appearances, Zeke is the 7th strongest ranker in all of Korea, a white-class adventurer. Jae-rong couldn't identify a single opening, but he won't give up. He's going to create the opportunity. His combat strategy is simple. As soon as his opponent dodges, he will execute a single attack from behind. To do that, he'll use the opening created by the dodge. His staff was blocked with a single hand. That wasn't the result he was aiming for. Zeke is really strong. Zeke remarked that this kid is even more reckless than he had initially imagined. With Jae-rong in front of him, Zeke struck him with a single kick. Jae-rong felt the impact, which was brutal. His body was hurled toward the wall. However, he can't understand one thing: whether he attacked that way because he knew it was a simulation, or if he actually thought it would work. It doesn't matter what the answer is. The choice is foolish in both cases. With his foot, Zeke kicked the staff back into his hands. Even though Jae-rong is still conscious, he had lost the only weapon he had. This made Jae-rong more alert, and it made sense. Then Zeke returned the staff to him. So far, Zeke had been lenient with the boy's foolish choices. One more mistake, and Zeke promised he would make sure Jae-rong regretted ever becoming an adventurer. He spread his feet, assuming an offensive stance. Jae-rong doesn't know exactly why, but he senses that Zeke holds some kind of grudge against him, though he won't take it personally. He moved forward again to attack. Zeke assumed that since the approach was similar to the previous one, it would follow the same pattern. However, Jae-rong planted one of his feet firmly on the ground that made Zeke extremely alert. Before him, 2 attacks were coming his way. That ranged attack to catch him off guard afterward. Still not enough. Jae-rong said that this guy probably isn't satisfied yet, which is good because he had just begun. His staff was now glowing with a bright blue light. He prepared to execute a powerful attack. Zeke still didn't know what to expect from the boy. Once again, a series of attacks came his way. Exhaling some of his aura, Zeke said it wasn't bad at all. He clenched his fists tightly. Poised, he managed to defend against all the incoming attacks. From above, the employee observed the fight, thinking it looked like a battle between 2 professionals, given the technical level of the fight. It's hard to believe that this boy hadn't been accepted into any school yet. To be honest, it's not like he's perfect at everything. Serum wanted to know what she meant by that. He has a weakness that hinders him a lot. In that same aspect, she said Serum is far superior to him, and Serum wondered what that could be, because apparently he's fighting Zeke on equal footing. Now she's curious to know what's wrong with him. Jae-rong narrowly avoided a blow. That punch nearly hit his unprotected face. Employees started watching the fight with concern. Jae-rong had lost any advantage and was being struck repeatedly. He was in agony, unable to react quickly enough to block the attacks, but he mustered all his determination to fight back. He swung his staff in a way that pushed his opponent back. Zeke commented that Jae-rong managed to maintain control of the staff at the last moment. That was certainly true. Zeke's fists sunk into the boy's abdomen. Once again, Jae-rong was thrown towards the wall. The director is truly exceptional, and she knows he's still holding back. Serum watches the fight closely. Zeke tells Jae-rong not to dwell on defeat as it would have happened either way, but his journey to accepting defeat is pitiful. Jae-rong lacks basic training. This is the same opinion the employee has about him. His talent and reflexes are indeed exceptional, but the fundamentals are missing. It's as if he's never trained in his life. She even feels disappointed, thinking that if he had been trained in the basics, his potential would have been immense. Serum remembered that Jae-rong had told her he had never been taught by anyone. Zeke said he had seen many people like him. Even though they're talented, it don't dedicate themselves to refining what they already possess, but Serum knows that's not the case with him. Zeke gave him some credit for that. However, he strongly suggested that Jae-rong give up. Someone as weak as him could end up dead if he relies only on talent. Standing up, Jae-rong said that Zeke has no idea about something. He's been talking so much nonsense, it's like he hates him for thinking he's lazy. Zeke was surprised because he had intended for his last strike to end the fight. Jae-rong said he doesn't care about the results, but wants to go for one more round, because now he'll show him the result of his hard work. The employee asked what was going on with them. She found it amusing that they wanted to continue fighting, but they already had enough data to calculate his potential. Even Serum tried to intervene, saying it wasn't necessary to keep going. He could stop now and check his results. Zeke says that he doesn't know what he intends to do, but no matter what he does, the result will always be the same. He even thinks that the boy wants words of affirmation from him. To be frank, that's not quite what he's seeking. Jae-rong is really irritated, and all he wants right now is to beat up this arrogant elf. With no one to teach him, he had to learn everything from scratch in his own way. Even so, things weren't that bad. He really has a natural talent. That's how he managed to fill the gaps that basic training would have taught him. Besides, he has vast field experience that made him capable of doing whatever he wanted. Exceptional progress, but it never crosses his mind that he was better than the others. In fact, he was often disappointed by the frauds who in the end were weaker than him. But that elf over there is different from everyone else. Zeke now wants to hit him so hard that the boy won't even feel anger. He's a monster beyond Jae-rong's reach. Seeing the aura being exhaled, he notices something. Now he's really being taken seriously by the elf. When faced with someone he considered a real challenge, his blood started boiling without him noticing. Watching the scene, the employee says this is madness and doesn't know why the director is like that too. Serum noticed that his base is different from before. His posture and weight distribution are a little more aggressive. Now they are two completely different people from before. Jae-rong calmly sighs after preparing himself. He initiated his attack. This time, things would be different. He executes his first strike, which is intense. Even though Zeke dodged, his cheek was superficially cut. Not even the employee can believe what she's seeing. Jae-rong is really attacking in a different way. However, even so, Zeke continues to dodge everything. Compared to before, they are still simple and rough movements, but there are no more openings. She doesn't know who taught him, but that is simply phenomenal. All Jae-rong wants now is to beat this elf. He remembers who he used to observe when he was a child. Everything that man did, he imitated as best as he could. Tired of dodging, Zeke catches the staff with one of his hands and begins his counterattack, which the boy defends. When he was just a little Jae-rong, he happily imitated. Now he's facing the strongest opponent he's ever encountered, so he definitely wants to beat him up too. That man found the little child's dedication interesting. This time, Zeke landed a hit. He looked somewhat intrigued by that tiny beam. Zeke missed. Jae-rong had narrowly dodged the attack. The little boy seemed quite interested in it. Now he wields his staff to deliver a counterattack. He looks evilly to see what will happen. Jae-rong is fully confident in his abilities. The man just patted his little head and looked at him full of admiration. That attack would have been devastating if it had hit. Zeke had to jump. As soon as he lands, there will be an opening. He knows that if Jae-rong strikes, he won't be able to dodge, but he's determined to give him what he's been seeking in this fight. Since he can't dodge, he goes straight for the boy. They watch too impressed with what's happening. Smoke rises in the arena. That was the final blow. If he hadn't used this bizarre staff technique, he would certainly have won if he had continued. Zeke wants to know if this is a display of pride on his part, smiling. He says it's not. He simply only knew that much. That's all he had memorized. In the end, he just ended up taking an even worse beating. Even so, that wasn't bad at all. Zeke is not very well liked among his peers because he's annoying, but no one can complain about his actions because his skills are truly powerful. Extending his hand over Jae-rong's face, he prepares to do something. The aura begins to gently increase. In response to his niece's concern, he tells her not to worry. The boy will be fine. He just healed his wounds. He just wanted to confirm with her if the boy's name is Yu Jae-rong. Zeke is one of the top 10 rankers in the whole country, and he didn't expect something like this that day. Who would have thought he'd meet the son of that guy here? Zeke is the greatest healer in Korea. The sun finally starts to set. Someone tells Zeke that if he was going to be late, he could have at least sent a message. He could have at least had a coffee and relaxed, and how they'll be late for the briefing again. And every time they're late, people always think it's his fault. But Zeke says something happened and it took longer than expected. The young man says he heard that Zeke was dueling with a boy, but given the delay, he thinks it must have been several. As soon as he looks at him closely, he's surprised. There's a small mark on his cheek. Looking more closely, his surprise grows, piquing Zeke's curiosity. He wants to confirm if that thing on his cheek is really a cut. Impatient, Zeke asks what else it could be if not a cut. But he can't believe it, so this boy must be ready to go to school and he must be 16. But Zeke says he's 17. It seems he'll try to enter the warrior school during the winter admission. Indeed, it exists. But no one has passed in the last 3 years. For sure, he has a chance. Cutting Zeke's cheek is not something easy. This new generation is really coming in more and more terrifying. Zeke says comparing people with elves is disproportionate, and he's sure the boy is no different from the young man. Kang says there must be a difference. He's ranked 19th of Black Class Explorer leader of the Nyx attack squad. He believes he has the upper hand over the boy, both in talent and experience. He's only 21 and graduated from school a year and a half ago. Zeke just sighs after hearing that. He said he hadn't seen that car yet, and the young man said he barely spends his money, so he allows himself certain privileges. Jerry-on remains lying on a stretcher. After some time, he finally gets up. Looking at his hands, he notices that all his wounds have been healed, and besides that, he doesn't feel any pain. The girl says he's finally awake. She wants to know what he was thinking, and if he really thought he could win, but he says that wasn't quiet. He'd just been really angry, and was the other guy who had started it. But even she doesn't understand why her uncle would want to fight the boy, and Jerry-on wants to know if they are really related, and indeed they are. He's her uncle on her mother's side. Faced with his silence, she becomes curious, but he just says everything's fine. He said they seem to have a good relationship, which is noticeable by the way he treats her, but she didn't understand where he got that conclusion from. But Jerry-on said it's just as he said. You could feel this concern that a stranger might be taking advantage of his niece, and you can't fault him for that. But she says her uncle isn't really that kind of person, and that in fact he's very strict. The staff member enters the room as well, noticing that he's already awake. She asks if he feels any pain, but he responds that his body is fine. Indeed, she sure would have healed even old injuries. It might not seem like it, but the director is the greatest healer in the country, and that leaves him perplexed. Even being that strong, combat isn't his primary role. Jae-ryong smiles as he realizes this. In any case, it's a relief that he's okay, and she already has the evaluation results. Handing him the tablet, she showed the information. It's really very good, says Saram. He's in stamina and agility, B in strength and endurance, and C in intelligence. Looking at the data he wants to know through that good, she shouts in frustration for him to shut up, and the staff member wonders if he's really ready to join the school. To be a high-level explorer, you need to have at least some B ratings in your skills. However, it's necessary to have balanced stats. There's no point in being too agile if you lack stamina. Even if you're very strong, all that strength is useless without agility. She says that even normal people have C rank abilities, but things change when you have more than one. Having C or higher in strength, stamina, and agility is something one person in 10,000 possesses. If there be, it's 1.5 million, and that alone places him among the best explorers. He not only has it B in strength, but A in the other two. Besides being balanced, his stats are way above average. Even though it's his first year, he's going to be on the same level as that monster. Looking at him, she asked if he wants to hear something interesting. The person he had just fought doesn't have a single stat higher than A. Stats are just the total potential. They don't translate to what a person has in practical ability. Even with good stats, the real difference comes from training. And that's not the only variable. There's also what can't be measured, like fighting spirit and field experience. It may seem a bit cruel at first, but she has seen many explorers who have filled those gaps through sheer determination. Sarah blushed because she knew the woman was talking about her. After hearing all that, he thanked her for the story he had heard. In fact, he's not disappointed or anything like that. He just doesn't quite understand it yet. But there's someone he knows, and compared to that person, he's far behind. A staff member was surprised that he knew someone like that. That's not common at all. It must surely be a famous person, and he kind of is more or less. Saram says they're done for the day, and they could meet again next week. But since they were there, the staff member suggested they visit the medicine production section. However, the girl is hesitant, unsure if her uncle would be upset with this decision. But the staff member said the director had already authorized it. Saram doesn't believe it, and wants to know if he said that before leaving. His words were that as soon as the boy woke up, he should be taken to where the equipment is made, and to tell everyone that the boy is his guest. Even to the point of making a weapon that adapts to him no matter the cost. Saram could hardly believe it. Quality equipment is the dream of any adventurer, even if he's extremely talented. If the equipment is of low quality, it won't keep up with its user's power. As the skills are perfected, the explorer needs better equipment that can keep up with them. Faced with that, Garang can't understand the situation. He doesn't know if he needs equipment now since he's only going to school, but Saram says it's not what he thinks. The boy assumes that at school they'll receive equipment for the students. Hearing this, they don't even know what to say. Saram knows it's all her fault. If it were a normal institution, his assumption would be correct. Each school has its own rules about the equipment that can be used. Garang imagined that this is the case with the warrior school since they have the most resources. Jung says it's not about resources, but that the school has different ideals. There's a difference between talent and skill, and obtaining good equipment as a skill in itself. That's why the school requires students to bring their own equipment. To him, this only benefits those who have resources, and he asks them if being rich is a skill. He's not wrong about that, but it's possible for students to have good equipment even if they don't have any money. Entering the school implies that the student has the potential to be a great explorer, with the potential to become a star. That alone can be used as an advantage because there are people who want to invest in that. Students quickly attract the interest of various companies that see business opportunities in them. The offers are incredible since all of them are very large companies. She herself received a scholarship from the Jinsong Group and a guaranteed job until she wanted to retire. Without showing surprise upon hearing this, she finishes by saying that these are the doors that open when you enter the school. What won't be lacking are opportunities for him to prove himself among his peers. However, the first step for him is to pass the test. The transfer exam is more difficult than the admission one, and he needs to prepare obtaining equipment as one of the things that need to be done. That's why the director wanted to help him with that. Since she has already passed the details along, he just needs to go to the refinery in the basement. She wished him luck and hope he could get admitted to the school. Things could have ended badly. Sarah wants to know how, and he says she didn't imagine her uncle would help. The more he hears about the test, the more it seems like people will do anything to pass. That's why she wants to help him, and she's using her own money to do it. Every time she sees that expression on his face, she gets extremely irritated. Even so, it was good to hear that. No matter how much money someone has, it's also important to know who's going to make the equipment. And the equipment production sector of this company is one of the best in the world. Arriving at the forge, he says there shouldn't be much difference between one piece of equipment and another. But what he's seeing makes him think differently. The forge is simply immense. It used to be a dungeon called the Bubbling Abyss. Sarah wants to know what he thinks of all this. That's not a place where you can simply ask for something to be made. A chill runs down his spine as he stands there. A massive figure is behind them both. On its face, a huge eye glows. The boy immediately turns ready to react to the situation. The figure says that Zeke woke him up from his weekend nap, and yet he doesn't even personally come to the forge. Garyon asks if this is a monster, but Serum says it's not. Actually, he's the head of the equipment production division. In truth, the boy isn't entirely wrong either. He's an ancient titan called Argus, and from a human perspective, he's a monster. But he obtained naturalization in Korea through a special rite. Lighting his cigar, he asks who the humans he talked about is. He wants to know if it's this little boy in front of him, or if it's the elf's niece, but she says that the information has already been passed on to him. But he says that digital information is a human thing and he doesn't care about it. His employees are in charge of that, but today is a day off and none of them are around. Even so, that's not important at all. Since he was asked to take care of this personally, it's time to get to work. Bettany asks if the weapon the boy carries is his main one, and Garyon says yes. If that's the case, Argus orders him to try to hunt him. Sarum became anxious and wants to know what he intends with this. For his species, this is necessary. Unless the boy proves worthy, he won't put any effort into the task. Even so, Argus says the boy seems different from others he's seen. His eyes are ready and accustomed to hunting, and he has a sense of hostility that can still be refined, and once again he told the boy to try and give him a beating. Sarum remains anxious about the situation, seeing that Garyon was preparing himself, and she told Argus that he usually doesn't turn down challenges like that. Immediately, his eye widened. The boy was already engaging and attacking him. The staff is wielded with mastery, striking him with force. Sarum watches the beginning of the fight apprehensively. The cigar falls to the ground after the impact to Argus that is simply impossible. Without having suffered any damage, he wants to know where the boy got that weapon. That reaction left Garyon confused. He was sure to hit it been clean. Indeed, there are many monsters he couldn't take down with just one blow. But the feeling he had when he struck this one was like hitting a huge wall. It's not just about strength, it was like hitting an inanimate object. Intrigue wants to know what kind of monster he just hit. And there's another reason Sarum is so worried and distressed. Monsters are given danger classifications designated by stars. 1 star means they are kid wolf killing humans, and monsters in this range can be defeated by a normal person as long as they are armed. With 2 stars, the difficulty rises considerably. They can be defeated by trained people equipped with firearms. Things get much harder with 3 stars. They can only be defeated by armed troops with heavy equipment. With 4 stars, the situation becomes catastrophic. Ground troops focus on evacuating civilians and minimizing casualties. After the evacuation, they are destroyed with artillery and bombs. That's the limit of what the military can handle. Anything about 5 stars is beyond modern military capability. Even if they defeat such a monster, it will be at the cost of massive firepower and nearly irreparable destruction. To reduce the damage, elite squads of the best explorers are sent to deal with these monsters. Argus is a 7-star monster, and once again he asks his question. He wants to know where the boy got that weapon. Jerryong wants to know if it hurt him more than it should have, and he doesn't understand why there are so many questions. Argus says it's good for the boy to think very carefully about the answer he's going to give, because it was he who made that staff. Hearing that, Jerryong was surprised. Now irritated, Argus said he would ask only once more. He wants to know why this weapon is in Jerryong's hands and not in the hands of the person it was made for. It was made by Argus. That weapon alone is ranked above A, and it should be cataloged in the association along with the owner's data and exact location. It's not an item a smuggler could easily get their hands on. Serum doesn't want to believe that he might have stolen the item. Jerryong says he's not going to tell, and besides, he has no reason to answer. Serum says he's being really stupid, and Argus says he understands, and now he will take that into account. Immediately, only one thought was running through his mind. It was death. There was no way to dodge that, and he had no idea how to block the attack. There was no apparent weakness in the hand of that monster. If he tried to absorb the blow, he would end up dead anyway. His only option was the third choice, the last technique he learned by watching his father. The Titan noticed something was happening. Even so, he carried out his attack, striking the ground. When 2 forces collide, the larger and stronger one always wins. But the outcome is different if they are not directly opposing each other by precisely calculating the angle and position. Even though winning wasn't a possibility, it's possible to redirect the resulting force. Serum can't believe he managed to dodge an attack from his 7-star monster. The Titan waits for the next move. His only chance now is to use the needle to strike the monster's single eye. However, before he can even get close, he's caught by the giant's prosthetic hand, which now pulls him closer to its face. He's firmly trapped and can't move. Serum pleads for him to stop saying the boy may seem suspicious, but she says he still doesn't have the right to attack a human and should be aware of the consequences. Except in dangerous situations, naturalized species cannot attack humans. If that happens, the aggressor loses their rights and is treated as a hostile monster. Releasing the boy, he says she shouldn't worry. He understands that clearly, despite everything. He finally realized why the boy has the weapon he made. That's why Zeke woke him from his weekend nap. Faced with that, he apologized and said the boy has every right to carry that weapon, and that he'll make sure to pay him back for his mistake. Then he noticed something with his single eye. It's been 30 years since he was last hurt by an attack. Serum doesn't know what he's talking about because she didn't understand what happened. He asks if they know why he works for humans now. She thinks it's because he was hunted by the attack squad 30 years ago, but he says that's not it. He's surprised that's the story humans tell, as they weren't even able to touch him. The one who hunted him was a man who did it alone. He was the one who cut off his hand and had the chance to take his life, but chose him out too. As he says this, the boy is watching him. Likewise, he looks back at the boy. Arjus has always been an incredibly powerful monster. He was ready to fight against that hunter. In his hands was a battle axe. It was the boy's father who hunted him. The ancient titans are the strongest among the giants. They have an unknown life expectancy, and fewer than 10 of them are known. Their physical abilities are beyond human comprehension, but they are widely known for their skill and forging equipment, which have special powers or even artifacts. This is the skill they are born with. The closest to this are the dwarves. Unlike the titans, the dwarves chose to coexist with humans. The titans, besides not opting for that, saw humans as unworthy. Something happened 30 years ago during Arjus' subjugation. At the door of his forge was an automaton colossus, a 4-star monster. They want to know if the communication channel with the base is still down. All magical communication is cut off. There must be something blocking the signal. Terrified, someone says he's coming and they should prepare for impact. The colossus attacks the invaders without any mercy. The shield bearer tries to hold back the blow of all his strength. Behind the automaton, the girl prepares to deliver her attack. She needs to seize this opening before it's too late. Her strike is precise, but it's deflected by the helmet. That wasn't the result she was looking for. Her sword was completely ineffective and penetrating the armor's defense. Faced with that, the automaton prepares to retaliate. Then it hits her with its shield. She flies several meters before crashing into the wall of the place. Everything was completely beyond what they had imagined. The Ebix attack squad was among the best in dungeon subjugation. However, in the bubbling abyss, they were completely obliterated. They had already faced 7 colossi in total. Even if they defeat one another appears right after. If the other team performs the same way they did, it will be the end. The shield bearer ordered his companions to flee because he knows it's going to be difficult for all of them to leave this place alive. As he speaks, the automaton strikes again with its sword, but the young man reacts quickly with his shield. He managed to defend himself. His ability allows him to consume energy to enhance all his physical attributes. After activation, the user is incapacitated for a while. With the sword parried on the shield, he used another ability, Push. This caused the automaton to lose its balance. The young man knows that if his leader uses that ability now, he will be in serious trouble. But he had already said they wouldn't all make it out alive, and they don't have the strength to defeat that monster. However, it's enough to buy them some time. Being optimistic, he might end up getting lucky and still have a chance. But then they quickly feel an overwhelming presence. Argus asks what is happening in his forge. At that moment, they realize they were doomed. Argus wants to know there are still cockroaches the automatons haven't managed to kill. Just being in his presence, they feel an intense terror. The leader was emphatic and shouted for them to flee immediately. With the little strength he had left, he charged toward Argus. All he wanted was to buy a little more time, but he was swept away with a single blow from the Titan, who incinerated him completely. There was nothing he could do. Argus was certain they were inferior to him. Both their bodies and the equipment they carried were trash. Ruled by inferior beings, this world is doomed to ruin. Intrigued, he looks at the one standing before him. The mage wields his staff, trembling. It's slightly exciting to observe that even with fear, he's still loyal, though in the end it doesn't mean anything. But the boy knows he won't be able to deal with a monster that even the leader couldn't handle. Then a man appears, saying he had already told them the place wasn't safe. If they had gathered information little by little, they wouldn't prepare better. There's no advantage in clearing a dungeon just for the sake of it. The boy doesn't even know who this person is. The association received the distress call, and he's one of the volunteers from the rescue team. He even had armor, but it was heavier than he expected. The boy thinks he came alone. Indeed, he was the only one who managed to get there. The automaton prepares to attack the intruder. A loud sound echoes through the forge's corridors. The boy is utterly terrified, and the man says that they're quite strong. At that time, Sion wasn't known by many. He was basically a nobody. He managed to cut off the monster's arm without difficulty, and first-generation explorers knew of him. His focus wasn't fame, but rather rescuing those in trouble. However, that day would mark the beginning of everything. Sion prepares to finish off the automaton. With a single strike, he split it from top to bottom with no difficulty. That display of power caught Arya's attention. Looking at him, Sion imagines this one might be a bit harder, and that day the world learned who that man was. The aura of the strike was enough to change the dungeon's lighting. The mage can't believe that was done. The entire team was struggling struggling to handle a colossus, and that person took it down in the single move. Sion asked the mage if he still had any mana left. He said he didn't have much, but it was enough to give him a blessing. Sion said he didn't need that, but asked if he knew any levitation enchantments. If he did, he should use it to take the other two out of there. Even though they're badly injured, they're still breathing. Argus found it arrogant that he thinks he can come back. It's almost as if he really believes he can leave there alive. Sion says he won't let Argus touch the others as long as he's there. That deeply angered the Titan. Without wasting any more time, he attacked the man with all his might. However, Sion reacted skillfully. The aura, he admitted, was devastating. The impact of their blades echoed through the dungeon. As they left, the mage looked back in fear. 10 years after the admission, the adventurers had reached a limit. They had superhuman strength. The technology of the equipment had also advanced better, adapting to each one's needs. But unlike the progress and status and equipment, there was still much lacking in execution and experience. A solution was human development, a martial art that defies common logic. At that time, few saw it as a solution, and they began to develop and research techniques. Argus had been struck, but his armor protected him from the first impact. Sion continued and delivered another blow. He was one of those people who perfected that martial art. The mage looked happy, thinking the monster had been defeated, but soon his expression changed again. Argus says that guy is different because he knows how to use what he has in his hands well. If the weapon he wielded could withstand even half the strength he possesses, the result would have been different. The edge of the blade had melted from the strike. He still couldn't afford the best equipment, and it wasn't the first time this had happened with an axe. So he looked back to see those he had come to rescue. He was relieved to see they were almost out of the dungeon. Now he needed to defend himself against the hostile monster. His flaming sword was blocked by the axe's handle. Argus commented that his defense and dodging skills were among the best he'd seen in humans. However, the axe Sion wielded was worse than anything he had ever seen. Even though he could defend, the axe couldn't handle much more. Preparing to attack once again, Argus said that now it would be the end. But that's not what Sion wanted. The blades clashed once more with devastating force. Instead of having his attack redirected, Sion blocked it with full force. This was the origin of the technique Garyon would eventually learn. A skill that uses the opponent's strength against themselves. But in terms of user strength, experience, and execution ability, his father performed it on a completely different level. It was strong enough to force the Titan to step back. This was the martial art of a hero. Argus was sure the story must be well known among humans. The hero finally defeats the monster that day after being struck by the boy's father. The monster inside Argus died. When he lost, the life he had was no longer his but Sion's, who chose not to kill him. What the attack squad couldn't accomplish was completed by a single man from the rescue team. A ridiculous ending to an epic story. But the most important part of it begins after that. Ancient Titans, even when defeated, never bow to those they consider inferior. Still, Argus accepted being exiled by humans. Sarum remembers this because it was a major event and the whole world was shocked. Eventually, he gained citizenship, and the fact that he hadn't killed anyone helped a lot, but it doesn't change the fact that he committed crimes and to atone for them. He was given the task of forging equipment. However, this story is completely different from what she had learned. Argus said that the staff the young man carries was made as a gift for his father. Even though his father never asked for it, Argus thought he deserved to carry something like that. He always knew it was very solid but didn't think it had anything special, which is why it wasn't pawned as they thought it was useless. In fact, he's not wrong. It's only good for hitting people with brute force. That wasn't exactly what they expected to hear, and Sarum is stuck on the part where the boy mentioned pawning. Argus said it was pretty simple, and the boy should already know this. He asked if his father used that as a weapon. He would have made an axe for him as soon as he brought the remaining material to make the blade. But one day, he lost contact with him, and since he couldn't leave the dungeon, he decided to send what he had already made to the boy's father. Even though he can't say for sure, he imagines he won't be able to complete that weapon. But that's not entirely bad, so he asked for the incomplete weapon to be handed over to him, because now he will finish what he started, and masterpiece not for the father, but for the son. While the Titan works, that returns the upper floors. Sarum looks at him a bit curious about what she had heard. She wants to know how he's feeling now. Despite everything, he's fine, and he felt that the Titan wanted to make sure everything was okay. He doesn't know how long it will take, but he's committed to finishing as quickly as possible. He advised waiting as masterpieces take time to complete. Since Wednesday is a holiday, she wants to know if he'll have time available. She thought about helping him study for the written test, and he thought that would be productive as well. While they were still walking, there was something else she wanted to say. His father must have been an incredible person. She could never have imagined that he was the one who cleared that dungeon. She asked that he's in a hospital to get some rest after retiring. He said he'll go ahead and rest. If anything comes up, just talk to him later, but she didn't get a response to the comment she made. Already in the car, she made her way back home. Consulting the internet, she confirms that the story's narrative isn't true. That's what she had learned, but now she's thinking about Argus's words. The team that cleared the dungeon is considered heroic today. all at the cost of another adventurer's deeds. There's no reason for Argus to have lied about this, but thinking about Garion's abilities, it's completely acceptable that his father was someone exceptional. Not to mention, it's hard to know what really happens inside a dungeon, and it often occurs that the story told is different from the facts. Seong is known as the false dragon slayer. He was once considered one of Korea's greatest. It was later revealed that everything was just blackmail and false statistics, which he confessed after being injured. There's even an article about the event online debunking his achievements. This left her uncertain about what she had heard and what she was reading. The result of a practical test was now available. Inside the school and the department responsible for dungeons, a staff member is thanked. Professor Cho apologizes to Kang, who couldn't rest over the weekend because of her. But it's only her first year and it's important for him to observe the first-year students. She says things are pretty intense there, not only as a teacher, but the freshmen are much more talented than she was at the same stage. Now she wants to know if he expected the top student to be that particular one. Indeed, he was unexpected. Kang says that's not an easy result to predict. Sarum can't believe the exam results, as there are many geniuses alongside her. Coincidentally, all of them are hybrids. The first is D of Choi. He inherited swordsmanship talent from his father, a white class explorer, combined with the magical talent of his elf mother. He is the perfect magic swordsman. In second place is Anisha. She has more mana and magical control than many pure elves, with the potential to become a great mage. Lastly, a boy, the son of a human and a dwarf. He possesses the strength and resilience of dwarves, combined with the flexibility and reflexes of a human, the best of both worlds. This is Tur Velkason, considered to have the best physique on the planet. He's his student at the school. Even so, he must be just as capable as the other two. The top spot should have gone to one of them, although it's hard to believe she achieved all this on her own. Perhaps the physical aspect alone gave her more points. Physicality isn't the only thing that counts. That's why she hopes he will do more, as he has the potential to become a great leader. But from what it seems, he has no interest in connecting with other students. In fact, the students are hesitant to approach him. However, there are limits to how far one can go alone, and by the second year, he will soon realize that. Kang says that's not a problem she should worry about. Sometimes things happen without us noticing, and details can go unnoticed. He knows she cares about all the students, but if she believes in him more than she worries, he'll find a way to resolve things. Since then, 4 days have passed and the holiday has arrived. A group of boys is gossiping about what a girl had done, but one of them ends up bumping into a huge person. He turns around to confront this person. He wasn't expecting to come face to face with a figure chiseled like a bodybuilder, lean and ripped, practically spitting sand from his mouth. The champion of the Arnold Classic begins to speak, and he apologizes to them, saying he was distracted and didn't see them on the way. The boys are still terrified and apologize even more, intimidated by the manful hunter in Korea. She used to tell their son many stories about her time as an explorer, which foster his admiration for Korea and its culture. Thanks to the opportunity and his natural talent, he entered the warrior school through a special transfer test. Unfortunately, though, he is an extremely introverted boy. He does want to interact with his peers, but he fears being ridiculed because he doesn't speak the language well. He hates this aspect of his personality. Seeing that he's uncomfortable, his classmates apologize for talking so loudly. But neither do they know that the giant is introverted, nor does he imagine that, in fact, they fear him. Without intending to, he has become a lone wolf. Looking to the side, he sees two boys chatting about trivial things. They are heading to a PC Bang internet cafe. He remembered his mother saying she used to visit those places to play games. Inside the establishment, there aren't many people. He doesn't even know what to do nearby. Someone is talking on the phone. At a self-service screen, he tries to log in, but just being there makes him anxious. He imagines that he's holding up the line and should probably leave since he's alone. A young man mentioned that he probably doesn't have an account. That terminal is for people who already do, and you should head to another one. He asked him to follow as he would show him how it's done. He did need to fill out everything, just the essential fields. Once the registration was complete, all he had to do was pay at another machine and then choose which computer to use. The giant thanked him, and Jerryong said it was nothing. Jerryong looked at the guy and wondered if he might be a foreigner and unfamiliar with this place. However, he just wanted Serum to arrive soon since she was running late. If he'd known, he would have come later or stopped by the black market beforehand. He had received a small black object, unsure of what it was. It had been in the chest with the jelly and he wanted to know what it could be. It was smooth to the touch, but it probably wasn't something edible. Since he didn't know what it was yet, he decided to keep its story for now. If he needed money, it'd be better to sell the other item, which contained and kills blood, one of the 3 great disasters of the Agar forest. In recent decades, even though many attack teams had tried, no one had been able to subdue the beast. All they had managed to obtain were a few scales and an insignificant amount of the creature's blood. The government had banned its hunting, and items made with its materials were worth a fortune. He was supposed to meet Serum for lunch and then head to the black market in the evening, but her delay and mess took his plans. The foreigner said there were no other seats available and sat down next to the person who had helped him. Then he told Jae-ryong he could sit down as he wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. Sitting down, Jae-ryong logged into the machine. There wasn't any special game, and the computer at his home was much better than the one here. Then Jae-ryong noticed something on the screen next to him. He asked if the foreigner played Heroes of Chaos, and he confirmed it. They were at similar levels. Since the people he usually played with weren't online, he invited Jae-ryong to team up. They could do and rank matches. In Seoul, there are a few desolate and abandoned areas called scars. During the invasion, entire cities were lost. Some had been reclaimed over time, but others too close to dungeons were abandoned. These areas now serve a purpose as a second line of defense for human refugees. But in the last 20 years, nothing like that had ever happened. There had been no cases of monsters leaving the walls voluntarily. There's even a transportation service for them. One guard hates having to do this job. While his friends make money hunting, he stopped being a monster chauffeur. Jo-Yena says that if he hates it so much, you should quit and go back to the field. She was a gold-class explorer retired after injuring her eye. She wants to know what he's doing there then. Sun Chang was a bronze-class adventurer. In conversation, he mentioned that the reason he's there is to make money since he can hardly join any teams anymore. Hearing this hurt his ego. While driving, something unexpected happened. They had to stop the truck. There's no way the monster escaped. Stepping out, she told her colleague to inform the station that they stopped to inspect the vehicle. Outside, she prepared to do her job. Inside the cab, he was already relaying the information. He was scared something might happen, but his colleague was very skilled, so she should be fine. Soon he heard the door open. It was ready to tell there she had done a great job. But a different woman was there, and said that wasn't much of an accomplishment. Her reflexes were decent for a government employee, but there must be a reason why she's not out in the field. And she glanced at the names of the people behind them. Looking at the driver, she asked why he was still standing there. He should be driving if he didn't want to die soon. Meanwhile, the gaming session between Garyon and the foreigner was going great, and their food order arrived at the perfect time. Garyon didn't expect them to be the same age. Not that he looked older, but he was much taller and stronger. So he asked which school he went to, but there wasn't time to answer. Suddenly, they felt something had happened. The ground shook, and people thought it might be an earthquake. It almost seemed like something had exploded nearby. This sparked a debate, and soon they began speculating about what it could have been. The truck had crashed. Perhaps the driver was drunk. One guy starts filming while the other suggests they should notify the authorities right away. From the top of the building, a girl comments that it would have been better if the truck had crashed closer to the center. Soon the place will be swarming with explorers, but she's confident she'll escape in time. However, her superiors are already ordering her to return. The monsters begin fleeing from the truck because she had woken them all up. The people who had gathered out of curiosity were already regretting it. The horn horrors, the more numerous they are, the more dangerous they become. Looking down, she estimates there are about 50 people down there, but she'll stay to watch the result. Maybe at least 100 people would die before help arrived. One curious person was grabbed by the head. He was brutally killed, while another was paralyzed by fear. The monsters are in a frenzy, with their potential victims standing before them. Then a bluish glow appears among them. Jaron had arrived to take down the creatures. He drove his foot into the face of the first one, stating what had just happened. The onlookers were stunned. The monster had been easily subdued. Jaron was focused and determined not to let the beasts attack innocent people. He didn't look back at the crowd asking what they were still doing there. He ordered them to run immediately. He had dealt with this type of monster before. The ones with a single horn should be that hard to handle. As he thought this, he had to instantly focus again. A motorcycle was coming straight toward him. He barely dodged it. He quickly realized he had done it. It could only be a joke. Horn horror with 2 horns. As the beast came closer to him, it was met with a devastating kick. However, the result wasn't what he expected. Jaron had to step back. The lifespan of these monsters is between 5 and 6 years. Most of them die before they have a chance to grow a second horn, but some manage to about 8% of the total that live longer and can reproduce. Not only is their strength increased, but it's beyond anything considered normal. Even though it's strong and fast, it's nothing he can overcome if he needs to kill this beast. With his foot aching, he knows the biggest problem is their durability. Compared to the idiot who said he was a tank, these guys are at least 3 or 4 times tougher. If only he had one of the pieces of equipment he uses for work. The beast prepares to attack the boy once again. However, Jaron dodges the blow, witnessing the destruction caused by it. At a distance, he regains his position to continue the fight. The beast doesn't seem satisfied with the destruction it's already caused. So Jaron starts scanning his surroundings. On the ground, there's a broken stop sign. Thinking quickly, he stomps on the sign, crushing it. That way, he manages to extract the sign's pole, which is similar to his staff. The monster charges at him again, furious. Emanating his aura, Jaron braces for impact, now armed. He tightens his grip, focused. The beast stomps harder than expected. This gave it a huge boost of momentum, and it soared over Jiren's head. That wasn't what he had anticipated from the creature. Now the beast is close to where several innocent people are gathered. They are completely terrified, unable to do anything to protect themselves. The beast charges at them, ready to make a snack out of them. The difference in danger between 2- and 3-star monsters is simply enormous. In terms of destructiveness, both of these monsters are already beyond human capabilities. Normal people have no choice but to be killed by these beasts. Even an experienced adventurer without proper equipment might struggle with them. However, there is one exception to the situation. The foreigner managed to catch the beast's punch with his bare hand. He's definitely determined to fight. With a single blow, he pushed the beast away. This is the exception. Those who have trained their superhuman bodies to the limit becoming monsters themselves. The beast digs its claws into the ground to prevent being pushed further by the impact. The foreigner managed to push it back, but he knows that without a weapon, he won't be able to deal any real damage. However, something caught his attention. The beast forward menacingly at him. From behind, Jairong approached with his improvised staff. Using his techniques, he delivered a precise strike to the back of the creature's neck. The foreigner was surprised by the result. The beast fell, lifeless with a puncture wound in its back. Jairong sighed in relief after the fight. A loud noise drew his attention. The sound piqued the foreigner's curiosity as well. Nearby, a powerful explosion had occurred. In just a single minute, the beasts had caused all that destruction. The foreigner remarked that it would take a few more minutes before help arrived. A sudden event like this is unexpected, and people are dying while they talk. Kyul-K knows how to use a taunting ability. Every tank knows it. He essentially shouts at high frequency, attracting nearby monsters toward him. Determined to become an adventurer, he plans to draw the monsters' attention until help arrives. He told Jairong to find shelter, as he doesn't know how to ask him to risk himself, especially since they barely know each other. All they've done so far is play games together for a few hours. However, Jairong told him to give the shout already. He imagines the guy must be a tank and knows how to use the skill. But Kyul-King says it's dangerous, and Jairong replied that he was planning to do it alone anyway. If he were alone, he'd consider the possibilities, but he isn't. He told Kyul-King that he's good at games, especially when it comes to protecting. Besides, he also wants to be an adventurer, and if he's going to try, he'll do the best he can. There's no time to keep talking like this. It's time to act. The shop is completely destroyed. A person is hiding under the counter. Behind them, the monster had just killed an innocent bystander. The tank prepared to use his skill. In the store, the beast threw the limp body to the ground. Then it began tearing apart the counter to reach its next victim. At that moment, the tank's shop echoed. Its effect reverberated through the area, drawing the monster's attention. Immediately, the beast stopped its attack. The person it was about to kill was left confused. The girl responsible for the incident also heard the shout. She's intrigued by what might have happened. After using his skill, the tank caught his breath. Assuming an offensive stance, he was ready to fight the monsters that would appear. It didn't take long for them to gather at the epicenter of his shout. The strongest of them pointed in the boy's direction, but one-horned monsters charged toward the attack. He stood ready, prepared to fight as well, but then he heard a noise above him. A monster was approaching from his blind spot, but he managed to block the incoming blow. It wasn't enough to hurt him. With his other hand, he began concentrating his aura, and with a devastating strike, he sent the beast flying. However, it wasn't over yet, and he couldn't afford to get distracted. More monsters were advancing, ready to attack simultaneously. In the distance, the two-horned monster heard something happening. There was someone else nearby, and they were coming from above. Jiran descended, landing near the beasts. There were two of them, each with two horns on their heads. Looking at the crashed truck, he wondered what was going on there. They were gathering the bodies of the dead in the truck. That's why there weren't so many bodies scattered on the street. Now the two horned ones were moving to attack him. Jaron waited for them to get a little closer. They're fighting up close and without equipment. The odds are low. In the current situation, it's easier for them to get in each other's way than to help each other. So he would focus on drawing the weaker monsters since he was the tank. Jiran was closer, and now was his turn to attack. His task was to take down the strongest ones, since he was the damage specialist. His improvised staff was ready to strike again. He moved so quickly past the monster that it didn't even realize it had been hit. But there were several marks on its body where the staff had struck. Compared to a needle, this was much weaker. If Jiran had his usual staff, things would have been very different. With a staff made of ordinary materials, there's not much he can do. Even so, he's doing his best to fight. Although it's not the same, he's aware that there's a chance. That time, Zeke fought him barehanded, and despite a few fast and powerful strikes, none were overwhelming. Yep, those hits slowly wore him down. Now the monster was in mid-attack. Quickly, Jiran managed to fend it off with rapid strikes. He knows this won't stop the beast's attack, so he dodges the ongoing blow. Even the smallest mistake here would cost in his life. He strikes again swiftly. This is a unique opportunity for him despite the danger. A chance to grow even stronger. He needs to seize this moment and come out victorious with whatever he has at his disposal. Another beast approaches, ready to attack. But in his mind, he remembered Zeke's evasive movements during their fight, and he managed to emulate similar moves. After his father, this was the first time he had encountered someone as strong. With this experience, he perfected his fourth skill, the rain of staff hitting the monster in front of him multiple times. After being brutally struck, the beast falls to the ground. However, unexpectedly, one of the creatures grabs his foot. This immediately puts him on edge. The monster threw him down, shattering the concrete. Jae-rong spicked out blood after the violent impact. 2 against 1 is a tricky situation. Even though it's not fair, he has no choice. This isn't a fight between humans, so things can be different. Before he could react, the tank arrived, repelling the monster. To the tank, luck is also a skill. Watching through the phone camera, 2 people were amazed by their performance. They had defeated dozens of monsters, just the 2 of them, without any equipment. Danyon was thrilled that he managed to record the whole action, but his friend pointed out that he only filmed it because he was too scared to run away. Ken wants to know who these 2 are since they look younger than them. Judging by what they did, they must be gold-level hunters. Either they're students at the warrior school, or they're rookies who haven't made a name for themselves yet. Either way, he plans to post the video online and asks if his friend can make a thumbnail on his laptop. The news will be out soon, and doesn't want to miss the potential millions of views. Exhausted, the foreigner thought the rescue of a containment team would have arrived sooner. However, only the 2 of them were really able to resolve the situation. Jae-rong apologizes for interrupting his cool stance, but he needs help getting up off the ground. So, they finally shake hands. They're both pretty worn out, and when asked if he's okay, Jae-rong replies that he's more inclined to say no. Maybe he has a fracture or 2, but considering what he was expecting, it wasn't so bad. The foreigner was amazed that Jae-rong managed to handle the 2 horn monsters. Jae-rong returned the compliment, saying his friend had dealt with 9 monsters in total and still helped him with the last ones. But the foreigner points out that his were just 2 star monsters. Since they were chatting, he asked which school Jae-rong goes to. Maybe reality was different from what he had heard, as he heard that schools around here weren't that great. He apologized, saying he didn't mean to speak poorly of Jae-rong's school, even though he assumed Jae-rong was also from the warrior school. Without answering, Jae-rong asked how well ranked his friend was and how many people there were stronger than him at his school. But the foreigner didn't know, as he talked to very few people, and despite taking some tests, wasn't sure if they could properly assess his abilities. He guessed he was probably somewhere in the middle. Now he's wondering how he's going to help his elf friend. Either way, there's still one last thing to handle. He wants to know if that monster plans to stay on top of the wagon doing nothing. It was the only one not drawn by the taunting skill, and there might be something different about it. But he doesn't think that it's the special one among them. There's a lot of blood around the area, and surely there must be something else inside, and that something is what's special. For now, he thinks they should just keep watch, since they could easily deal with this last monster. A loud noise starts coming from the wagon, and it begins shaking violently. A hand suddenly emerges from the hole in the roof. This surprised both boys. The monster is being pulled inside violently. The unit's claws couldn't hold on. Something inside is definitely devouring it now. The horn horrors live in a society similar to that of a tribal system. Those with 2 horns act as parents and chiefs, leading hordes of no more than 10. These small tribes unite, increasing their numbers and strength, since they are relatively weak and dungeons are dangerous. These monsters rank low on the food chain, and their numbers are kept in check by predators. However, in rare cases, a mutant can develop a 3rd horn, and this mutant is no mere leader of a small tribe, but a king who commands hundreds, even thousands. A horn horror king is a beast with a danger level of approximately 5 stars. It didn't take long for him to notice the 2 boys. Immediately, they became alert to what was happening. With a simple movement, the king unleashed a massive and destructive attack. Both of them had to quickly get out of the way. Moving at incredible speed, the beast was already near Jaren, ready to strike. Jaren had to react quickly to avoid being fairly hit. The monster's hand was powerful enough to destroy his improvised staff. The beast's attack broke through his defense, landing a blow on his stomach. Not stopping there, the king was already preparing to deliver a kick, but his attack was interrupted. Shulking had caught him in a body lock. The beast's feet dug into the ground, tearing up the pavement. Even as Shulking pushed him back, he realized the situation was worsening. The Horn Horror King grabbed him with both hands. With no effort, the king lifted him off the ground. Then he slammed Shulking into the earth, creating a massive crater. If there was one thing they didn't have now, it was time. 2 geniuses who would eventually grow to reach the full extent of their potential. But in the current situation, maybe they wouldn't, even if they could use everything they knew. There was a vast gap that couldn't be bridged. Jae-rong rose, staggering, yelling at the monster not to do it. With his attention focused on the boy, the king prepared another attack. The red glow of its aura was merely upon him. Jae-rong took the hit head-on, unable to defend. With that, the beast seemed to have fulfilled its desire to strike. However, it felt something else was still happening. A far more dangerous presence than the king was now in the battlefield. Nika already fallen, and Seong still lay bedridden in the hospital. Before he disappeared, not many people knew him. Now the monster was utterly terrified. There is no one in this world who can precisely explain explain what Seong left behind. 11 years ago, much happened. A man made an unexpected confession to the press. He admitted all of his wrongdoings and begged the public for forgiveness. That event shocked the entire world. 12 hours before the boys engaged in their battle with the monsters, Serum had been deep in confusion. The truth she learned on Sunday was the only thing on her mind. She spent the next few days researching Jae-rong's father, and whether he had been unjustly. She was certain many people coveted the position of someone who was once number one, but had now lost his powers. What she couldn't understand was how the situation was handled. It started with multiple accusations, the testimony of victims, and the building of the case. Public opinion became divided, but because he was popular, the forged information didn't completely tarnish his image. If it had been her, she would have fought back to the end, but what Xiang did. Rather than fighting back, he accepted all the accusations made against him. After the press conference, even his supporters turned their backs on him, and Xiang became a liar overnight. She doesn't understand why he did that, and if there was something coercing him, accepting the charges was like throwing fuel on the fire. She wasn't sure if she was the only one who noticed, but there was something in his facial expressions. Instead of looking wrong, it was as if he was accepting the consequences. Then she came across something even more shocking. In his records, there was no mention of him having a family. She wondered if Jae-rong wasn't really his son, but it made more sense that he just wasn't officially registered, as they did resemble each other somewhat. Maybe Seong had accepted all those accusations because Jae-rong was somehow involved, and at this moment Jae-rong didn't even realize what was really happening to his body. He looked at his hand and felt something different. The beast charged at him, furious. Its advance was relentless. It knew it needed to finish the boy, and in the face of this, there was one thing Jae-rong knew for sure now. His body could move. His reaction was perfect, landing a strike on the monster's face. Nothing more, nothing less. All he needed to know now was that he could still move, and he was determined to destroy the monster in front of him. Using his skills, he began to strike it repeatedly. The pressure was immense, and the monster did everything it could to defend itself. It tried to move and escape from Jae-rong's relentless attacks. Jae-rong knew the creature wouldn't get far, and then the beast's counterattack came at him. Although the monster's aura was powerful, it wasn't fast enough to stop Jae-rong from dodging. However, the beast had anticipated this, and now it was airborne directly above him. With the beast close, it unleashed yet another attack. It didn't take long for it to be surprised by the outcome. The attack had failed to harm the boy. Jae-rong immediately retaliated with a violent kick. The force of the impact was so great that the beast was sent crashing into the nearest building. Jae-rong knew the fight wasn't over yet, but with those last two strikes, he had managed to expose a weakness in the creature, a precise strike to the chin with his needle. In his current state, it was possible to land that blow, but just as the mysterious aura had appeared, it vanished once more. This was the worst possible moment for it to disappear. The monster crawled out of the crater it had made. Jae-rong felt anxious. The energy that had been coursing through his body was now gone. There was nothing left for him to defend against the incoming attack. As the beast continued its charge, it noticed something. The truck's container was falling directly on its head. The beast was struck. But there's a reason why explorers have distinct roles. Each one is suited to a specific function. The impact from the container wasn't enough to stop the beast. A charge for Chol King. Utterly enraged, unable to dodge, Chol King defended himself the best he could. The blow was incredibly powerful, but as a tank, even with his body battered, he endured. That's the primary role of the tank. However, he had been far beyond his limits for a while. Still, his resilience bought them just a bit more time. Jae-rong was now ready to deliver his best attack. The monster knew it couldn't avoid what was coming. Jae-rong's fist, charged with aura, closed in swiftly. It perfectly executed uppercut connected with the creature's chin. That was the role of someone whose job was to deal damage. Debris scattered across the area. On the ground lay the beast's lifeless body, his jaw shattered. A monster transport vehicle had been stolen. As a result, there were dozens of civilian casualties. After all of this had transpired, the rescue team finally arrived. It didn't take long for the news to spread worldwide. The heroic feat of those two, now labeled as heroes, quickly gained recognition. Cavallino watches the video, unsure of what's happening. The house has a large garden surrounding it. A young Jae-rong had scraped himself, and his wound was being treated. His father told him that even small wounds must be treated, otherwise they could worsen later. Jae-rong asked that his father ever felt pain since he bled a lot when fighting monsters. His father replied that not only did he feel pain, but he also felt fear. But he tried his best to hide his pain because his job was to keep others from getting hurt. As a child, Jae-rong's greatest wish was to be like his father, but there was always something in his mind. He knew his father didn't want the same for him. His father had told him to find another career and always seemed sorrowful when they discussed the topic. Perhaps that's why. why he didn't want Jairong to follow the path of an explorer, but they never spoke about it openly. Jairong thought that once he grew up, his father would explain the reason, but now he couldn't do that anymore. Jairong's eyes opened, and he stared at the unusual ceiling. There was something about the feeling that made him feel nostalgic. A figure beside him asked if those words were directed at him. Startled, Jairong looked in the side. Zeke stood there saying that Jairong was only here now because it was determined. Jairong wanted to know why the director was there keeping him company. As soon as he sat up, pain shot through his entire body as he told him not to move too much. Despite the treatment being successful, he should be in a coma due to the extent of his injuries, and it would take him a month to fully recover. Until then, Zeke advised him to focus on healing because there was much to prepare for. The boy thanked him, saying it was the right thing to do, but he had something to say. Zeke cut him off, stating that if it was about his father, yes, they knew each other and had worked together. Jairong moved his hand quickly, so fast that it made Zeke focus on him, but Jairong only took the apple Zeke was holding. Seeing Zeke's expression, he asked if Zeke thought he was going to hit him or something. Zeke replied that it wasn't the reaction he was expecting. The boy says he doesn't know what Zeke's expectations are, but he just wanted to know if he knew his father or not. Judging by the difference in how Zeke is treating him now, he suspects they were more than just colleagues. Holding the apple, he takes a deep breath. He recalls telling Zeke to either get out and die or cut his arm with a knife in his hand to prove a point. He figured Zeke might have thought that way and asked how his performance was. He said he tried hard to make it seem real and apologized if Zeke took it personally. Zeke brushed it off, saying he expected a more emotional reaction when the news came. Maybe he would have had that reaction 3 years ago. At that time, it was the only thing on his mind. He wanted to take revenge on everyone who had turned their backs on his father and caused him to end up the way he is now. Hearing this, Zeke asks what made him change his mind. But Jairong thinks he just matured, and that what he thought before was just madness. He's not even strong enough to defeat Zeke, let alone seek revenge. What's most important to him now is earning enough money to pay for the hospital. That's his priority. He doesn't know when they'll find a cure, but he'll do everything in his power to make it happen. He's determined to overcome any obstacle in his way. Zeke says he's only there to ask him a few questions. He wants to know why Jairong is informally registered as Sung's son, and who took care of him after his father became Madridian. Jairong explains that he was raised solely by his father and would be in danger if people knew whose son he was. Besides, he grew up alone, to which Zeke nods, realizing that's the truth. Zeke then asks if he's ever heard the name Guganawig, but Jairong doesn't recognize it. It's not a person. It's the name of a dragon, the destroyer of worlds. Duganawig is the source of the poison that plagues his father. He's also the most dangerous dragon and still lives in the world today. The word dragon strikes terror into the hearts of people. A few years after the invasion, the walls were completed with the help of other races. With the rise in the explorers' abilities, humanity no longer faced the threat of extinction. However, there were still a few rare, dangerous events, like it being powerful enough to destroy the walls. That's what a dragon is capable of: stronger, smarter, and more cunning than any other species, and they frequently demonstrated hostility toward humans. Among all monsters, dragons are easily the most dangerous. They don't hate humans, but they see them as a resource to dominate and exploit. Their mistake was underestimating humans, thinking they wouldn't overcome the dungeons, so they didn't attack them. Once order had collapsed in the world, they planned to pose as gods in exchange for protection from threats. Jairong remarks that perhaps they should thank the dragons for staying out of things, but as progress didn't go as planned, they began attacking humans. It was during this time that Jairong's father appeared. With strategy and determination, he became the explorer, who proved that even dragons, powerful as they are, could be defeated. The news of his dragon slaying spread, and things began to change. Jairong recalls hearing this story too, and that's when the dragons began to hide, but C corrects him. In reality, it didn't hide, it changed their strategy. Dragons are cunning, even capable of changing their appearance. Since they couldn't destroy humanity by force, they began infiltrating human society. This information is classified, and Zico misheard it because Jairong is Sung's son. Duganawig was the last dragon Sung pursued before falling ill. If he's defeated, they ended up for Sung could be made. If Jairong intends to take on that challenge in the future, he needs to grow stronger, as Zek plans to help him kill the dragon. Jairong is already strong enough to stand up from his bed. Leaning against the window, he examines the car he received. He recalled what he had heard, that if it didn't seem possible, he should just ignore the idea. But if it was true, he would miss the chance to help his father. However, Zek firmly tells him that it's not to him to decide. To seize this opportunity, he needs to rise to the top. Dragons are cunning and have already infiltrated society, hiding behind fake aids, waiting for the right moment to act. Even if there's evidence to expose them to the world without capturing one, there's no point in doing so. If they act too soon, the dragons will simply go back into hiding, and it will cause widespread panic. To prevent this, they need to be precise and swift. Only by doing so can they stop the dragons from escaping and hiding again. In recent years, a team has been assembled specifically to deal with Duganawig. All of its members are experienced and skilled adventurers capable of subduing a dragon. If Jaren doesn't become strong enough, no matter how much he wants to be part of it, he won't be accepted by the others. It's not ideal to have someone on the team who might slow them down. This wouldn't just jeopardize the operation, but also put everyone's safety at risk. If all this is true, Jaren wants to know how much time he has to prepare, as he knows they won't wait for him. Zeke explains that they still don't know the dragon's exact location, but they plan to find him in 2 years or less. And as Jaren already pointed out, when the time comes, it won't wait for him. Before leaving, Zeke says he doesn't care what Jaren thinks of him. If Jaren never wants to see him again, that's fine. But Zeke makes one promise. Whether Jaren is with them or not, they will hunt down that dragon at all costs. Those words left a mark on Jaren's mind. It was a glimmer of hope, the real chance to cure his father. This sudden information was everything he had wanted to hear, that it was possible. It gave him hope. It also brought something else. Fear. Fear that he might not be able to prepare in time for the mission that would avenge his father. What he has right now isn't enough, but he will make it, no matter what it takes. For all this time, he had no hope for a cure, and now he has good news. This small spark of hope gave Jaren a motivation he had never felt before in his life. As he washed his face, he heard the door open. The nurse who entered was happy to see he was awake. She asked that he was in any pain, and he replied that he felt only muscle soreness. The doctor would explain the details, but she told him he'd feel like that for a few more days. They had to reconstruct his arm almost entirely. When he was rescued, his arm was in critical condition. Every precaution was necessary, or the risk of amputation would have been real. It was thanks to a high-level healer that the surgery was a success. Looking at his arm, Jaren wanted to ask her something. He wanted to know what happened to his friend who fought alongside him. The nurse reassured him that his friend was doing very well with an incredible recovery and had been discharged the same day he arrived at the hospital. Hearing this, Jaren was hospitalized. But before he could ask, the nurse asked if she could take a photo with him. She took a selfie with him right then and there. Jaren then asked if he could be discharged as well. The nurse said he could, but warned him that if he left through the front door, he had problems. The hospital was full of reporters. They all wanted a chance to interview him as soon as he left. Jaren couldn't imagine why they were there, so the nurse told him he needed to find out quickly. Showing him the screen of her phone, Jaren was surprised. The whole situation could have turned into a horrible disaster. If it weren't for him and his friend, there would have been hundreds of casualties, if not more. Everyone wanted to know who he was, and reporters had been coming to the hospital non-stop. Handing him a bag, she said that his friend had asked for it to be delivered to him. If he didn't want to reveal his identity, he should use what was inside and sneak out the back of the hospital. Saram had prepared it, and there was likely a spell on it for concealing his identity. But when Jaren opened the bag, he saw a rope inside. That wasn't exactly the kind of four. Since he had no other options, he tossed the rope out the window and he made his way down to the ground floor. From above, the nurse called out to him, telling him not to worry about the photo. She'd only make it public once he became a famous explorer. Jaren waved back, still unsure of the magnitude of the situation. Saram was waiting for him in her car. She was expecting him to come to her so they could leave. Jaren asked if the rope was really the only possible option. Without answering, she asked him if he'd prefer to be discovered. He admitted that he didn't, but he was also curious about the bag in the car. Saram explained that she had bought clothes for him, along with a new phone, assuming his old one had broken. This touched him deeply, but she told him not to react that way. In any case, she didn't even know where to begin talking about what happened. An incident like that happening so close to him, and more than that, the fact that he had been able to defeat that monster. But she knew his life was full of events like this, so she asked where they were going now. The truth was, she wanted to rest, but they only had that day and nothing more. If you want clothes, you have to go today, but he says he already has clothes with him. Saram says she's not talking about regular clothes, but the ones he'll wear as an explorer. And in fact, she expects him to understand how lucky he is. The best tailor on the planet agreed to make armor for him. Armor material is divided into 3 categories. The first one being clothes, normal material. It has the worst defense capability among all of them, but since it can be easily targeted by support magic, it is usually worn by mages and healers who stay away from the front line. The second category is very tough. It ends up being extremely heavy. Dungeon ore is denser, and without strength and stamina, it's impossible to wear such armor. Among them, leather is the middle ground. Not as heavy, but still solid enough. Ideal for those focused on dealing damage in close combat like him. Maybe he should consider wearing armor from now on. Saram is also curious and wants to know how he defeated the monster. She wants the details, but Garyon says someone filmed it, so she can just watch and understand. However, the video doesn't capture everything, and only shows him defeating the Own and 2 horned ones. It doesn't show how he defeated the 5-star one, which surprised him because he didn't know it was such a strong monster. Indeed, it was very strong, so he suspected something like that. Even though he and Shulking were perfectly prepared, it still should have been impossible. But then that mysterious power emerged and he doesn't know what it was. She insists again about why he doesn't talk about what happened. but the truth is he doesn't even know how to explain it. Just happened in the best, I don't know, just did style. It doesn't make any sense. Even professionals need to join a team to fight a monster like that. Even if he's not lying and he's not, it's hard to believe. This made her puzzle that his geniuses really are different. However, she told him to be cautious. Things from now on would be exhausting. It's not just the reporters, but now the two of them are at the epicenter of all of this. Shulkeng was unlucky and had to give several interviews for 4 days straight. He even ended up appearing on television. But all this time, he avoided talking about Jerry on as much as possible. Even simple questions like his name, he refused to answer without his friend's permission. This reminded him of the favor he had asked him. If anyone asked for details about what happened, he was to say that he didn't know either, because if he could keep his identity hidden, he would prefer it that way. Shulking agreed and said he would do as requested. The girl wants to know how they ended up getting close, but he doesn't know either. She advised him to stay off the radar until he could take the admission test. He wants to know if there's a reason for that. On his phone, his manager says he wants to talk to him soon. Starum has been reading about the tests, and the more she learns, the more she realizes how difficult it is. In recent years, the passing rate has been 1 in 100, and Jerryong thinks there are many people who just take it for the sake of it, and they must be at least worse than Starum. Seeing that she was annoyed, he said he didn't mean to imply she's bad, but she told him to shut up. But the truth is, based on skill, he's not wrong because she's a person with enormous potential. In fact, they do things together, and that's when he realized what it was all about. In the test, they form teams. Candidates are usually children of adventurers, so this contact makes it easier to form teams for their children. Almost all the candidates come from such backgrounds, and it's those who get approved. If his identity is exposed, he will quickly become their target. Even if the school discourages this, that's not what happens. He might even try for special admission, but that's not what he wants. Even though this is true, there are those who get approved on their own, and that's what he needs to know. He's going to beat them all and pave his way alone. She likes his motivation, but it seems a bit naive. Meanwhile, she already wants to change clothes. Pointing to where the bathroom is, she told him to change and meet her at the end of the hallway. At the reception desk, the secretary is working. Saram says she has an appointment with the CDO of the place. She just told her to wait a few minutes. On the phone, she passes along the information about the visitor, and he said he would tell her about what happened. Unfortunately, he had an unmissable commitment and is not available. That's unfortunate, because he knows there isn't another day available for this. He said he would make up for her time, but Saram says it's not about money. She needs it because of the warrior school admission exam, and that cancellation could mess everything up. Someone nearby said she looked familiar, and one is another name. There is a saying among adventurers that the current generation is different from theirs. The first generation paved with blood for progress. Since then, everything has advanced in terms of technology. What has also changed are the circumstances of each of their births. The first generation provided everything for their children. It wasn't just talent that was passed down, but also a quality education from the earliest moments of childhood. This makes them wonder who the greatest beneficiaries of this are, and many would say it's that girl. That is Hamdae Yoon, and she knows that girl is a first-year student at the warrior school. She wants to know if he knows her since she is the student council president. Anyway, she'd like to skip the introduction between the two. The CEO there is her uncle, and she's the reason he had an unmissable commitment. Given that, she understands that she's upset about having her appointment canceled. And it would be better to say that instead of having her appointment canceled, he preferred to give his spot to her. In fact, she'd be grateful for helping out. That's a better story to tell. Serum is aware of the influence that Clown possesses, because she's already heard stories about what she's capable of. As the two talk, Jerry-On just arrives. Since she is Serum's senior, it seems they have no other option. Even without knowing her, he thanked the guy, but he wasn't finished speaking. He told her to cut that made the secretary nervous. The girl said the kid's got guts, and she wants to know who he is. Serum tries to prevent them from continuing the conversation. Her hand trembles slightly. It was as if she had struck Serum. Immediately, she felt what meant it happened. It wasn't her she was talking to, so she wasn't supposed to speak, but Serum felt as if she had been cut anyway. The clown didn't ask that idiot anything, so she should know her place and stay quiet. Jerry-On introduces himself saying he's 17 and lives in Guanaco. He's 180 meters tall, doesn't know how much he weighs now, and his favorite food is sausage with sautéed vegetables. That should be all. But the most important thing is that he's preparing to enter the warrior school, and right now he's considerably disappointed, because even in that school there are conceited people like her who think they're much more than they are. She smiled like a psychopath, her hand even trembling with rage. Now he felt the same as Serum. She said she doesn't exactly hate people like him, that is, if he can back up what he said, since he wanted to transfer that school. He hasn't even, but he smiled a bit, and asked if that's how she does things, but he's curious to know what she thought, as it was the first time he tried it. He's curious to know from her if it's up to the standard she expected. Now the girl is irritated by the interaction. From a distance, her uncle calls her by name. This is Sanwoo, and he wants to know what the hell they're doing there. He wanted to know why she visited without informing him, as she even took the phone of his hands. It's only been a week since her last incident, just a week. He wants to know she wants her father to get angry again. The adult apologizes to the two of them, as his niece tends to act on her own. Serum says he doesn't need to apologize, but she's deeply grateful. Since it's all just that, Clown's things aren't that bad. But the rumors are true. She's arrogant, and only values those who are strong. Jerry and I asked her to come closer to him. He wanted to know what exactly that annoying girl does because she doesn't seem like an ordinary senior. She's the president of the student council, in other words. She's simply the strongest student in the rank. They can go into dungeons under professional supervision. With this license, students can take advantage of their breaks to explore dungeons. This way, they can gather experience from when they become full-fledged explorers. But there are a few exceptions to this. Those who belong to the student council are seen as professionals even though they're not officially registered. In addition to having political influence with the school's administration, they can also join attack teams against 5-star or higher monsters. They are what's expected, the next generation of ranked warriors. Since she's in her 3rd year, she's 2 years older than them. That would be the case, but she's still in her 2nd year, and Jerry Allen wants to know if she failed. That's not it. Actually, she took the position from the previous president, but he wants to know how that could happen. Sarah had already told him the school is basically driven by strength and skill. Students can join the council starting the 1st semester of their 2nd year, and that's what she did. She quickly unsheathed her sword. That's how the school's biggest event happened, and she challenged all the council members. Before the 1st semester ended, she had defeated all of them, becoming the youngest council president in history. Despite everything, she said she was about to leave there, is relieved that nothing bad happened, but Jerry Allen would like to make a bet with her. Since she seems busy, it will be quick. He heard she's famous, and she must have her reasons for being a jerk for no reason. The bet is simple. If he loses, the time slot is hers. Sarah tries to apologize for him thinking the boy is completely out of his mind. If it's a bet, she has to face a consequence if she doesn't win. He really liked that she's smart, and asked if she knows what shadowboxing is. It's a basic form of close combat training. The one who touches their opponent first or puts them in a disadvantageous position wins. If he loses, he'll give her the time slot, and it's perfect because there's no risk of a traumatic injury from a hit now that she loses the bet. As soon as he enters the school, she should give up her position as president to him. That's one of the craziest things. There's no way she'll accept that proposal, but it's interesting enough, so she ends up accepting the challenge. After hearing this, she even learned the boy's name, since they couldn't do it in the hallway. They went to a workshop where the durability of the pieces is tested. Both are ready to start. The brat is quite confident she'll win. The saying can be said for Jerry Ong. Saram, on the other hand, is very anxious. That's unnecessary, the problem was already resolved. Not to mention he's badly injured, and even if he wins, she won't give up the position to him, but he says he's not going to win. Now Saram doesn't know what to say. Even healthy, he wouldn't stand a chance. She's way too strong. If that's the case, why did he make the bet with her then? But Jerry Ong tells her not to worry. It's normal for her to be confused, but she should trust him more. In the end, it won't be a bad exchange. Only Saram doesn't understand the purpose of it. She thinks he intends to lose to see the good side of her, but it's impossible for him to be that stupid. Her uncle says he has nothing to say except to apologize. He knows she should be a leader, but instead of being receptive, she ends up being harsh with the truth. And he apologized once more to Saram, who said it wasn't necessary. All this is only happening because the boy, even though he doesn't know the boy, he can feel he's very confident. Then the brat says he must have already noticed. She won't use both arms, so it will be a bit fairer for him. But that's not important because it will serve as an excuse when she loses. That audacity makes her more interested, so she started preparing her stance. In the blink of an eye, she had already disappeared. He is surprised, preparing to react. He managed to dodge the first attack. It's made both Saram and the brat's uncle surprised, but for different reasons. Saram was surprised by the speed of the attack, which was almost imperceptible. Someone has to accept the risk of exposing themselves, but Gyun didn't show any hesitation, more fear. She simply executed her attack with speed to protect her immense pride. Saram knows that if it were her, she would never have been able to react. Then the tailor breaks the silence. Han doesn't know if he's the first asked this question. He wants to know if this student is really preparing to transfer to the warrior school. Looking at the data that was sent to him, there's no doubt that the boy is talented, but what he sees with his own eyes is beyond expectations. He too was an adventurer, full of energy. He's aware that Jerryong's intention isn't to prove himself, but to learn more about who this person is. Jum is already very strong for her age, and with a little more experience, she easily be on par with the lower ranked ones. The boy just wants to get a sense of where he needs to reach. Not only that, but also the distance he needs to cover. And so far, he's been able to dodge with mastery. After several blows, he gained a bit of distance. Gum says it's been a while. Since she entered the school, no one has been able to dodge her attacks for so long. She's impressed by him. She definitely didn't expect him to last this long. His arm isn't the only thing injured. Judging by how he is now, he must be far from his full physical capacity. But Jerryong says she hasn't seen him at full capacity yet, and she shouldn't assume that. Speaking more softly, she said she saw he was pretty fast when he faced the horned horror. She watched the video hundreds of times, and she's a fan of him, the anonymous hero that no one one knows yet, returning to her normal demo when she suggested they call it a tie, and they could settle this another time. As soon as he enters the school and is healed, they'll continue, because she doesn't want things to end here. She can go on with her uncle, but Jerryang said he doesn't believe those words. That confidence, she still doesn't know what's going on. A tie isn't something he's willing to accept here, because the student council president position is at stake. Since he doesn't intend to give up, it's better they don't waste more time. He's ready to continue, but the three of them fought the same thing. He's bluffing. He's wasting the best chance he's had so far since the bet started. That's a problem because she likes ambitious people, and what he just showed was an ambition, just foolishness. Jerryang looks at her with a slight smile and took a few steps toward her. After those words, he was the first to move. Now it's his turn to attack in this fight. She had to be fully immersed in the moment. Even her uncle didn't expect that. Jerryang barely missed hitting her with everything he had. Saram thought he had been holding back this whole time, but that wasn't the case, and the tailor realized he had been completely wrong in his assessment. It wasn't just a test of strength that he sought with Gaeun. In that short span of time, he managed to learn and replicate her movements. He's a monster, and it's not about winning or losing here. His intention is to learn Gaeun's technique. Finishing his attack, he said that's how she did it. Since he was a smuggler from a young age, there was a rule he followed strictly. She shouldn't keep watching because there's more he wants to see from her. And the rule is this: never make a deal with a lose. Technique isn't just about using strength to knock someone out, but rather the refinement of movement to extract the best from an individual. From the way you breathe to the way you take any step. What makes each of these details important is the timing of execution. People dedicate their time and lives to perfect this, gaining knowledge through repetition, trial, and error. The knowledge is then passed down so the next generation can refine it. Even with talent, you can't surpass the limit of knowledge on your own. Because he's naturally talented, Gaeun became strong by himself. But as soon as his development slowed after puberty, he came face to face with a cruel truth. There was a wall in front of him preventing him from getting stronger. Only by breaking through that wall would he be able to become stronger. So he got rid of the sling that was limiting him. He asked why she was hesitating so much because he had been very clear. He's sure he's going to enter the school, and she said she'd be happy to teach a rookie like him. It seems that in reality, she wants to avoid losing, and he understands that. This left her speechless for a moment, and she asked her uncle if he remembered what she asked for last time. An attack squad wanted to make a deal with her, and he advised her to visit them to build her reputation. She will listen to him, but asks that in return he doesn't hold her back. This made him uneasy, asking what she intends to do, and Gaeun tells her opponent that he wanted to see her dodge. If that's the case, she'll show him. It's time for him to make her dodge his attack, but she was already about to land a kick on the boy. He observes the attack closely with him for an opening. Avoiding contact, he found what he was looking for. Every movement has a beginning and an end, as well as a transition phase between them. When you observe someone, you can predict what they will do next. Gyum is using this to her advantage. By skipping a few steps, it's possible to deceive her observer. It's not just difficult to predict what comes next, but each movement seems faster than it actually is. This is the result of decades of development, something Gyum's father created and became known for executing with mastery. This is called Flash, an incredibly fast technique. Gaeun performed it twice in a row in a way that Gyum hasn't yet shown mastery over. This isn't a technique that can be replicated just by understanding the concept. Flexibility, reflexes, and above all, time are essential for perfect execution. Any mistake and the technique won't happen. Even at his physical peak, her father didn't master the technique until shortly after his 20s. It took him 3 months just to start understanding the beginning of it. He had a perfect hit just to train with his niece, and the boy is already doing all of that with ease. As Han realized, Gaeun is in terrible health. He's almost out of energy after everything he's done. But even with all that happening in his body, he moves as if he were at the peak of his vigor. He feels a sense of accomplishment, as if he knows he can become even stronger than he already is. It's not an orthodox form of learning, but he also has a good reason to get stronger, and he learned exactly how to do that. He didn't learn because he needed to, but because he discovered that learning is fun. Now he doesn't feel the pain in his body or the fatigue in his lungs. All he wants now is to keep pressuring Gyum. She realized she's in a delicate situation. Gaeun presses her with mastery using his new technique. Contact is imminent, and there's nothing she can do. This made him need to intervene. A great silence falls over the place. Han stood still in the middle of the way. Gyum had told him not to try and separate them. However, she's happy it ended before he had to get involved. Despite everything, it's unfortunate. Gyum admits she lost the bet, but Gaeun says the same thing she does. Now both are at an impasse. She said she wasn't going to use her hands, but Gaeun didn't agree to that part. Whether using hands or not, he was still hit. She might be saying that out of pride, but to be honest, she's not that strong. Then her uncle said there's no need to decide who won or not. It's his fault that things reached this point, and given Gaeun's health, it's not good to continue. So they should decide it's a tie, and that it was an opportunity for both of them to learn. As soon as the boy fully recovers, they can have a formal challenge between the two. If that's what he suggests, Gyum looks at him threateningly and tells him to listen. They'll meet again at the school, and if he fails to enter or loses to someone before losing to her, she won't forgive him him in this lifetime. Despite everything for him, the fight was definitely an excellent learning experience. As she was leaving, Jum asked for Serum's name and she told her if she's the one sponsoring the boy, she'd like to apologize. She doesn't know how good Serum is as an adventurer, but from what it seems, she's not a complete useless person. She has a good eye for people, and Garyon wasn't the only one who had fun today. Now the two were sitting on the couch waiting. All this waiting was killing him. Serum is happy that after everything he doesn't have to go to the hospital, but he wishes he could. And after everything, she's surprised she didn't expect Guillaume to admit she lost. Since she saw everything, she believes Garyon won, but he doesn't see it that way. He was the first to break the rules. When he removed the sling to attack, neither of them was fighting with the intention to win. With that in mind, he was the first to cross the line. In the end, he was going all out, and if he had hit her, he could have caused severe injuries. If he had been in her position, he would have used his hands too, because there was no other choice. Serum wants to know what would have happened if they had fought at full strength. For someone who didn't want in the fight, she seems to have gotten too immersed in what she saw. He then gets up from the couch. He realized they had arrived. In the room, two people finally enter. Serum turns to see who they are. It's Han, who says he's grateful they waited all this time. He ended up bringing some pizzas for them to eat. After eating, he apologized to them. His niece caused some trouble and he should have taken them out to eat. But Garyon is already thankful for the pizzas. For him, food just needs to be plentiful and that's enough. Adventurers, I can eat 5 times as much food. Serum hadn't thought about that before, but he had been out cold for 4 days without eating anything. Anyway, his workshop doesn't work with leather, but with a similar material. They use fibers from high-class monsters as raw material. They make a strong combination with the aim of creating the best outfit for the user. This material is lighter and more resistant than leather. Thinking about Garyon, Han already knows which material combination and clothing type would suit him best. He'd have seen what Garyon is capable of, and he already has his personal information. There's just one more thing he keeps questioning. The final stage of production involves immersing the material in oil to increase its resistance and durability. Serum already knew this, which is why she requested the best material be used. But under the current circumstances, obtaining this oil is almost impossible. They used the oil from the voracious whale of the deep seas. They had a monopoly on this material, but due to unexpected circumstances, hunting them is now non-existent. There are other materials that can be used as substitutes with almost no practical difference, but that would imply a breach of contract and error that shouldn't happen. And if they want to change their minds, it's okay. He can even recommend them to a master specialist in leather. He's willing to cover the loss of time for them. Garyon says he doesn't mind. If the difference in quality isn't that significant, there's no problem. He doesn't even use good equipment anyway. And above all, he wants to use the equipment made by this guy. Besides, he asked if Han was the one who taught his niece. He doesn't understand much about equipment, but he would feel better knowing it was made by someone strong. If that's the case, it'll stick with him. Serum knew something was off that day. It's already been 10 years since Han retired, but he was grateful to hear that, and he was happy to receive the compliment. Serum has no idea where all the food went. If they trust him, he will do his best to create that equipment. The more he thinks about it, the more disappointed he is with what happened last week. There was a hunt, and he thought he would get good materials from it. He asked if they had heard about the Imperial Wasp, and Serum mentioned the Royal Jelly. But in that monster, there is another material considered excellent by equipment makers, the black wax, which is used to protect the queen. Only a few of them can produce this wax for protection. Showing his phone to Garyon, Han asked if that was what he was talking about. There was a picture, but since he lost his old phone, he had to improvise and draw it. Now Han is surprised that the boys saw it firsthand. The truth is that Garyon smuggled it, but he said he saw it when he went to Serum's house. Rich people really have lots of things. Now, Garyon is in the hospital. He should have seen someone before heading there. It will take an hour, and the manager should be available by then as well. Han asked if Garyon had eaten, and indeed he had, but he would be up for eating again. As long as Han helps pay, of course. The door opens slowly where Garyon is. He needed to hang up now, but asked them to call him as soon as they arrived, because the plans he had for that day just showed up. Zeke says it's been a while, and Caballino suggests they talk outside. 11 days ago, they discussed some things at the hospital. It's not good to make too much noise in Garyon's room. An attack team led by one man disbanded, and they might just stay quiet if that's the case. Caballino says Zeke is still the same easily irritating people. These two used to be allies, but not everything is friendly between them. Zeke got too worked up seeing him. Juan or Caballino is a retired adventurer. He was number 5 before that, and since they're on the same side, Zeke should shut up and follow him. Serum wonders if her friend will keep surprising her like this, and she wants to know more about the black wax he has. She imagines it's the item that was in the chest, and she should have been informed about it. But Garyon didn't even know what it was yet. He thanked her for handling it discreetly. After Arjus, nothing has been easy, and now she wants to know if he's busy. And indeed he is. He has to meet someone. If it wasn't too far, she could give him a ride, and soon she felt her phone vibrate. It's her Uncle Zeke calling, so she asked him to wait a bit, and he agreed since he wouldn't be late for his appointment. The nights were already getting cold at this time of year. It was the tailor who mentioned this, and he asked if Serum had already left, but she had just gone to make a call. So she she wouldn't be long, and the tailor said there was no need to talk to her. He just came out to smoke in peace. He mentioned that the skill Garyon learned today is called Flash. It was created by his brother, Veyun's father, and he also contributed to its development. Hearing this, Garyon became embarrassed. He immediately apologized to him. He should have guessed that the creator of the technique would be there. He apologized for using it without permission, but the tailor wasn't there to complain about that. There's no exclusivity for this kind of thing. In fact, they hesitate to teach it to just anyone, but it's neither wrong nor a discredit to learn through observation. If it's easy to copy, it's natural that more people will eventually use it, but it's not at all easy to copy. At first, he thought Garyon had a weak foundation because he had never been taught by anyone, but after watching him in the fight, he realized that if Garyon had been lazy, he would never have lost the basic teachings. He doesn't know what happened for him to learn this way when he has summoned fights for him. He is talented, and with time and dedication, he will discover his true potential. Becoming a great adventurer will be a challenge for him. This is a potential that's not far off, but in this world it's uncommon for prodigies to be admired. Of course there will be those who admire and help him, but there will always be those who can't overcome their envy and will try to control or destroy him. And perhaps Garyon is already aware of stories like these. The boy wants to know if the advice is to hide his potential, to avoid unwanted attention, but in fact, it's the opposite. He should never hide his talents. Besides, it's not something he would be able to do, and if he tried, it would only attract people's contempt. So it's better that he does what he feels is best. He should show who he truly is, an unreachable genius. As long as he's capable, he must do his best and absorb as many techniques as he finds useful. Even though it might become a problem, he shouldn't bow down as he just did. Instead, he should raise his head and lift his voice. He's the one who decides what's right or wrong. That choice belongs to the strongest. If he learns a technique and perfects it, he can even claim that it belongs to him. The tailor understands how the boy must be feeling, but in the world of explorers, strength is what rules. His niece's personality is that taken to the extreme, but he doesn't plan on curbing her behavior. She's demanding, and even if she's like that, no one will ever underestimate her, and he thinks Jerryong should do the same. At that moment, Serum appears calling out to her friend. She didn't expect the tailor to be here as well, but it was to tell him to speak with her uncle. He doesn't know why, but she emphasized that he should. She knew he would be there. So she asked if the boy was around and said she wanted to talk to him. So he picks up the phone and Zeke apologizes if he was in the middle of something. He didn't expect to talk to him so soon, but a problem arose, and he needed to see him immediately. Jerryong didn't expect the sudden invitation, but he understood the message and said he would meet him right away. In an abandoned place, they follow a path. It seems there's a secret route that leads to the dungeon. Through the subway, there are various access points that lead to the dungeons. That one in particular belonged to them. Zeke is there with his clothes torn, and he says that someone is inside. He hadn't intended to call him, but the person said they'd rather die than be healed by him, which is why he called. He doesn't know what's going on, but it's clear that they don't get along, and it seems Zeke and the manager had a falling out. The guy says that if he had known Jerryong would arrive so quickly, he would have asked for his shirt, but Jerryong doesn't even know who he is. He says he likes Jerryong's eyes, and asks if he was the one who cut Zeke's cheek. He's already famous within the attack group known as the boy who defeated a high-ranking monster. The captain is even excited to meet him, but Zeke cuts off the small talk between the two. They're leaving, and there's no point in staying there any longer. Serum goes with him, but she asked him to call her later. On the other side of the door, there's a reddish light. Jerryong heads there to see what happened. Jerryong felt frustrated, thinking the man truly needed help, and he does. His body and pride are in shambles. He doesn't know why that bastard came all the way there, and he certainly didn't expect him to show up with someone else. Even knowing the answer, the man asked if the boy had a lighter, but Jerryong just wanted to know what that strange light was since the sun had already set. When Jerryong didn't have a lighter, the man asked if he could hand him something. He was too tired to move, and below them there was fire and destruction everywhere. Now Jerryong wants to know what the two had been fighting about. It wasn't really a fight. The man just wanted to burn Zeke until there was nothing left of him. The guy who came with him is impressive. He's not a tank, but he has good defense and the potential to be a big name in the future if he trains for another 10 years. Jerryong says he has something to tell him, but the manager already knows. If it's about quitting being a smuggler, he's free to go, but if Jerryong wants to become an adventurer, there's one condition. He better learn within the next month what the manager plans to teach him. If he doesn't succeed, he should reconsider his plans. It won't be easy as it's not within his natural talents, but Jerryong isn't sure what it could be. However, the manager reveals that it's exactly what he thinks. It's magic he intends to teach him. The protagonist asks if he had heard it correctly because he wants to know more about the matter as he's very impressed. But his future mentor is too tired to remain standing needing immediate assistance. It doesn't seem like ordinary fatigue, as even his body is cold, leaving the boy with no choice but to carry him in his arms. At first, making coffee from beans was a bit difficult, but soon he got the hang of making a tasty coffee. If he had known the process was so therapeutic, he would have started much earlier, as it would have been a lovely hobby during his prime. The other guy didn't like that phrase, as he thinks his friend is still in his prime. That way of speaking is as if he were retired. Jia Wang was only 26 years old at the time, and the protagonist's father said that he really is retired. The manager would like him to be able to put an end to Duganawig. He just needed to form a capable squad for it, but he wouldn't have to overcome the bureaucracy to do so. I already understand his enemy's strategy too, who ends up handing over victory by hiding, but that's what worries the manager a lot. This decision will strengthen his enemy. He's also outraged because people don't give credit to the true hero. Showing himself to be a loyal friend, he said he would take care of things for him. He decided he would fight the dragon and fix what had happened. The heated conversation ended up waking the child. It seems the manager didn't know of his existence until now. That tiny, big-eyed, and very well-mannered boy is named Jerry Ong. Only now has he been introduced to the son of the great hero. He asked the boy to go play for a while because he needs to talk to that adult who was going to have dinner with him. It was then that he revealed to the manager that his health wouldn't last much longer. Zeke was doing his best to treat him, but his body is also developing resistance to the medicine. Soon, all his abilities will deteriorate, including cognitive ones. He has at most 4 years before becoming unrecognizable. That news shook the manager, but the hero had already made his choice. He took the opportunity to ask him to take care of the child. The worst happened. The manager had never seen that man show weakness. This was the first and only time, the only opportunity in which he asked someone a favor, not because he was proud, but because he felt too responsible for his own. He wished a little one a normal life, a life different from the one he had, a life in which he finds happiness. That was the small favor he had asked of the manager, who could never refuse the last request of his great friend. His health condition eventually deteriorated. That part the manager remembers as well. He asked the boy what time it was. It was still early that day, but tomorrow was already almost over. The manager just hoped he hadn't been treated by Zeke and Jerry on confirmed that hadn't happened. He considered taking him to the hospital, but it would be too hard to explain this situation, so he treated him at home. The manager quickly realized what happened. In the past, he had received that as a gift for starting work. Jerry was only 14 years old and thought that syringe was to be used on monsters, but later learned it was an emergency medicine. It might not be a sensational item, but it solved the problem in emergencies, serving as an antidote for almost anything. It's almost exclusive to adventurers, and he thought it wouldn't be a bad gift for the boy. From then on, he should buy the next ones with his own money. That made the boy very happy, and the manager just observed him. He warned that the boy's choice about the path he wants to follow cannot be changed. Once he started, he couldn't just stop working. At least he wouldn't have to worry about hospital expenses, even if it troubled the manager's conscience. The boy sees it as an opportunity, because they don't know what might happen in the future. Since he was little, he knew it was necessary to have his own skills. Trusting that man isn't a challenge, because the real challenge was being strong enough to protect his father. As he left, he thanked him for the gift, but the manager never imagined that gift could be used on him. The boy had survived all those years without meeting it. He should have at least sold it on the black market, but that's not what Jerry would do. He revealed to the boy that he would pay for the hospital expenses anyway, and he had always known that. He had doubts at some point, but always considered the possibility. He knew the manager wouldn't give up on his father even if something happened. That's why he never hesitated to work for him. When the boy became his employee to be a smuggler, that was when he thought he had given up on the promise he once made. But it was the boy who wished for it. He was the one who asked for the opportunity. If not with him, he would have found another way that removed the manager's doubt, who had always been intrigued by how easily a boy accepted that job. The promise he had made to his father was not to turn his son into an adventurer, but even at his own peak, he didn't usually listen to the boy's father, because the talent he had couldn't be wasted on a normal life, especially because he hates this damn world they live in. The bastards who disrespected his father and forgot everything he had done for humanity. Even those who stayed silent during that injustice, he hopes all of them find out if hell exists. He said that not even Zeke would be able to defeat the dragon. The intention is good, but his methods are naive. It's not just humans who need determination to defeat the dragon. These creatures aren't stupid either. Finding them is very difficult, and if they are defeated one day, society may collapse. They're already deeply infiltrated. Determination is a good thing, but all these people are just trash for betraying the protagonist's father. Even if the world ended tomorrow, these fools wouldn't go back on what they've done. Zeke is bound by the laws of society, and that stops his plans to defeat the dragon. He'll end up paying a price for it. Soon the devastation his father prevented will happen someday, and the false hopes will be spucked away. That's why he never pressured the boy to become an adventurer and handed him a piece of paper. They had the data of a bank account in his name, years of deposits he had made from his own earnings for the boy. He hoped he would become an adult first, so he had the means to do whatever he wanted with his life. He even considered teaching the boy some skills to succeed in life, so he wouldn't need to become an adventurer, which is very dangerous. When he's ready, he should sign a contract to learn magic. Until then, he wished the boy would study, even if he thought it insignificant. Sharion believes he could have been stopped by him from becoming an adventurer if that's what he truly wanted. In fact, he's not wrong, but the answer to that will stay in his own mind. His thoughts are irrelevant, though it's the same as what happened 3 years ago. What really matters is Sharion's will to decide what to do with his own life. These are the ruins of the ancient city of Yongsa. A woman walks him on the wreckage. It's already time for them to have a better place to meet since money isn't a problem. The guy doesn't believe she was the one to suggest that idea because she barely comes to the meetings but agrees they should have a place with at least hot water. The woman didn't expect to see that man alone as he's always accompanied by someone else. At the moment, the man who usually accompanies him has other duties, and the woman knows this too. That's why she prays him. Being without his bodyguard, she thought he'd act like a child and go looking for him. Maybe he's just holding back the tears now. The man started getting annoyed by the disrespect. He said if she wants to find out if there's life after death, she just has to keep talking. The woman found that funny since the dog started barking due to its owner's absence. She thought that attitude was just too cute. Irritated, he warned that he'd have no problem fighting her. She's the reason behind all the current problems. The woman didn't feel intimidated either, saying he always brings up the same topic, but another person ordered them to stop it immediately. Their presence was enough to call him Heron and the bulky one down. They could fight later, but for now they had a lot of work to do and need to finish quickly. It would be a shame if they had more work because of the irresponsibility of the two. The bulky one admitted he was being stupid. He shouldn't have fallen for a provocation. The woman said the bulky one was still alive thanks to that intervention, claiming the man was ignoring her calls. But it seems that's not what happened, because 4 days ago he assumed he didn't need to give an answer, but he was saying to disband the rescue team. There was no me to request it, and the plan was a success. The bulky one said that only 12 people lost their lives in the event, and they still had the Padao spotlights on someone else. The news won't stop talking about those mysterious young people. It was the actions of those boys that prevented a public retaliation against the Adventurers Association. The vehicle that contained the creature wasn't properly supervised, which is why it was stolen, causing that whole incident. They hired the media and paid the families affected by the catastrophe, directing the public's focus toward the 2 young men. The women said it would have been better to get rid of them, but that man's dream is to become a terrorist. That way they'll attract the attention of the Adventurers Association. Something small like what happened wouldn't achieve that result. But if they keep causing incidents like this, the association will eventually be destroyed. And the bulky one realized it's important to keep the chaos going, so they have something immediate to do now. Before answering, another person had arrived asking if everyone was there. They should warn him before his arrival, as he thinks he may have taken too long. The man said he wouldn't interrupt while that guy was busy with his hobbies, but to him, that's not just a hobby, it's his job, even though he can't hide that he really enjoys what he does. The bulky one wants to know if this person is an adventurer. He heard that despite being one, he's not very important, and then he even stabs his allies in the back. The hostage is crying out for help. They're aware that this person tends to lure companions in to boost his own gains, vanishing into the shadows when it happens. The shadow is a secret place used by adventurers inside the dungeons, a safe hideout with medicine and a place to rest. At least that was its original purpose, but it turned into a place where they do whatever they want. The man told the hostage to repeat the story he had told. That night there was going to be a party with his companions inside the shadow. There would be some ordinary citizens there too. The bulky one grew curious about this story since the hostage was spending time with the smugglers, and they told him to keep telling the story because it wasn't finished. His boss has connections. He always brings in different people, rich folks, regular citizens. They drive the people with drinks or medication. They're nothing but addicts who go into the dungeons looking for different kinds of thrills. They really are a great place to do whatever they want, so the outside world doesn't get involved. The hostage said he had no choice. He heard that his squad wasn't the only one doing such absurd things. His captor told him not to be scared since he had said everything they wanted to hear. The problem is that his time was up. It was time to say goodbye. They won't let anyone leave that place alive. What the world will hear is that the monsters took the lives of those people. It seems like this task will be quite interesting, but it will be strange that only the 4 of them are involved in it. The guy in the bandana wishes Dorian was with them on this mission too, thinking that if things go wrong, they can just destroy everything. But when it comes to lethality, the 4 of them are more than enough for the mission. The target is an assault squad trying to increase its influence, 2 gold level and 6 ranked members. Enough for some fun, As soon as their bodies are found, their stench will show the world how rotten everything already is. A month had passed. The protagonist is almost arriving at his destination. He's already out of the cast, and his recovery isn't complete. He'll take another 2 weeks. During that time, his equipment will also be completed, and there's something else to be said. Before hearing it, he saw his friend was already waiting. He didn't expect they'd be the only ones using that place in the coming days. That explains the price of the taxi since the place is far from the city. They only have these days to prepare for the exam. She heard the protagonist would be busy next month, so she needs to help him now. Jerry Young told her he met this person when he got his cast removed. He forgot to let her know, because he also wants to help him prepare for the exam, and it seems like he'll be really useful. While introducing them, he didn't notice they were both nervous, dubious shyness. That place has a complete Olympic pool, along with all the equipment needed for training. A space where they can also rest with food and drinks freely available. That's the weight room with equipment prepared for adventurers. The 5th floor is reserved for men, but if he wants to use the spa, he should go to the 4th floor. Jerry Young can't believe all of that belongs to her uncle. The girl said there's no need to be surprised, because among high-level adventurers, it's common for them to be even more extravagant. When he's not using the place, it's her opportunity to get permission for them to use the space. That's when she asked, since she had forgotten what that guy was doing there too. Jerry Young said he's a friend, and the girl asked him to be more discreet, since they could be overheard. She doesn't know why Chulkin came with the protagonist, because even though they're in the same class, they're not close. Jerry Young asked if the girl had ever tried talking to him, but that's not even a possibility for her. It's not just their class. Everyone avoids talking to him since he has a reputation for being extremely demanding, even if noble. While she was about to continue venting, Jerry Young asked what his friend was doing. He said he's not there to have fun, so he should stop. The Mountain of Muscles walked up to him like an obedient boy, something completely unexpected for the girl who saw that troglodyte apologize. The whole situation is truly unusual. She remembered they had talked about serum in the taxi. The Mountain of Muscles confirmed he doesn't know anyone at school, but that girl is scary. Even so, he thinks she must be nice. Jerry Young now isn't sure if they're talking about the same person, because that's not the serum he knows. He doesn't pick up on social nuances very well, but he knows that girl has been targeted by some people since the first day. But he's never seen her falter in front of anyone at that school, always holding her head high. He doesn't know how her academic performance is, but he's sure she must be a very resilient person. Maybe they can use this weekend for a group study session. Serum is worried because he needs to prepare for the exam. The protagonist doesn't seem to care about that. He needs to build habits and gain knowledge, analyze situations, and develop a plan. That's what he needs. But since they're in that place, they might as well use it in a more interesting way, because over the last month he's become stronger than ever. He managed to face talented people, so they should take this opportunity to exchange knowledge. That way, everyone gains something. His words may sound harsh, but he knows these two are completely out of place at school, and if he were enrolled, he would share information with his friends, and they should start doing that immediately. Serum even considered the possibility of doing that over the weekend. Jerry Ong said she should think more about herself. School must not be an easy place to perform. She understands those words, but remains worried about the test. Even if he passes, there's no one to sponsor him within that school. She completely understands the situation, but doesn't think she's capable of teaching him anything. That's when Jerry Ong asked the Mountain of Muscles if he knows magic. The guy is still in theoretical classes. That girl is good at it, but she made it clear that just because she knows how to use it doesn't mean she's good. Hilking said she could teach since he's always been interested in learning. Serum still finds him very intimidating, and he thought he had managed to act naturally, not realizing he scared the girl. The group went to the training room. The Mountain of Muscles stayed outside to answer a call from his parents. Jerry Ong said they have all sorts of materials there, even clothes, which she asked if he could take home. Seeing that the plan had changed, Serum wanted to know what the protagonist had in mind. She didn't imagine she'd be part of a group with other people at that school, let alone that Shilkane would be one of its members. Jerry Ong said that, although he's big, the guy isn't scary at all and he wants to make something clear. While they were talking, someone was approaching. They turned around to see who it was. The woman said her bad feeling wasn't without reason. If they planned to use that place, she would have been informed, saying Serum really is such a clumsy person. Completely startled, she didn't expect Anish to be there. The two began arguing about the possibility of using that place when her uncle isn't around. Jerry Ong doesn't know who this blonde is. Anisha said their uncle wouldn't give special treatment to anyone. Serum explained to Jerry Ong that this is her cousin, Anisha, even if she looks rough at the same age. The girl waved in a friendly manner, and his relieved her cousin brought a friend like him. The extra decided her as a second-year student. He was thinking about bringing some friends to train and get to know each other better. He's glad more people are there too, though he figured his cousin would prefer a place with fewer people. It's better for her to leave anyway to avoid misunderstandings. Serum was about to respond, but the protagonist intervened, saying that this was a great opportunity. party. They were planning to have a study session. There's another friend with them who just stepped out to make a call. He asked her if that would be a problem. The extra wants to know where the boy is from since he's never seen him at school. He said he used to study in an ordinary place is in the first year, and his name is Jerry Ong, and right now he's preparing to take the transfer exam. Serum offered to help him that weekend. While he explains, he's mocked by the extras who already consider him a complete weirdo. The bolder extra suggested he leave before it's too late. Anisha is holding back from humiliating her cousin, and the extra keeps trying to intimidate the protagonist, saying they are not normal people and someone like him wouldn't last long there. He would just embarrass himself, so he should find something else to do with his life. Before Jerry Ong had the chance to keep talking, the extra surprised him, landing a punch on his face. He complained about the pain. The extra didn't intend to cause serious harm, because attacking a normal citizen is a crime severely punished. He just wanted to intimidate the boy pulling his punch before it reached him. He's sure he had planned his strike with perfect precision. The boy should have flinched at that hand. He began to think the boy must have moved on purpose to be hit, meaning he must have seen through the provocation. With a trembling voice, Jerry Ong said he had hoped they would be friendly and maybe even work together. But unfortunately, he'll have to act in self-defense and hopes the extra can understand that. That place is also filled with cameras. They're positioned to ensure there are no blind spots who adventurers can watch their training later and see where they fail. Serum knows he was hit on purpose. No matter what happens, Jerry Ong must have a reason for it, and the cameras recorded that unjustified aggression. The extra is puzzled, still trying to grasp that the boy is going to act in self-defense. He said he's very shy and introverted when bad things happen. His sleep is disturbed. The extra began to think the victim is overreacting since he didn't even get hurt. Speaking even louder, he asked if Serum heard what the extra said, that his victim behavior is exaggerated. It would be better if he called the police or even the school principal. That was enough to make the extra terrified, saying that he needed to solve this problem quickly. He asked if the boy wanted money or if he really wanted to train with him, but Jerry Ong said that everything he does from now on will be self-defense. If he doesn't return that punch, he might not be able to sleep at night. The extra ended up agreeing with that solution because he believes it's the easiest way to resolve this big problem, believing that the protagonist is just a mediocre human who went to a mediocre school and must have mediocre strength. But the force of that punch was so brutal it rearranged the teeth in his mouth. Jerry Ong is really an excellent actor because he started behaving as if he were impressed. That was a bit different from what the extra had promised. His instincts told him not to be hit by that punch. The bald one didn't understand that thinking his friend should have let himself be hit, but the extra is sweating cold. His friends might think he dodged as a joke, but if he had been hit, it would have been extremely unfortunate. Jerry Ong began to provoke the extra, asking if he really intended to be hit or if he's just a liar. Anisha asked him to just tell the truth already. Returning the blow in equal measure in that situation would be way too much. It would be better to apologize and compensate the boy. It makes no sense for a fight to start now. With his underwear completely compromised, the extra realized this was the best way out, saying he was wrong. But Jerry Ong wasn't going to let things end that way. He suggested to the extra that they settle this with their fists. Finishing his sentence, he vanished from everyone's sight. Seeing that the fight was imminent, he was already prepared to fight. Identifying the offensive approach of the boy, he tried to intimidate. Believing he saw the move, he attacked. But he had only struck his after image, leaving his body completely unguarded. That opening was enough for his jaw to be crushed. But the strike was intentionally weak because the goal wasn't to hurt the body. It was to destroy the ego. Jerry Ong him returned the blow in a devastating way because he had shown his complete superiority, leaving the extra deeply enraged. With his pride wounded, he started throwing punches, but he wasn't able to land a single hit on his target. Jerry Ong kept dodging effortlessly until the extra finally believed he had him cornered, but he still doesn't know the extent of that boy's abilities, having his attack completely repelled. It happened so fast, the extra is still trying to understand. Jerry Ong asked what would happen if he landed a few hits on his body. Taking the opportunity, he lightly kicked the extra's leg, which caused him to fall to the ground, having his pride obliterated once again. Those watching the fight took a while to process it. They believe the senior must have lost on purpose. Jerry Ong now wonders if that guy really goes to the same school as the others. He was expecting a lot more from that fight. You'd consider they could train seriously, saying he's glad the extra took it in good humor, since there are recordings of him starting the fight. But that poor soul refuses to shake the protagonist's hand. If that's the conclusion of the fight, you can only feel sorry. He was hoping it would be as tough as it was with that girl. If he'd known it would be this easy, he would have gone even easier. He asked his friend to keep the recordings just in case, but she said it wasn't necessary. But he asked if the girl was stupid. The recording's not for him. She's the one who should take a look, because she'll be able to see with absolute clarity. He was limiting his own speed to match the mediocrity of the extra, who was far below expectations. Only now did she realize Jerry Ong did that so she could learn learn something. The boy just took the opportunity, realizing that the person who's been targeting her at school is that girl in the dress. Besides that, it became clear she doesn't intend to hide the fact that she hates her friend. He doesn't know their situation at school from what he heard from Chil Kang. He knows she doesn't bow to anyone there. To be clear, he's not a proud person, but he also doesn't let jerks take advantage of him. They have a secret agreement. But he also means to think about his reputation, and they shouldn't remain isolated. While he was talking to her, he heard a strange noise. The two lived back to see what's happening. It was the extra still very angry. That way the protagonist would be caught off guard. Anisha thinks it's already too much humiliation for one day, summoning a magical being that was able to hold the extra with just one hand. Their senior should at least keep his composure. Now she was forced to step in. Saren felt quite intimidated by the amount of power her cousin possesses, but that ended up producing something unexpected. Jeryong was able to feel something different in his own body. The boy remembered what happened 3 weeks ago. He was opening a delivery from the hospital, checking what he had received. He wasn't expecting much, but his clothes looked like trash, and it seemed he wouldn't be able to use that item again. When the user's life is in danger, their body is covered by magic to prevent the worst. At that moment of danger, he didn't realize the item had activated in his pocket. That item was crucial for him to leave the incident without more serious injuries. But the power he felt afterward, he's not sure if it was also a side effect. It's easier to believe that than thinking he has some hidden power. Since the item is quite expensive, it's plausible that it has another type of effect. That's when it finally hit him. The boy had lost a very expensive item. Looking more closely at his hand, he's sure it's the same sensation he felt last time. He doesn't know why it's happening now, but he's certain it wasn't a result of Ankle's blood. Anisha asked how much her cousin offered and suggested he switch sides because she'd pay triple, and then some. Saren told her to stop playing the people because those offers are offensive, but the girl said it's not a joke. She simply made a valid offer to a potential client. Even if he's inferior, he was able to defeat a second-year student from the school. It's strange that a prodigy like him isn't known. There must be a reason he didn't enter the school, but most problems can be solved with money, and that's all Saren has to offer, nothing more. Good connections, reputation, and talent aren't her strong suits. The girl was about to suggest her cousin was offering her body. The protagonist said she offers him patience, and there's someone trying to sabotage his friend's career. He doesn't know how hard that experience must be. But he's certain that the person who talks behind her back causing problems must be a mediocre person who is nothing more than a bucket of crap. Since their sister's Jerry on the Soon, she must know who that person is. After being passively provoked, she dispelled her ability. She had no choice but to cancel that week's meeting. The girl that came with them said they had already invited other classmates. Anisha said her friend is way too kind since she just witnessed all of that and still have the audacity to worry about others. Those who are coming are seniors from the school, and they're going to crush that extra on the ground. There was just a way to build connections with the student council, but it seems she only wasted her time. It would be better to forget what happened that day. Saren made sure to tell the protagonist that they're cousins. If he can't be bought with money, then surely he already has something in mind that he wants. And he better be clear about it because it's going to affect his school life. Jeryon was about to say something, but was pulled by the arm. It was his friend asking him to stop. He wanted to provoke that mage a little more. Maybe he could get a fight out of her. Saren wants to prevent him from drawing attention from that woman because she knows she has no limits. Now that he's got her attention, hell is going to begin, and gossip will be just a start. Jeryon realized that strange sensation had now vanished. It disappeared along with that girl's magic. Maybe that power appears when he senses magic. Saren saw that he was quite distracted and asked if her friend was okay. The boy is now sure that he needs to learn how to use magic immediately, and the extra is still feeling pain from what happened. That's when Shulking spoke to him. He thought he was being friendly, but his presence is really threatening to anyone. Even the extra already knows the reputation of this student and doesn't know what he's doing there. Jeryon went to him to apologize. He confessed he wanted to test something, but didn't mean to embarrass him. That was the extra's own fault. He acknowledged his own mistakes, and even went further, saying he wasn't able to do anything. He had been quite arrogant without knowing who his opponent was, the hero who avoided a great tragedy, and he's relieved nothing worse happened. Jeryon doesn't know if he would have won if it had been a real fight. The extra became pensive, but the boy said they're not so different in terms of strength and speed. But he was able to notice his opponent lost control emotionally, executing attacks that were too simple, so it was easy to read through his strikes. While the extra was unconscious, Jeryon watched their fight several times. His opponent's weight distribution is a strong indicator of what he'll do in battle. Maybe he's already aware of that, but Jeryon made a point of organizing the material so the extra could review it. Sarah and his shortest will leave their senior very surprised. That kind of evaluation isn't something when he can buy. It's only possible because Jeryon is extremely detail-oriented and has amazing intuition. And indeed, the bodyguard is stunned. He can barely find the words. Jeryon said he doesn't care about what happened because they already worked everything out and he holds no grudge. They're here to train, and he hopes this information will help them resolve everything for good, letting him know that once he finishes watching the video, he can leave his number so so Jerry On can send him the full material. Jerry On doesn't believe the extra's friends just left him there unconscious. Chill King also thought that was a despicable attitude. Since a lot had happened, they needed to refocus and begin their magic training. Mana is just fuel for casting spells. Each person's magical status represents the quality of that fuel. Jerry On hadn't imagined it worked that way. His friend explained that humans and elves basically have the same amount of mana. Reusing the analogy, coal doesn't burn the same way as a pile of paper. The quality of the fuel is fundamental in determining which spells can be used. She's at level C, the minimum for those who want to become mages, since it's necessary for offensive enhancement spells. For those boys, what they have is enough for self-enhancement enchantments. Jerry On is already very enthusiastic and asked if they'd be able to learn all that in one weekend. Saren will never get used to that level of enthusiasm. The beginning takes 1 to 2 weeks, but someone said they could help with that, as long as they were comfortable with the idea. That is this poor extra specialty. Performing enchantments that enhance the user themselves. After a few moments of practice, Jerry On managed to produce an F-level enchantment, a small flame. He was quite surprised with his own progress, but the extra told him not to get excited just yet. It would be strange for someone so talented not to be able to do that. More cheerful, he asked if he should make the flame stronger, or try to learn how to produce water. He was advised to keep focusing on that flame, especially on its core. Feel your own magic is a very stupid piece of advice. It's hard to feel something they're not used to doing. But now things are different, since he was able to extract mana and transform into fire. That's the true first step, because magic was awakened for the first time. So he should explore that sensation to better understand it. Keeping the extra expected all that progress, worst case scenario, they would need the whole weekend. Jerry Young said he could feel something sharping at delicate like static electricity in the lower abdomen spreading through his whole body. His instructor confirmed that's the right feeling, impressed that it only took him a little over a minute to reach that point. The sensation is incredible, as if his whole body were made of circuits. He imagined there were about 50, until he realized they numbered in the hundreds. The human body has 2 fundamental parts that deal with mana, the center located in the abdomen and the adjacent circuits responsible for distributing it. There are 127 in total. Saren asked if the mountain of muscles could play any kind of instrument. He said he played piano until he was 10, but doesn't think he has the talent to be a musician. She said that's great then, because what she's going to teach him is very similar to playing the piano. She demonstrated a D-level spell, a lightning sphere that isn't lethal, but can paralyze the enemy. She did need a chant or make any complicated movement to cast the spell. Magic isn't as complicated as people think. Most enchantments happen without the user needing to move their body. It's like playing piano. Just press the right keys in the right order at the right time. The circuits in the body are like piano keys, and the magic is the sheet music being read through those circuits. It's all about timing and precision. That's how magic is used. He asked what happens if he misses the timing of the sheet. Music worried that there might be side effects. Simple spells are cast even if small errors are made, but the quality changes. Saren couldn't help but notice how scary his expression gets when he's focused. The harder the spell, the greater the chance of failure it's cast incorrectly, as she said that the electricity began to grow significantly. In that case, there are consequences for failed execution. You misspell like that which is simple can paralyze its user. More complex spells can demand an even higher price like life. That's why mages need protection on the battlefield. Focusing on execution under stress is harder than it seems. She knows the boy already feels his own mana because he's been practicing for a while, but he still can't feel the circuits in his body. They were going to start from the beginning. Since he's a tank, he doesn't need refined knowledge, just needs to know the circuits used for enhancement. Garyon always knew the two of them would get along well once they had the chance to get to know each other better. Seeing him stand up, the instructor asked if Garyon wanted to go to the bathroom, but the boy said there was no point in continuing practice. The senior warned him that he needs to keep doing the exercises to feel a mana flowing through his body. Garyon believes he already understands how it works. He feels exactly where the circuits are in his body, each one of them. His senior was impressed. Then the boy showed that there are 2 in his hand, totaling 6 in his right arm. In his left arm, he has 8 in total, and if you count the ones in his shoulder, it's 10 altogether. That precision left the senior completely stunned. He's sure he taught the boy very well, but the speed of that kind of progress is absurd. Seren realized that Garyon had once again done some Garyon name, so she asked her new bro to keep teaching him the next steps. The young man needs some time to understand that the boy is truly talented, and there are small differences. All monomade species have a similar number of circuits, each of them already known. In the next stage of training, he showed his body that there was nothing in it. Taking a deep breath, he asked him to pay attention. He had strengthened his body, which increases reflex speed and the user's own endurance. The boy hadn't noticed the difference in his instructor's body. He feinted a blow to the boy's face, intending to show what had changed. Indeed, strength and speed were enhanced. If he had been hit, a broken nose would be the least of his problems. The veteran is impressed that the boy noticed that even without catching his eyes, and mentioned that last year he was at the end of the line. He had great confidence in his basic attributes. lacked fitness when it came to using his full potential. Jerion realized that's why he developed fortification. That was it. The veteran sought to improve what he already had going for him. His luck lies in having an aptitude for magic. After practicing a lot, he sought to learn spells he could use, eventually discovering that fortification would be interesting for him. Depending on how they are combined, it's possible to make the most of one's own abilities. With multiple fortifications, he can seek synergy between them, aiming for a strength greater than what could be reached naturally. That's one of the possibilities. Talented magic users perfect 2 or 3 enchantments, unlike him who knows more than a dozen. As a result, today he's able to lead a team, but the people at the top looked down on him for using enhancement spells. That's why he was so excited when someone popular invited him to that place. Even if it was merely social, a formality, he was still very happy. He wanted to be approved by his underclassmen. That's why he ended up being a jerk to the protagonist. He was seeking approval. In the end, he knows what it's like to be in both positions, the jerk and the victim. Even if it's a little late for that, he apologized for the foolish things he did. Jerion asked him to drop the subject already, because it's good that for the next 58 hours he's ready to teach everything he knows. They ended up training for 4 full days. Early in the morning, they went to get some fresh air. Jerion enjoys that feeling. Seren says that even though he's young, he already seems like an old man. She thought it was a joke, but was impressed that they hadn't slept over the weekend. The protagonist said they're still too young to feel tired. The truth is, their stamina level is extremely high. She's certain the past few days were very productive. Training the talented people was extremely beneficial. Jerion said that if they were near the city, they could have eaten soup with rice, something his friend had never tried. The veteran asked if any of them were going to gang them since he would be training in that city. Jerion said he was headed the same way, saying he wouldn't need Sarum's ride, who was going in another direction. That might sound a bit weird, but he's very grateful for his friends. It was the best weekend he's had since he was 5 years old. He doesn't know if he'll get to see them before the exam since he'll be busy preparing, and wishes his friends do well on their tests too. Especially the girl. If she fails, she'll become a joke to him, and he'll make a point of bringing it up, asking Chibukang to take care of the girl and be kind to her. Finally, the small group says their goodbyes. Sarum also thanked the veteran for his collaboration. She learned a lot from him. The young man said it's mutual, and he hopes they'll meet again. Finally, a taxi continues its journey, but those two still feel awkward when they're alone, since both consider themselves intimidating even if they don't realize it. They were lucky to avoid traffic. Even though he already said it, he said once more that the weekend was incredible. He's happy he learned his special move. The veteran said it's not all that, it's just an idea and might not even work in practice. Jerion disagrees with him. He believes he'll be able to master and even use it in his revenge match. The veteran doesn't even know what that is, but Jerion would let him know about his results. He doesn't know when he'll see the young man again and said he should go out to eat together when they can. That will only happen if the protagonist gets into a better school, because he wouldn't want to go out with people who end up in ordinary places. Jerion understood what those words really meant and thanked the veteran for the encouragement. Finally, he felt the fatigue. He would stay home to get some sleep, but someone said he doesn't have time to go to school, let alone sleep. The manager was already waiting for him, had already contacted the school, and said that Jerion would be absent for an entire month. He immediately noticed that the boy had learned to use magic. It's at the basic level, but he can feel his circuits activated. He said he needed to keep preparing for the exam, and the manager is proud of that, but this basic level won't be very useful. He asked not to be misunderstood. The boy hadn't wasted his time or anything like that, even praise him for it, but he needs to make things clear. This isn't a private lesson, it's a test. He should be prepared and determined to live like a real adventurer to test his resilience. The manager will push him to the limit. One thing he is sure of, he'll make the boy realize he's not as talented as he thinks. Now he should hurry up and pack his bags already. He should take few clothes if he needs more, they'll come back to get them. He wants to know where they're going and if it's somewhere the manager used back when he was active, but he already sold the facilities he used and is trying to start something up. The boy can't even imagine what it might be, but that's the weapon and he's going to use it. He doesn't know how they knew his address, but the package was sent to his house. The manager thought it looked the same, only the color had changed. Jerion is sure it wasn't just the color that changed. It feels much lighter and the grip improved a lot, but the manager isn't a hurry for them to leave. Whether the equipment got better or not, the boy will find out soon enough, because he's going to make sure there will be plenty of opportunities for him to test his weapon. Jerion is really excited about that, but once in the forest, he quickly changed his mind. That training is not going to be easy at all. The creature before his eyes has a danger level of 4 stars. He was taught to run if he ever came across a creature of that level. That lesson applied to his life as a smuggler, since he had to survive. But as an adventurer, things are different. He should warn the manager if he thinks he's going to give up or die. It's all come to change his diapers. It's been 6 months since the manager last saw the boy's skills. A carnivorous tree like that is even more dangerous for close-range fighters. If the boy hasn't improved during this time, it's possible he'll die in this fight, which would mean the end of all this nonsense. Jerion needs to focus on the creature because his attacks are fast and destructive. Even though he's completely focused, if he had taken 1 second longer, he wouldn't be alive anymore. This is the second different 4-star monster he's facing, and the premise for the battle is the same. Mistakes won't be tolerated in this fight because the cost is your life. And this time, he has no ally to come on for help, which makes things truly difficult. He needs to end this immediately, using everything he has. The difference between 3 and 4 stars is the creature's intelligence, which also varies depending on the species. Most creatures have decision-making abilities similar to humans, and in some cases, they're smart enough to deceive people. The creature lured the hunter, and on purpose. The manager knew something like this would end up happening. His surprise was realizing the boy's attack had been devastating. Even he didn't understand when it happened, because his staff had turned into a sect of energy. The manager was so impressed he forgot for a moment that he's a chronic smoker, but that blade that had appeared has made entirely of energy, and it soon began to disappear. The boy didn't understand how his weapon truly works. The manager wants to know how he was able to activate it, but Jerryong doesn't know either. He hadn't even read the manual. To clear up a few things, he asked if the boy was feeling lethargic or tired from moving. He said he was a little out of breath, but that might have been from the surprise and not from exhaustion. The manager didn't feel any magic. It could have been a function of the weapon. The mechanism of that thing isn't exceptional, but an old technology common among the old guard. This type of weapon comes at a cost. The emergence of that blade consumes stamina, which is why this technology became outdated. But judging by the impact of the blade, either way, it's excellent news. He said that if it weren't for the equipment, the boy would have learned an important lesson. He's already aware of the opening he left, and the manager said he didn't expect him to win at all. He doesn't think that way because he underestimates the boy. It's the exact opposite of that. He knows the boy is talented, and likely already at the level of gold-class adventurers. Being praised by the manager frightens him. But that wasn't praised besides the boy's father. The manager knows at least a dozen people stronger than the boy, and of those people, more than half perished in the hands of a weak creature. Jerian felt his life was in danger. That creature was still alive. He even thought it might be a different one, realizing he had managed to cut it in half, but the creature had regenerated. He needs to make sure to finish it off this time. His attacks hit the target, cutting off one of the creature's arms. He saw that the tip of his staff had now transformed into a hammer. The manager finally confirmed how that equipment works. The user's foundation determines the weapon that will manifest and credible efficiency. It might even seem random, but it's a perfect weapon for this boy. After taking some hits, the creature became very enraged, and its arm had fully regenerated. It doesn't matter if his equipment is good. If the strategy is bad, he has no chance of victory, even more so when there's a time limit. The cigarette had already been completely consumed, just like the boy's stamina. He's at his physical limit, and the creature before him is still completely alive, launching an attack that would certainly be fatal, but the manager wouldn't let that happen. He did all of that while lighting another cigarette. He said the boy wouldn't be able to dodge the attack in his current condition. It was getting over for him, asking if he had any objections. Jerryong tried to destroy anything that looked like a weakness, but nothing worked. He asked what he should have done. The manager said he doesn't know either. It would have been better if the boy had run away. He thought it was a joke, but the manager was dead serious. Run and lead it to a place where it can't regenerate. That's the best strategy against this enemy. There are 3 ways to defeat that carnivorous tree. The first is to lure the monster to a place where it can't absorb nutrients. If it's in a place where it can absorb nutrients from the surface, it will regenerate endlessly. A rocky terrain or inside a mine would prevent that, and the boy would have defeated it easily. But that thought never crossed his mind. He has to search for his enemy's weaknesses. It's the only way to deal with things. Jerryong didn't want to interrupt, but something dangerous was happening. The creature was destroying the barrier, and the manager didn't seem to care. He's really no good with protective spells. As his flames grew, he said that was the second way to defeat the creature, burning it completely if the tiers C spell or higher. If Jerryong were a fire specialist mage, he would have defeated the creature easily. That's why the creature's danger level is 4 stars. It's weak to fire, but until he realized that the creature is extremely dangerous in close combat. An ordinary fire isn't enough to defeat it. It would take a military-grade grenade to deal real damage. Many people were defeated before this was discovered. This knowledge cost several lives. Creatures that are defeated today with simple strategies once took many lives. Several prodigies perished prematurely. The manager wants to know how the boy feels after being defeated for the first time. Before he could answer, the manager said the feeling must be horrible. It's not like losing to a person in a duel. The feeling is much worse. That's the price of being an adventurer. The price to be paid can be a small wound or forced retirement, but it can be worse, like losing someone you love. Knowing you're alive at someone else's expense is too painful a feeling. He doesn't want the boy to go through that. Losing your own dignity is sometimes a very worthwhile option. In any case, training is over for today. He wants to note if the boy can run for a few hours. The inside of the dungeon is different from its outer space. It can sometimes be several times larger than expected. And in that particular place, the area is as large as the entire country. The run left him exhausted, and the manager asked him to enjoy the view. And indeed, despite being very dangerous, the dungeon is very beautiful. 3-star creatures that are at the bottom of the food chain. Alone, the boy wouldn't last half an hour. For the next 2 weeks, he'll train during the day and be protected at night. He'll be taught in the final 2 weeks. But to protect himself, he can use everything he's learned to survive a month in the forest. He'll pass the test. He can give up if he wants. Smiling, Jae-young is already regretting spending only 1 month in that place. Time passed, and the day of the exam finally arrived. Staren was worried because he ignored all her calls during that time, and the boy still hadn't arrived. He's surprised that she waited for him on the street. Staren was about to lecture a friend, but seeing his condition, she was very surprised, wanting to know where he had been. He apologized for ignoring her. He was in a place with no phone signal. He asked if something had happened, acknowledging that it might seem a little strange. He had to cut his own hair, so he must look a bit weird now. He didn't mean to make her worry so much. He said he'd get ready to sue him, but she had a lot of questions to ask. There was something in the car. Saran was about to touch her friend. That's when she felt a strange sensation. That person felt completely different. Jarian turned to talk to her. The girl had stepped back instantly. He apologized since he picked up the habit of reacting when something approaches from behind. Sweating a lot, Staren said he didn't mean to apologize for that. He had completely forgotten about the clothes he was supposed to wear because he spent the whole month training adapting to his new weapon. He's very excited for the exam. That was the first time Saran felt such intense malice coming from a person, but that wasn't what impressed her. She had seen that before in her friend. What really surprised her was that now he didn't feel any different from the presence of a monster. The clothes fit the boy very well. He praised their quality a lot. It must have been expensive. If they had more time, they could have done some fine adjustments because small tweaks in quality gear make a big difference, but there's nothing they can do now. Even so, he remains very motivated. Since it's a test, Saran thinks he should be a bit more cautious. But the boy wasn't talking about the test. He was talking about studying at this new school because the test will be held there, and he had never set foot in that place. It's located on a small mountain that used to be a park before the cataclysm that changed everyone's life on the planet. The danger level of this region is high. It's the tallest place in all of Korea. It used to be a dangerous dungeon. 30 years ago, a joint effort between the country and the Adventurer Association completely cleared the place. The best hunters were gathered for it. Participation was entirely voluntary, but none of them backed out. It took a full year of planning requiring both physical and economic investments. And the result of all that planning, the mission was a complete success, celebrated by all citizens, not just in Korea, but around the world. The next challenge was figuring out how to make use of that reclaimed land, until one of the hunters came up with an unexpected idea. Build a school there. There was already an urgent need for a proper training center to raise new adventurers, a place where future students could be guided and prepared. Finding the right location, however, hadn't been easy. The ownership of that land was granted to the adventurers who had risked everything to take it back. Though few people know the full story, if it hadn't been for that one person's crucial donation, which made clearing the dungeon possible, this school would never have been built. Jae-young had never seen the place himself, and he surely wasn't the only one eager to lay eyes on it. Traveling down the highway, he hadn't expected the school to be so far away. So much had happened in the last month. Someone asked him if he knew about an attack squad called J. Apparently, several of his classmates were big fans of that team. He was stunned to hear that every member had died. Their hideout was breached, and vicious monsters broke in and slaughtered them. At first, it seemed like an unspeakable tragedy, but when narcotics were discovered at the scene alongside the bodies of celebrities, a massive public scandal erupted. Apologies kept airing on the news, and countless people were dragged into the controversy. Public opinion became sharply divided. In an attempt to salvage its image, the Hunter Association announced new plans, which is why the test location had been changed. Now, the test would be held in the Panyo Labyrinth, a place the protagonist already knew well. It was the second A-rank dungeon ever cleared, once the lair of the infamous dragon Vasuka. Meanwhile, at the Jinsung Company headquarters inside the forge, Zeke had shown up to speak with a blacksmith who had already polished off every last drop of his liquor. It had been ages since the blacksmith had drunk that much, so he'd run out quickly. Muttering about how terrible humans are at making alcohol, he wanted to know why Zeke was there, and if there was any news about the boy. Zeke had come to ask about the labyrinth because he knew the blacksmith had helped humans 20 years ago. The blacksmith remembered it clearly. Back then, they wanted to develop the site into a training ground for hunters, but he'd told them it was a waste of time. Now, Zeke needed the details. Dragons are notoriously possessive about certain things. Once they find something to fixate on, they develop an overwhelming ambition for it. Vasuka was well known for loving labyrinths. Despite his immense power, his nest was a tangled, confusing maze. He used every trick in the book, pulling knowledge from various races to make it as complex as possible. There was no way humans could ever fully exploit what the dragon built. Zeke believed the place was never truly safe. Vasuka had even kidnapped dwarves to help him finish the labyrinth's construction. The blacksmith blacksmith still couldn't fathom how humans had managed to defeat him, but he was certain it hadn't happened inside the labyrinth itself. That would have been impossible. Even 2 decades later, he was convinced that humans had only scratched the surface, like seeing just the tip of an iceberg. While he insisted nothing was outwardly wrong with the place, he warned it was entirely unpredictable. Zeke believed holding the test there was a mistake, and if he'd come all the way there to talk to a Titan, it meant someone had made a reckless decision. Maybe they'd get lucky. Perhaps a tragedy would finally force them to start valuing human life. Who knows? Maybe someone would even succeed in conquering that dungeon. Back at the Panyo Labyrinth, Jerryong was impressed by what he saw. Candidates were already gathering for the test to begin. The labyrinth was infamous for constantly changing shape. Since this was the first time it would be used for an exam, no one had much reliable information about it. Apparently, Anisha was dead set on making things as difficult as possible. Jerryong couldn't shake the feeling he was being watched. Nearly 20 people there had their eyes fixed on him. He had no idea what Anisha had told them, but it was definitely nothing good. Meanwhile, Saren remained oblivious to the tension. Her perception was too limited to pick up on it. In the past month, Jerryong had learned exactly what it felt like to be hunted, like throwing open a window on a scorching day and feeling every gaze land on you. But he'd also learned something just as important: how to stop looking like prey and make predators feel like they were the ones being stalked. It looked like he'd have to wish his competitors good luck. With just under an hour left before the exam started, a tense meeting was underway. The president of the Adventurer Association spoke proudly about the changes that had been made, thanking the support of the school's director. But he made it clear he didn't fully support the decision, calling it a joke that this was all done just to distract the public from the recent scandal. And he wasn't the only one in that room who felt that way. He said if anyone deserved thanks, it was the person who truly benefited from all this chaos. That person was Kiora, president of the Warrior School's board of directors. She hoped everyone could see the situation for what it was, something that had been thoroughly debated by the council, but one man flatly disagreed with her. Phil knew there wasn't much they could do now. He suspected she held on to her position in the rankings because of politics, and the tension in the room grew heavier. A woman at the table noticed the argument was about to boil over. The bald man warned the older gentleman not to push it too far. He scoffed that the test itself was foolish, designed by fools, for fools, and said there was no need to get so worked up about it. But the old man didn't take kindly to those words. He stared at Youngle with a cold, serious gaze. He asked if Youngle had grown senile or simply forgotten everything that had happened over the past 30 years. If that was the case, he said, it'd be better for him to keep his mouth shut. The president acknowledged that the old man's concerns about the current situation weren't misplaced, but if he'd rather settle things through force than through conversation, she'd be more than happy to oblige. Tension filled the room. These two had never gotten along. Everyone present braced for the worst. But what defused the situation was something none of them expected. A student, who had nothing to do with their feud, calmly introducing himself to everyone. The president of the Adventurer Association hoped the others could keep their tempers in check. He knew that while some people wanted to complain about how things had turned out, the only person they should direct those complaints to was himself. The meeting finally wrapped up, and everyone filed out of the room. The old man muttered in disbelief at the audacity of the association's president. Nothing but a lapdog for that woman. He asked the professor beside him if he thought his words had been too harsh. The professor admitted they were pretty aggressive, and thanked him for his honesty. Deep down, the old man had expected this scenario. He knew that when it came to graduates, the woman treated them exceptionally well, seeing them as the nation's future. But in doing so, she spoiled them, rewarding them far too much for having done so little. He grumbled that this pampering killed true talent. New adventurers were like fish in an aquarium, fed, coddled, and kept docile by those who pulled the strings. Very few people understood what really went on behind the scenes, and he was certain that privileged information had been handed out to the right families, whose children would soon take the test. He asked the professor again if he'd been too extreme. The professor didn't think so. Someone was trying to take their school from them, an attack they wouldn't allow. He vowed that this test wouldn't be open to cheating. His only true worry was the students' safety, but that woman didn't care about that. If the worst happened, they'd have to move fast to deal with it. And though he hadn't mentioned it out loud, he was certain everyone could feel the bloodlust hanging in the air. Still, that wasn't a matter for them to debate now. There were more pressing concerns. They didn't yet know who that student was, but whoever he was, he clearly had potential, and the old man knew the boy had done it all on purpose. The professor, known among students for being strict, rarely got sentimental about these exams, yet he genuinely hoped this boy would pass. It had been a long time since he'd felt this eager to personally teach someone. In this test, the students would have to find a treasure and deliver it to a designated spot while staying alive. The labyrinth's danger level had been set to incapacitate, not kill, but even so, there was still a real risk of death, so the candidates had to be careful. The condition to pass was simple: 1 treasure per candidate. There were more treasure chests than participants, so theoretically, everyone could succeed. One candidate found himself puzzled, wondering what would happen if everyone passed. Apparently, this was a brand new rule, exclusive to that year. With the briefing over, the participants were free to enter the labyrinth according to their assigned numbers. They could collect their gear from storage. Since Jerryong didn't have a phone, he'd have to figure things out himself. Along the way, he noticed a boy getting bullied. A few thugs were hassling him, all because they'd accidentally bumped into each other. The boy had an injured leg and hadn't even been the one to start it, yet they kept picking on him. One of the bystanders quickly realized something. Jerryong wasn't interested in their nonsense, but calmly asked them not to block the path. The extras tried to act tough, but one of them had already lost his underwear in the process. Knowing the rules, Jerryong understood he couldn't do much to them now, but he made sure they felt fear, warning them that if he accidentally ran into them inside the labyrinth, things could get ugly. Those words terrified the blonde thug so much he destroyed his own underwear right then and there. As they slunk away, one of the extras got an update from his friend about who Jerryong really was. Jerryong then handed the bullied boy his book back. The boy thanked him for stepping in, even though he knew it hadn't been necessary. As they said goodbye, Jerryong couldn't help but worry about the boy's leg. The test would be brutal, but he was also curious about the book the boy had been carrying. It didn't make much sense in that setting. Watching Jerryong walk away, the boy silently wished him good luck. It might not have seemed like it, but that boy was a second-year student, and he'd placed second in last year's test. Now all the candidates were gathered on the floor that led straight into the labyrinth. Jerryong felt a rush of excitement. The place looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Dozens of capsules lined the floor. Each one would send the participants to random spots inside the labyrinth. They'd have to enter the capsule that matched their assigned number. When the countdown hit 0, they'd be sent inside. Then the labyrinth's gates would swing open, and the test would begin. Just seconds remained before the launch. The clock displayed the time, and would send out a distress signal if anyone was disqualified. Finally, with just 1 second left, Jerryong felt the capsule shift beneath him. No one knew what waited for them inside. The labyrinth almost seemed alive, ready to turn humans into tools for its own survival. An emergency was already brewing. There were no signals coming back from the students inside. The labyrinth would try to hunt down everyone who dared enter, but not everyone in there was prey. Some were the natural enemies of monsters, and their real test had only just begun.